Chapter 295. A few days later, in the sea thousands of miles away from Silver Sword Island, a small white boat appeared in the sky. Liang Xianfeng, Zhu Xianming and Lu Ping stood on the boat. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng waved his hand and the boat disappeared into the air. Zhu Xianming looked fondly at Liang Xuanfeng's boat and said, "Uncle Master, your boat is truly fast. It only takes the time to finish a cup of tea to get here from Silver Sword Island." Liang Xianfeng flaunted, "That's true. Although this Cloudstream boat isn't my natal artifact, it has condensed 6 Dao talismans. It's considered one of the fastest flying artifacts in the cultivation world." With his divine sense, Lu Ping could clearly sense that there were hundreds of core forging realm cultivators and even more blood condensation realm cultivators hiding in the void around him. These cultivators had varying levels of cultivation, and their invisibility techniques were strong or weak. However, without exception, none of them seemed to be deliberately hiding their presence. Lu Ping said curiously, "These cultivators are quite strange. Since no one is deliberately hiding their tracks, wouldn't it be better to meet face to face? In this way, wouldn't it be like burying one's head in the sand?" Liang Xianfeng said, "It's not to hide our tracks but to hide our identities." Lu Ping suddenly understood. In the process of exploring ruins like this, everyone had to be on guard against sneak attacks. Therefore, the important thing was not whether you would be discovered when you made a move, but whether you would be recognized after the sneak attack. The former could be avoided at most, but when they met again in the future, no one would be able to recognize each other. The latter was a life and death feud that would not end until one of them died. At this moment, a rumbling sound came from the depths of the sea, and the seawater on the surface of the sea suddenly vibrated. Liang Xianfeng said seriously, "Attention, the Crystal Palace and Skyrim have joined hands to open the Mansion of Profound Mystery. It's much earlier than I expected. It seems that it's right to come here 2 hours earlier today. Otherwise we will have to eat the leftovers of others." When Lu Ping and Zhu Xianming heard perfected Liang Xuanfeng's words, they felt that this Uncle Master was being too careless. Through the past 2 days of interaction, Lu Ping had already realized that although this Uncle Master was cautious, he was an extremely easy person to get along with. Hence he said, "Uncle Master, you're being too careless. How can you rush back and forth for such a matter?" Liang Xianfeng glared at Lu Ping and pretended to be older. "Kid, what do you know? Do you know what your martial uncle is best at?" Before Lu Ping could ask, perfected Liang Xianfeng had already said ostentatiously, "Restrictions. All kinds of formations and restrictions in the ruins. Of course, it's not to set them up, but to dismantle them. According to my deduction of the Crystal Palace and Skyrim's speed in breaking the restrictions, the cave will open 2 hours after we arrive. 2 hours is enough for us to prepare. Why is it earlier now?" Zhu Xianming also found it funny and joked with Liang Xianfeng. "This is what I'm most worried about. It seems that the Crystal Palace and Skyrim have joined hands." Hearing this, Zhu Xuanming's face turned gloomy like perfected Liang Xianfeng. Lu Ping thought for a while and said, "Martial Uncle also said that the Crystal Palace has been collecting information about Fei Ling's sect through the overflowing ocean gang. Perhaps the Crystal Palace happened to have some jade slips that recorded the restrictions that Laozu had set up in the cave." Reverend Liang Xianfeng did not answer, but his complexion was much better. If the Crystal Palace and the Sky Fisher Sword sect had truly joined forces to take over the profound abode, the Crystal Palace would naturally have nothing to fear as they were the only major force in the Eastern Sea. The Sky Fisher Sword sect would not be able to withstand the denunciations of the Eastern Sea cultivators. Even the other 3 major sects would be wary of the alliance between the Crystal Palace and the Sky Fisher Sword sect. Suddenly, 2 huge whirlpools formed on the surface of the sea. Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's face lit up. The 2 sects really did not join hands. "Let's go, we're already 1 step behind them." Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng steered the flowing cloud warship toward one of the whirlpools and plunged into the sea. Lu Ping's divine sense told him that the hundreds of cultivators had split into 2 groups and were rushing toward the 2 whirlpools. Liang Xianfeng had the flowing cloud boat in his hand, and he cultivated a wind-attributed cultivation technique, so in the blink of an eye he was already in front of the group. At this moment, the 3 of them suddenly became the target of everyone. Immediately, several attacks were launched at the flowing cloud boat, intending to slow down the 3 of them. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianming guarded the 2 sides while perfected Liang Xianfeng controlled the flying boat. Under the speed of lightning, the distance between them and the cultivators widened. Lu Ping stood on the port side of the flowing cloud boat. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a little excited when a flying sword shot towards him. This was the first time he made a move since advancing to the core forging realm. Moreover, he was facing a chaotic battle or even a siege by perfected cultivators. Lu Ping formed a sword art and the golden scale sword shot out from Lu Ping's right fingertip. 96 sword shadows struck the flying sword and sent it swaying towards the sea. A painful roar came from the void. Clearly, Lu Ping's sword had injured the opponent's magic artifact. On the other side, Zhu Xianming was actually holding a pipa in her hand. Amidst the noise, the attacks flying towards the starboard side were shaken and shattered by the void. Although perfected Liang Xianfeng had been controlling the flowing cloud boat with all his strength, he was secretly preparing to make a move in case he encountered an expert. He wasn't too worried about Zhu Xianming. After all, Zhu Xuanming's cultivation was at the mid-stage of the core forging realm. However, Lu Ping's performance really surprised perfected Liang Xianfeng. Perfected Liang Xianfeng originally thought that Lu Ping would not be able to fight the enemy as he had just advanced to the core forging realm and was a pill refiner. However, perfected Liang Xianfeng sensed that the cultivator whose magic artifact was damaged by Lu Ping's attack was a cultivator with the same cultivation level as Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping had the advantage of a magic artifact, it was difficult for him to find a match among cultivators of the same cultivation level with just one attack. Perfected Liang Xianfeng narrowed his eyes when he saw the golden scale sword in Lu Ping's hand. He chuckled and said, "So that big fish Jin Li died in your hands?" Lu Ping was shocked, but he immediately reacted and said with a smile, "That's right. That guy was besieged and was on his last breath when he escaped. I took advantage of him." Perfected Liang Xianfeng said with a smirk, "That monster from Golden Wrm Island is already furious. He was going to the East Sea to start a massacre. Don't let him see the sword in your hand." Lu Ping split his sword into 3 true essence 1 chi swords made of psychic sword rays and blocked the 3 magic artifacts that were flying over. He said, "Uncle Master, what do you think of this technique?" The 3 true essence 1 chi swords were formed by 81 psychic sword rays each. Perfected Liang Xianfeng nodded as he watched, but he said, "It's best not to use this technique in front of him." The spirit chi in the air changed and a giant claw tore through the air as if it wanted to grab the flowing cloud boat completely. Perfected Liang Xianfeng wanted to see how far Lu Ping could go, so he only warned, "Be careful, it's a demonic cultivator." Lu Ping pointed at the sword with one hand and the seawater with the other and shouted, "Rise!" A 90-foot-long psychic sword dragon with a single horn became even more lively after being covered by the seawater. After the giant claw was entangled by the sword dragon, it tore at its head and bit at its body. Although the giant claw tore off many of its sword scales, a mournful wail came from the void after a while. The giant claw was already crushed by the sword dragon. The sword dragon was also covered in wounds, but it was still swaggering in the sky. After Lu Ping destroyed the giant claw, no cultivators on the port side came to attack for a while. Perfected Liang Xianfeng was shocked. The demonic cultivator's cultivation was at the 3rd stage core forging realm, but Lu Ping easily broke his technique. "Umph." A cold snort came from the void. "Since you're so powerful, maybe the old man will have to use his divine sense." After the cold snort, Lu Ping felt a strange attack coming from the void towards Lu Ping's divine sense. Divine sense attack. Lu Ping smiled slightly. Although he didn't know any secret techniques to attack with divine sense, his divine sense was no weaker than a mid-stage core forging realm cultivator. This kind of attack was nothing in Lu Ping's eyes. Lu Ping searched with his divine sense. After the other party's attack stabbed into Lu Ping's divine sense, Lu Ping only felt a slight numbness in his divine sense. The other party's attack was bounced back by Lu Ping. Liang Xianfeng sneered and said, "Didn't you already make your move? You didn't forget to remind me after the attack. What a good move." Liang Xianfeng deliberately said that he reminded him after the attack. Naturally, he wanted to expose the sneak attack. The other party snorted and no longer answered. A cloud of fire swept towards the flowing cloud boat. Lu Ping's face froze. This was obviously a mid-stage core forging realm master. Although there were many people who tried to stop Lu Ping during the battle, his opponents were all early-stage core forging realm cultivators. There were only 3 of them. This was a hidden rule in the East China Sea's cultivation world. Now, a mid-stage core forging realm cultivator not only tried to interfere but also launched a sneak attack. Liang Xianfeng pointed this out to warn the other party. The other party broke the rule first. With Liang Xianfeng, an 8th-stage core forging realm master behind him, Lu Ping had nothing to worry about. Lu Ping's eyes were filled with excitement to be able to fight with a mid-stage core forging realm master. Lu Ping had a great advantage when fighting with a fire attribute cultivator on the sea. Lu Ping immediately sheathed the golden scale sword and clasped his hands together. The water vapor in a radius of a few miles immediately gathered above Lu Ping's head. Before the fiery clouds could reach him, a huge dark cloud had already formed above them. The enemy cultivator obviously sensed something was amiss and sped up his casting speed. Lu Ping smirked and shouted, "Quick! Art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain." The torrential rain poured down and enveloped a huge fiery cloud. Sizzling sounds could be heard from the fiery cloud. Occasionally there would be explosive sounds. The fiery cloud gradually turned into a gray cloud that was about to be extinguished. The cultivator who cast the fire cloud did his best to control the cloud of fire to dodge, but the dark cloud in the sky became thicker and thicker. No matter how the cloud of fire moved, it couldn't escape the control of Lu Ping's art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain. The sea was getting closer and closer. Seeing that the boat was about to plunge into the sea, Liang Xianfeng laughed loudly. At this time, someone shouted in the sky again, "Your Excellency is too arrogant. Eat my attack." Chapter 296. The roar wasn't aimed at Lu Ping, but the laughing enlightened master Liang Xianfeng. And as soon as the roaring man attacked, Lu Ping knew he couldn't handle a battle of this level. A late-stage core forging perfected master. A strange chill hit them in the face, and the surface of the sea below the flowing cloud ship immediately turned into ice. At the same time, the flowing cloud ship's body was also covered in a dense layer of frost. The flowing cloud ship's speed instantly dropped. Suddenly, Lu Ping heard a buzzing sound in his head. The dark clouds that were controlled by his art of moving clouds and summoning rain suddenly broke free from his control. The entire dark cloud shrouded the sky above the flowing cloud skiff, and hail the size of goose eggs rained down on the three people on the skiff. At the same time, the entire dark cloud suddenly collapsed towards the center, and the surrounding clouds quickly shrunk towards the center of the collapse. When the entire dark cloud disappeared, a huge ice cone that was dozens of feet long hovered above the skiff and smashed down towards the skiff. Perfected Liang Xianfeng stopped laughing and his expression turned solemn. Unknowingly, a long sword had already flown towards the ice all. However, the 3-foot-long flying sword seemed extremely tiny in front of the ice all that was hundreds of feet long. Lu Ping looked at the flying sword and sighed. Lu Ping knew that perfected Liang Xuanfeng's natal artifact wasn't a flying sword, and this flying sword was obviously a magical artifact. Moreover, the quality of this flying sword was higher than the golden scale sword. "Split!" Perfected Liang Xianfeng shouted, and the flying sword immediately split into 18 swords in the sky. As he performed a series of dazzling sword techniques, each of the 18 flying swords in the sky displayed a set of sword techniques. Qingfeng sword, cold wind sword, zephyr sword, howling wind sword, whirlwind sword, stormwind sword. Lu Ping was dumbfounded. This was Xianling sect's famous Merry 18 swords. Furthermore, each of perfected Liang Xuanfeng's 18 swords were made up of 72 spiritual sword flashes. Altogether, there were a total of 1,296 spiritual sword flashes, the highest realm of spiritual sword flashes. The ice spikes in the sky immediately crumbled under the combined attack of the 18 swords. Reverend Liang Xianfeng pointed his left hand downwards and the 18 swords split into two. 9 of them continued to swim in the sky, preventing the other cultivators from launching another sneak attack. The other 8 swords formed a huge wind drill and broke a hole in the ice on the surface of the sea. The flowing cloud boat followed closely behind and disappeared into the sea. The moment the drifting cloud boat entered the sea, Lu Ping formed 9 seals in a row. "Kid, you have quite a few tricks up your sleeve." Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled. Lu Ping curled his lips and said, "How can I compare to Uncle Master? You've even mastered Xianling sect's signature sword technique to such a high level. I'm afraid Xianling sect will have to take the blame for you, martial uncle." Perfected Liang Xianfeng didn't think much of it. "Only Xianling sect. I don't care if other sects want to take the blame." Lu Ping chuckled. You're a genius, martial uncle. Of course you have high standards. But Uncle Master, can you teach me this sword technique?" "What? You want Xianling sect to take the blame too?" asked perfected Liang Xianfeng with a faint smile. "Of course I won't miss the chance." Lu Ping smiled. At Lu Ping's level of swordsmanship, it was extremely difficult to make any progress. Only by studying the sword techniques of hundreds of schools, absorbing their essence and making up for their weaknesses, would one be able to master swordsmanship. Perfected Liang Xianfeng knew what Lu Ping was thinking, so he promised to teach him the 18 merry swords after they came out of Zhong Shen's cave. Following closely behind Lu Ping's group, the other core forging masters also rushed into the whirlpool. But the moment the two Dharma treasures entered the water, they felt as if the water around them had come alive. Dozens of undercurrents grabbed the two Dharma treasures like dozens of arms. By the time the Dharma treasures broke free, they were already a step behind Lu Ping's group and were overtaken by the people behind them. At the bottom of the sea, a huge light shield covered a mysterious cave abode. This was where Zhong Shen Laozu's cave abode was located. From afar there were two huge holes in the shield, one in the north and one in the south. Obviously, the holes were left by Skyrend and the Crystal Palace's attacks. When the three of them got closer, Perfected Liang Xianfeng went up to take a look and said, "We're not very lucky. This is the shield of the Crystal Palace." At this moment, the three of them did not have the time to lament about who they would encounter. Although the Crystal Palace cultivators had broken the barrier here, they naturally would not allow the cultivators behind them to take the shortcut. They had already resealed the broken barrier. Of course, in a hurry, the seal was far inferior to Zhong Shen Laozu's shield. Perfected Liang Xianfeng changed 3 sets of hand seals in a row. When the third set of hand seals was cast, the light of the sealed shield dimmed. Reverend Liang Xuanfeng's face lit up. He performed another hand seal and the seal immediately dissipated. The three of them hastily walked in. By then, the cultivators behind them had already caught up. Reverend Liang Xianfeng snickered and performed the third set of hand seals. This time, however, he performed it in reverse. The seal from before appeared on the barrier once more, sealing it up. As soon as the three of them entered, they felt a strong spiritual force. The concentration of spiritual qi is more than one medium spiritual vein, right? Zhu Xianming said in surprise. It seems that Zhong Shen Laozu's management was quite successful. Perfected Liang Xianfeng said, "Of course. After all, Zhong Shen Laozu planned to restore the sect back then. Without some foundation, how would he dare to make such a bold statement?" Ignoring the cultivators' curses, the three of them hurriedly disappeared into the shield. After walking for a while, Perfected Liang Xianfeng suddenly stopped and said, "No, the Crystal Palace is obviously going for the refinery room of Zhong Shen's cave abode. Zhong Shen Laozu's refinery furnace and the purple fire must be in the refinery room, so the sky wind leaf must not be in the same place as the purple fire. Moreover, the Crystal Palace isn't that stupid. They have the advantage in numbers, so they must have set up an ambush ahead to buy time for our sect to fight for the treasure. We need to open another path." Lu Ping and Zhu Xianming nodded in agreement. Zhu Xianming said, "Uncle Master, don't you have the magical power to detect the location of the sky wind leaf? You can check it out now." Liang Xianfeng shook his head and said, "There are many restrictions here. My magical power will only be effective within a certain range. We are only at the periphery of the cave abode. My magical power will only be effective inside the cave abode. Let's choose a random path and try our luck. We are not too late, so there will definitely be some gains. It just depends on the size." Lu Ping reached out and grabbed. Debao, who was sleeping in the spiritual beast bag, suddenly felt the skin on his neck tighten. When he opened his eyes, he was already in a strange place. The two of them looked at the fat rat in Lu Ping's hand in shock. Lu Ping didn't explain and directly ordered Debao, "Choose a path for us." Debao, who was already at the 5th layer of the blood condensation realm, lowered his head and ran towards the path opened by the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping grabbed his beard and scolded, "Idiot, not this one." Debao squeaked a few times in futile protest. Only then did he sniff the ground and walk towards a corridor on the left. Liang Xianfeng chuckled and followed behind Lu Ping. Zhu Xianming looked at Lu Ping in surprise and followed behind as well. Debao had just taken a step towards the entrance of the corridor when he seemed to have collided with an invisible wall, causing him to squeak in pain. Perfected Liang Xianfeng went forward and struck a few hand seals, causing ripples to appear at the entrance of the corridor before it calmed down again. Liang Xianfeng frowned and said, "These restrictions are a little troublesome. It's not hard to break, but it will take a lot of time. I'm afraid the people behind will catch up." Zhu Xianming pondered and said, "Should we use spells to attack it or choose another path?" Liang Xianfeng shook his head and said, "The restrictions here are connected to the entire cave abode's formation. If we use force to break it, we will probably trigger a response from the entire formation. It will be even more difficult to break it. The other paths will be the same." For a moment, the three of them seemed to be at a loss. Lu Ping thought for a while and looked at the invisible barrier at the corridor. A strange light actually appeared in his eyes. Lu Ping's actions naturally could not be hidden from Liang Xianfeng. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, but he did not disturb Lu Ping. Instead, he quietly watched Lu Ping's next step. Zhu Xinming looked at Lu Ping. Which uncle master was this person's disciple? She felt that she could not see through this person anymore. Spiritual clarity eyes. This was the first stage of the minor technique, the three pure one's true pupils. Using the method Hu Lili taught him, Lu Ping used half of the clear spirit water given to him by the Dark Mountain Gang master, Xiao Jingyan, to cleanse his eyes. It took him half a year to complete the first stage of the three pure one's true pupils. As for the remaining half of the clear spirit water, Lu Ping naturally left it to Hu Lili. Right now, Lu Ping's spiritual clarity eyes was still very shallow. He could see through some ordinary illusionary formations and bewildering formations, but he was still far from being able to see through these complicated formations. However, Lu Ping soon discovered that he was extremely familiar with the complex array formations and restrictions. Lu Ping turned around and looked at the two people behind him with a strange expression. Then he stretched out his hand and made a few strange hand seals. As Lu Ping poured out a large amount of true essence, the ripples of the restrictions in front of them reappeared in front of the three of them. Then with a shake it was broken. The three of them quickly passed through the broken light curtain. Lu Ping turned around and made a few more hand seals. The previous ripples of the restrictions reappeared and sealed the corridor again. Looking at the two people's surprised eyes, Lu Ping shrugged and said, "I have also been to Fei Ling Island. These restrictions are recorded in the inheritance jade slips that I obtained." As soon as the three of them left through the corridor, a few cultivators caught up from behind. However, Liang Xianfeng and the other two people were nowhere to be seen. The leading cultivator said doubtfully, "Strange, where did the three people in front go? Are they stupid enough to go to the Crystal Palace's ambush?" Chapter 297. As the three of them moved forward, they encountered several restrictions and obstacles along the way. After Lu Ping pondered for a moment, he made a few hand seals in a row, and the restrictions immediately disappeared. After the three of them passed, Lu Ping made a few more hand seals, and the dissipated restrictions were restored again. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng looked at the hand seals that Lu Ping made previously, which were rather jerky and difficult. Obviously, it was also Lu Ping's first time using it. As they encountered more and more restrictions, Lu Ping became more and more skilled. The restrictions and obstacles they encountered were different, and Lu Ping also used different hand seals to break them. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng finally couldn't help but ask, "Kid, how many failing sect inheritance jade slips about restrictions did you get?" "Along the way we encountered a total of 11 restrictions, and you used 5 different sets of hand seals. Did you take away all the failing sect inheritance jade slips about restrictions?" Lu Ping was alarmed and said with a smile, "Of course not. Failing sect was known as the #1 sect in the North Sea back then, and its inheritance of restrictions and spells are as vast as the sea. I only got 8 or 9 sets, and it's obvious that we're lucky this way. I know these restrictions, so it's easy for me to break them." Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng snorted with dissatisfaction. He had been studying all kinds of restrictions and spells all his life, and originally wanted to show off the elegance of a senior expert in front of these 2 junior disciples. However, he didn't expect that his martial nephew, Lu Ping, would steal the limelight, so he was naturally very dissatisfied. Along the way there were some scattered spiritual materials that Debao also volunteered to bring over. However, most of them were middle-grade and high-grade spiritual materials, and the 3 of them didn't care about them. However, Debao was never tired of it. Lu Ping hung a storage bag under his neck and let him play around the 3 of them. As the last light curtain was broken by Lu Ping, the sound of spell explosions rang out. The 3 hurriedly cast out their mystic treasures and spells to protect themselves. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng saw that apart from the golden scale sword, Lu Ping was actually holding an ordinary top-grade magic treasure, the golden light mirror, in front of him. He frowned and said, "Why don't you have a decent magic treasure? Although this golden light mirror has some special effects, it doesn't match with your cultivation method." Lu Ping smiled. Disciple's magic treasure was broken by Spiritual Master Jin Li a few days ago, so this is just to make up the numbers. I've been focusing on cultivation these days, so I didn't have the time to buy it. This time I'm here to ask Martial Uncle if there's a chance to pick a magic treasure for me. Zhu Xianming snickered and said, "Although Zhongshuan Laozu is a master of artificing, he can't have magical treasures all over the place. This trip to Zhongshuan's cave might be peaceful at the moment, but once we enter the cave, I'm afraid there will be a storm of blood. Junior brother, you are too optimistic. Lu Ping chuckled and did not reply. When the three of them looked out of the restriction, they realized that they had already reached the interior of the cave. Hidden by the trees, there were pavilions and towers that looked like a paradise. In the distance there were two rumbling sounds of spells. It was obvious that the Water Crystal Palace and the Heaven Fisher Sword sect, who had arrived first, were attacking the restriction formations of some of the doors. Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng waved his hands and dozens of rays of light scattered in all directions inside the cave residence. At the same time, Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng closed his eyes as if he was sensing something. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng knew that Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng was using a minor supernatural power to sense the location of the Heavenly Wind Leaf. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng stood on his left and right sides to protect him. Lu Ping took a step back intentionally and got out of the range of Spiritual Master Liang Xuanfeng's minor supernatural power. After a while, Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng opened his eyes with a serious expression. Looking at Lu Ping and Zhu Xuanmeng's questioning gaze, Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng smiled bitterly and said, "We're not very lucky. We're going in the wrong direction. The location of the Heavenly Wind Leaf is right behind the Crystal Palace in Skyrend. If we want to get the Heavenly Wind Leaf, we have to pass through the middle of the two sections." Zhu Xianmeng was stunned. Lu Ping smiled and said, "It's already not bad. At least the place that the two sects are attacking doesn't have the Heavenly Wind Leaf, right?" Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng nodded and smiled bitterly. "That's a blessing in disguise. If the Heavenly Wind Leaf is in the building that the two sects are attacking, I'm afraid we'll have to start a war with the two sects if we want to get it." The three of them hid their identities and passed through the middle of the two sections. Naturally, they could not hide from the cultivators of the two sections. Skyren's attack on the formation slowed down and then ignored Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng and the other two. Obviously, the speed at which the three of them entered the cave abode was far beyond their expectations. However, the cave abode was obviously not something that the two sects could take down. It was already good enough that the two sects could enter the cave abode first and get the biggest share of it. After that, the cultivators of East Ocean would flood in. That was why Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng and the other two dared to take the risk and bet that the two sects would not waste time to stop them. The Heavenly Splitting Sword sect ignored their actions. Even if the three of them had some tricks up their sleeves, they would not be able to break through the formation and obtain the treasures of the cave abode as quickly as the Heavenly Splitting Sword sect. The Heavenly Splitting Sword sect was currently attacking the storage room of Old Ancestor Deep Profundity. Old Ancestor Deep Profundity had spent his entire life forging artifacts, so his collection was definitely abundant. Unfortunately, the artifact refiners on the other side had already been taken by Water Crystal Palace. When Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng and the other two saw that Skyrend was indifferent to their appearance, they had some hope. Then they saw a late-stage core forging realm cultivator who had reached the 5th stage core forging realm, step out from the crowd and slowly followed behind Lu Ping and the other two. "Damn it, this Crystal Palace is too overbearing." Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng cursed. Zhu Xianmeng asked, "This person followed behind us without threatening us or stopping us. What is the Crystal Palace trying to do?" "Surveillance." Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng said unwillingly, "The cultivators of the Crystal Palace are busy breaking the restriction of the refining room and have no time to care about us. They are also afraid that we have some tricks up our sleeves and will get the benefits first, so they sent someone to spy on us. Once we find the treasure, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace will rush over and demand the treasure. At that time we will be outnumbered and have no choice but to give in." Zhu Xianmeng said with hatred, "Isn't he afraid that we will kill him?" Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng glanced at him and said, "The Crystal Palace is the overlord of the East Sea. If we kill a cultivator of the Crystal Palace, we will definitely be hunted by the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace is sure that we won't dare to kill them. Moreover, this person is keeping a distance from us to prevent us from attacking him. With his cultivation, even if the three of us go all out, we may not be able to kill him in a short time. When the other cultivators of the Crystal Palace arrive, we will still be dead." The three of them had dark expressions on their faces. Seeing this, the Water Crystal Palace cultivator behind them revealed a mocking smile. "Trying to pick up the scraps of the Water Crystal Palace? Other than the 4 great sects of the East Sea, who else would have the guts to do so? Let's see if I can use those restrictions." Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng and the other two's eyes lit up when they heard Lu Ping's words. They suddenly remembered that along the way, Lu Ping had used several restrictions that were obviously from the Fei Ling sect. The pavilion where Tianfeng Yi was located was against a mountain wall, and the interior of the building was deep inside the mountain. Lu Ping and the others pretended to fiddle in front of the pavilion for a long time before they finally broke the light curtain of the formation at the entrance. Seeing that the three of them broke the formation so easily, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace thought that there would be nothing good inside. However, following the usual style of the Crystal Palace, the cultivators still followed them in. Not long after the cultivators of the Crystal Palace walked in, the broken restriction shield at the entrance of the pavilion was strangely restored. Lu Ping originally wanted to restore the restriction shield immediately after the three of them entered to block the cultivators of the Crystal Palace outside. However, Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng stopped him and said, "If you block him outside, he will be even more suspicious. Maybe when we are ready to go out, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace will already be blocking us at the entrance." Lu Ping looked at Spiritual Master Liang Xuanfeng's cold eyes and knew that he had the intention to kill. Without saying anything, he changed to a set of hand seals and cast them on the restrictions on the left and right side. Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng seemed to have sensed something and smiled without saying anything. However, he was getting more and more surprised by his disciple nephew's performance. After entering the pavilion, Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng seemed to have confirmed the location of Tianfeng Yi. After Lu Ping broke a few restrictions in succession, he could not help but quicken his pace and walked directly into the mountain behind the pavilion. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianming looked at each other and hurriedly chased after him. Turning around the attic, he saw a closet dug out from the stone wall in the belly of the mountain. A blue restriction protected the closet, and Liang Shenfeng was standing in front of the closet. Behind the restriction, there was a palm-sized gray object that looked like a withered leaf placed in an open jade box. Tianfeng Yi. The cultivators of the Crystal Palace turned around the pavilion and saw the object in the closet and shouted in surprise behind the three of them. "Hee, you actually know what this is?" Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng turned around with a murderous aura around him. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianming were also on guard, ready to attack. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace was not afraid at all under the suppression of Spiritual Master Liang Xuanfeng's late-stage core forging cultivation. He said coldly, "The Crystal Palace wants this Tianfeng Yi. I advise you not to cause trouble. The disciples of the Crystal Palace behind me will be here soon." When Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng saw that the cultivator of the Crystal Palace was about to tear a talisman, Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng slashed with his hand and an invisible wind wheel slashed towards the cultivator of the Crystal Palace. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace could not care less about the talisman in his hand. With a step, a crystal wall rose in front of him and was immediately smashed by the wind wheel. When Lu Ping looked up, he saw that the cultivator of the Crystal Palace had blood flowing out of his mouth and nose. At the same time, the talisman in his hand was torn. Under the scornful gaze of the cultivator of the Crystal Palace, a ray of light flew out. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianming joined forces to attack from the left and right. The golden scale sword released a sword chi of true essence. Zhu Xuanming's pipa played a few notes and several invisible sound blades flew towards the cultivator of the Crystal Palace. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace took out a crystal plate with the word, "Protect," on it. A crystal light curtain was cast to protect him in the middle. Then he used a flying axe to block Zhu Xuanming's sound blades. He ignored Lu Ping's sword chi and retreated into the attic. However, the cultivator of the Crystal Palace still underestimated the first-stage core forging cultivator behind him. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace who was retreating felt a great force coming from the light curtain, pushing him back a few steps. Although the light curtain was not broken, the cultivator of the Crystal Palace spat out a mouthful of blood again. However, the eyes of the Water Crystal Palace cultivator still revealed a sinister smile, because as long as he retreated from the belly of the mountain, it would only take a moment for him to escape from the pavilion and meet up with the Water Crystal Palace cultivators who had come to reinforce him. At that time. Chapter 298. As soon as the Crystal Palace cultivator retreated from the mountain, his gloomy smile froze on his face. At the top of the stairs of the pavilion, a restriction had been condensed again. The escape light that he had released after tearing the talisman was now circling in front of the light curtain condensed by the restriction. The cultivator roared furiously and the flying axe in his hand smashed towards the barrier of light. With a boom, the entire barrier of light trembled. Immediately after that, the magic arrays and restrictions within the pavilion also shook. However, the barrier of light did not break. The Crystal Palace cultivator's face changed. Liang Shenfeng and the other two had already attacked again. "Finish it quickly, don't hold back." Liang Xianfeng sent another invisible wind wheel toward the Crystal Palace cultivator. A few invisible strings flew out of Zhu Xuanming's pipa. Lu Ping changed his sword momentum. The great river flows east with an indomitable momentum blocked the space where the Crystal Palace cultivator could dodge. He could only choose to fight the attacks of the three head-on. In the desperate eyes of the Crystal Palace cultivator, Liang Xuanfeng's wind wheel had already cut his defensive light curtain. The crystal jade pendant above his head wailed and fell down. His other magic weapon was tightly entangled by Lu Ping's golden scale sword. A tiny string flashed in the air and the head of the Crystal Palace cultivator flew up. A golden core with 5 golden patterns suddenly flew out of the headless body. Just as Liang Xianfeng was about to capture it, the golden core hit the light curtain fiercely. This time the light curtain finally collapsed. The escape light that had been blocked before disappeared again. The golden core also shattered and turned into a strong wave of spiritual power that rushed in all directions. The three of them bore the brunt of the attack. Liang Xianfeng did not care. The violent air wave was constantly weakened, blocked, and divided in front of Liang Xianfeng. Finally it turned into a breeze. With Liang Xuanfeng's help, it was much easier for Zhu Xianming and Lu Ping to resist the impact of the air wave. The three of them exchanged glances. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng turned around and returned to the side of the mountain, ready to break the seals on the cupboard. Lu Ping wanted to follow, but he didn't want to expose his trump card too much. Zhu Xianming, on the other hand, started searching around the pavilion for other valuable items. Lu Ping walked to the next light barrier, only to find that it had already been destroyed by the shockwave when the golden core of the Crystal Palace cultivator was destroyed. The golden light was nowhere to be seen. Lu Ping's heart sank and he hurriedly ran toward the entrance of the pavilion. From afar, he saw the golden escape light like a headless fly, bumping around in front of the last layer of the light curtain at the entrance of the pavilion. Lu Ping casually extinguished the escape light and heard a roar from the light curtain outside the pavilion. Then, the restriction of the entire pavilion shook as if it was going to be destroyed in the next moment. Lu Ping's face changed and he made a few hand seals. The light curtain at the entrance of the pavilion flickered and the situation outside the pavilion appeared in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping looked back and saw that Liang Xianfeng and Zhu Xianming had heard the noise and rushed over. He quickly said in a deep voice, "The cultivators outside have broken into the inner layer of the cave mansion. Now there are cultivators everywhere outside the pavilion. Many of them have already started fighting. Now, a group of cultivators is outside the pavilion attacking the defense array. Uncle Master, did you get the Skywind leaf?" When Liang Xianfeng heard that it wasn't the cultivators from the Crystal Palace, he immediately relaxed. When he heard Lu Ping's question, his face immediately lit up and he nodded. "Yes, I did. Later we'll take advantage of the chaos when the cultivators come in and break out of the encirclement. If we accidentally get separated, then we'll meet up at the inn on Silver Sword Island in 3 days. Be careful and stay alive." Liang Xuanfeng's last sentence was actually for Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping's strength had already impressed the two of them, his cultivation was still the lowest among the three of them. At this moment, several more attacks hit the light curtain, causing it to shake and shatter. Outside the pavilion, more than 10 core forging cultivators rushed in, followed by many blood condensation cultivators. Zhu Xianming threw a magic tool over. Lu Ping caught it and saw that it was the magic tool the cultivators from the Crystal Palace used to block the three's attacks. The crystal jade token with the word, "guard" written on it. Zhu Xianming said, "This is the defensive magic tool of that person. His flying axe has already been destroyed and you happen to have no defensive magic tool. Use this magic tool for now." Lu Ping thanked her and didn't ask what else Zhu Xianming had gained in the pavilion. The cultivators that rushed into the pavilion searched everywhere. Lu Ping used the remnants of the pavilion's restrictions to isolate the three's auras. While the others were busy searching for treasures, the three of them rushed out of the pavilion together. No, these three have already entered. They weren't among the people that rushed in just now. Just as Lu Ping and the others were about to rush out of the pavilion, one of the cultivators finally noticed something was wrong and shouted, "Damn it, why did I say there was nothing in the pavilion? It turns out that the three of them got it first. Kill them. Leave the treasures behind and I'll spare your lives." For a moment the crowd was agitated. 7 to 8 core forging perfected masters shouted and attacked together, surrounding the three of them. Perfected Liang Xianfeng took the lead and sent a mid-stage core forging cultivator blocking the door flying. He shouted, "Leave and blend into the crowd of cultivators who are looking for treasures." Then he stood in front of the door and flicked his hands continuously. 7 wind wheels attacked the cultivators that were chasing after him. While the cultivators behind him were blocked, perfected Liang Shenfeng turned into dozens of streams of wind and disappeared in front of everyone. Using perfected Liang Xuanfeng's cover, Zhu Xianming moved her feet and appeared hundreds of feet away. With another flash, she became one of the cultivators who were looking for treasures. Lu Ping could tell that Zhu Xianming had used a small flying mystic art. But unfortunately, even the flying mystic instrument, the magic cloud bracelet, that he had been using all this time, was swallowed up by the collapsing space in Ziyue Cave Heaven. Fortunately, Lu Ping had obtained a mysterious jade slip on Fei Ling Island back then. It recorded a lot of Fei Ling sect's secret techniques. With every step Lu Ping took, a figure appeared. Although he was not as fast as Zhu Xianming, the 18 figures were able to disrupt the cultivators who were chasing after him. Art of Sea Deception. After Lu Ping advanced to the core forging stage, his ability to use spells had undoubtedly improved. These 18 figures could be said to be exactly the same as Lu Ping. They were very lifelike. Although they would be exposed quickly under the detection of divine sense, they had greatly distracted the cultivators who were chasing after him. When Lu Ping turned around a building, there was only a mid-stage core forging cultivator behind him. The mid-core forging realm cultivator was overjoyed when he saw that no one was chasing after him. He thought that he would be able to take all the spoils for himself this time. He transmitted his voice to Lu Ping, "Brat, hand over the thing in your hand. Where are you going to run now?" However, Lu Ping did not care. He did not stop for a moment. At the same time he kept making hand seals around him. At first, the cultivator was a little surprised, but along the way nothing unexpected happened. The cultivator was sure that Lu Ping was bluffing. When he saw that Lu Ping was still running away, he suddenly lost his patience. He opened his mouth and a small flying needle shot towards Lu Ping's back. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly turned around. The last hand seal in his hand was pushed by Lu Ping's vigorous true essence. It formed the last seal in Lu Ping's hand. Buzz, a loud sound came. Under the horrified eyes of the cultivator, the array formation restriction that was destroyed by the cultivators suddenly recovered. It formed an invisible light curtain, trapping the cultivator inside the array formation. Lu Ping pulled up several light curtains in front of him in an attempt to block the flying needle. However, these light curtains did not have the slightest effect in front of the flying needle. A flying needle-type magic weapon. Lu Ping secretly cursed his bad luck. He actually encountered such a strange magic weapon. It was simply unavoidable. The golden scale sword swept out, and the flying needle moved slightly to avoid it. In any case, the golden scale sword was not as flexible as the flying needle. Although the cultivator was trapped in the array formation restriction of the Immortal's Cave by Lu Ping, the flying needle was still under his control. It relentlessly chased after Lu Ping. Lu Ping gave a cold snort. Lu Ping threw a black pill with a hint of gold towards the flying needle. After the pill flew out, Lu Ping's hand seal changed. Suddenly, it burst into a poisonous flood dragon. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it pounced towards the flying needle. War Pill, Myriad Poison War Pill. This was a unique war pill that Lu Ping had refined using the Dark Prison Poison Flame and his own intermediate-grade pill furnace. He had refined it according to the Myriad Poison Pills pill recipe. More importantly, Lu Ping had added Myriad Poison Serum to dozens of 1,000-year and 500-year-old spirit grasses. Under the influence of Lu Ping's master-level alchemy technique, he had refined 2 Myriad Poison War Pills. Originally, Lu Ping had refined these war pills on a whim. He did not expect that it would actually come in handy. After the flying needle pierced the body of the poisonous flood dragon, a chi-chi sound came out. The originally sarcastic expression of the cultivator trapped in the array formation by Lu Ping was suddenly replaced by a ferocious expression. Ah! A painful howl sounded out. The spiritual sense and true essence attached to the flying needle were quickly corroded. The flying needle pierced through the poisonous flood dragon and was about to fly towards Lu Ping. But unexpectedly, the poisonous flood dragon had already turned around in midair. The poisonous flood dragon opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of venom at the poisonous needle that had just flown out of its body. The poisonous flood dragon's black body turned transparent as it spat out the venom. However, the flying needle suffered another heavy blow and the cultivator in the array formation once again cried out in pain. Lu Ping took advantage of the greatly weakened spiritual sense and true essence of the cultivator on the flying needle to slash down with the golden scale sword. With a zheng sound, the flying needle was shattered into several pieces by the golden scale sword. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of the cultivator's mouth. At the same time, his head slightly tilted back. It was obvious that his spiritual sense and true essence had suffered heavy damage. Although flying needle-type magic treasures were the most difficult to defend against and defensive magic techniques were difficult to block, they were extremely fragile. When used against an enemy, they relied on their nimbleness to make it impossible for the opponent to catch them. However, once they collided with an opponent's magic treasure, the magic treasure itself would most likely suffer heavy damage. Lu Ping couldn't care less about the flying needle that was 3 feet away from him. His body was drenched in cold sweat and he forgot to withdraw the protective aura chi around his body. With a wave of the golden scale sword, he charged towards the trapped cultivator in the array formation. The cultivator was at the 4th layer of core forging. If it was on an ordinary day, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't be his opponent. However, Lu Ping was extremely familiar with the array formation of the heavy profound Immortal's cave. Taking advantage of the cultivator's greed and arrogance, he imprisoned the cultivator in the array formation and almost turned him into a target. Then he destroyed his magic treasure, causing him to suffer heavy injuries. Now Lu Ping had the intention to kill him and steal his treasures. Chapter 299. In the end, Lu Ping still underestimated the strength of a mid-stage core forging cultivator. The arrays inside the profound heavens cave could only be used to trap enemies. Lu Ping wielded the golden scale sword, but it still couldn't do anything to the cultivator trapped inside the array. A muffled sound was heard and the entire array shook. While the cultivator was resisting Lu Ping's attack, he still had the strength to use a small drumstick to attack the surrounding array. Only now did Lu Ping feel that his offensive methods were really lacking. Aside from the 12 laws, Lu Ping only knew a few sword techniques or magic treasures. The Genshin Grand Array was Lu Ping's last resort, so he naturally wouldn't use it lightly. When Lu Ping was in the blood condensation realm, he could rely on his strong magic power and superb swordsmanship to be invincible among cultivators in the same realm. However, after condensing his gold core, his cultivation was the lowest among cultivators in the same realm. The magic treasures in his hands were no longer as advantageous as before. Moreover, battle techniques that had reached the realm of intent had become common. Some outstanding cultivators like Zhu Xianmeng had already cultivated a minor divine ability. Lu Ping coldly snorted. Just as the cultivator inside the array was attacking in all directions, Lu Ping flicked his hand and threw out a red bead. It was the Scarlet Afterglow bead. The Scarlet Afterglow bead flew above the cultivator, and countless red threads fluttered down, wrapping around the cultivator inside the array. The cultivator seemed to know that this magic treasure was very difficult to deal with. A layer of protective shield lit up in front of him, and a 3-colored halo flowed around the shield. A minor divine ability, another minor divine ability. Lu Ping's own protective earth energy had only condensed 2 kinds of natural oddities, and he still needed one more to form a minor divine ability, the Water Curtain True Astral Shield. As the red threads wrapped around the cultivator's protective earth energy changed into various shapes. It seemed that the cultivator's minor divine ability was not very strong. Natural oddities were very rare. How many people could be like Lu Ping, who used jars and ponds to condense their protective earth energy? The cultivator propped up his protective earth energy to buy time. The small drumstick in his hand flew up and hit the Scarlet Afterglow bead in the air. Lu Ping's golden scale sword parried the 4 top-grade magic treasures that were entangled with it and slashed at the small drumstick. At the same time, the Scarlet Afterglow bead tried to dodge it. However, the Scarlet Afterglow bead, which was in a state of casting, was still a step too late. The golden scale sword was once again entangled by the 4 magic treasures. The small drumstick hit the Scarlet Afterglow bead, causing it to wail and fall down. Lu Ping felt as though he had been punched in the chest and he felt suffocated. Fortunately, Lu Ping did not store the Scarlet Afterglow bead into his core space. Otherwise, this attack might have damaged his divine sense and caused him to suffer some injuries. However, just as the Scarlet Afterglow bead was struck down, the cultivator's minor divine ability was finally broken by the tightening red threads. Immediately after, the cultivator cried out in alarm as his shoulder was pierced. Lu Ping had long since activated the Netheraqua sword. It was not easy for him to find the flaw in the attack. Unfortunately, the cultivator was 1 step ahead of him and he was able to avoid being hit in the heart. The Netheraqua sword was meant to kill with a single strike. After failing to hit its target, Lu Ping hid the Netheraqua sword again. However, the cultivator was already on guard against it. The possibility of a successful sneak attack was close to 0. It could only serve as a distraction. Fortunately, The Nether Aqua Sword's attack had caused the cultivator to suffer more injuries. Lu Ping retrieved the Scarlet Afterglow bead, which had suffered a great deal of damage. He did not have the time to check it. Instead, he reached out with his hand and a golden ball of water, only 1 foot in diameter, suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping formed several hand seals and the golden ball of water transformed into a 3-foot-long strange 4-legged golden worm, which pounced towards the cultivator. The cultivator was trapped in the array and could not move around like Lu Ping. There were many techniques that he could not use. In the face of Lu Ping's attack, he could only face it head-on. Originally, the cultivator did not think much of Lu Ping. However, he did not expect that this cultivator, who had just reached the core forging stage, would have so many tricks up his sleeves that he was forced into such a difficult position. Seeing Lu Ping form a strange 4-legged golden worm and pounce towards him, the cultivator's set of 4 magic tools were entangled with the golden scale sword. He did not dare to use the small drumstick because he was wary of the Nether Aqua Sword. The cultivator had no choice but to use a top-grade protective magic tool in front of him. At the same time, he propped up the minor divine ability that he had just broken. However, once these magical techniques and divine abilities were broken, they would be taken back by the cultivator. After a short period of recuperation, they could recover their original power. For the cultivator, after his divine ability had been broken, he tried to forcibly activate it again. Not only would its power not be as great as before, but the power of the divine ability would also drop significantly after the battle. If he forcibly activated it too many times, it could even completely destroy the divine ability. The 4-legged golden worm slammed into the defensive magic tool, causing water to splash and shatter. However, before the cultivator could figure out why Lu Ping's magical technique was so useless, he felt the true essence attached to the defensive magic tool rapidly melt, as if it had encountered ice and snow in boiling water. The cultivator was shocked and quickly withdrew his defensive magic tool. However, the surface of the magic tool had been corroded and was almost ruined. After Lu Ping used the water control technique, the golden liquid that had been smashed into water once again formed a 4-legged golden worm in midair and pounced towards the cultivator again. The cultivator did not dare to use his magic tool to block it. A series of magical techniques struck the golden worm. The golden worm was either smashed or blocked, but the cultivator's true essence, without exception, was greatly corroded and consumed. In fact, Lu Ping's true essence was also rapidly being consumed. Although the myriad poison liquid could also be controlled by the water control technique, it was clearly not weak when used against an enemy. However, this was a method that harmed the enemy and oneself. When Lu Ping used the corrosive true essence and the magic tool to attack the opponent, his own true essence was also greatly consumed and corroded. Fortunately, Lu Ping had used the myriad poison liquid to condense his own protective gang qi, so the true essence in Lu Ping's body was somewhat resistant to the myriad poison liquid. The Nether Water Sword finally launched its attack. After being caught by the cultivator, the little drumstick, relying on the quality of its magic tool, chased after it and beat it fiercely. The 4-legged golden worm had already pounced on the cultivator's protective magic power. The tricolored gang qi was quickly corroded by the myriad poison liquid, and even strange colored smoke rose above the cultivator. The 4-legged golden worm's body, which was originally shining with a golden light, had also become somewhat dim due to the consumption of the cultivator's true essence. The cultivator was already seriously injured and could only passively take a beating after being imprisoned in the formation. His advantage of having a high cultivation level and abundant true essence was completely worn away by the myriad poison liquid. Finally, the cultivator's strength was exhausted. The 4 top-grade flying swords were completely suppressed by the golden scale sword, and the little drumstick was also helpless against the looming nether water sword. Just then, a large silver jade seal suddenly appeared above the cultivator's head and immediately came crashing down. The landslide, that had been hidden by Lu Ping for a long time, finally revealed its ferocious face. With an unparalleled force, it pressed down on the cultivator's head, becoming the last straw to defeat the mid-core forging cultivator. The already fragile protective magic power, which had been corroded by the myriad poison liquid, was shattered by the landslide. This time, even the cultivator's ears were overflowing with blood, and his face was as pale as paper. The landslide rose and fell again, leaving Lu Ping with a look of despair and disbelief in the mid-core forging cultivator's eyes. Lu Ping swallowed a triple transformation spirit pill. When he was in the blood condensation realm, it was a pill that could restore magic power. But now that Lu Ping had advanced to the core forging realm, it was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. Helplessly, Lu Ping could only swallow another triple transformation spirit pill. In this dangerous place, Lu Ping had to constantly adjust himself to his best state. After putting away the cultivator's storage bracelet, there were not many things that could make Lu Ping's eyes light up. The set of 4 top-grade magic tools that could fight against the golden scale sword also did not enter Lu Ping's eyes. Only the small drumstick was a magic treasure. Lu Ping felt that it might be useful to him, so he put it away. Strictly speaking, this unlucky cultivator was not weak. After all, he had 2 magic treasures, the flying needle and the small drumstick. He had also cultivated a small magic power, which could be regarded as quite an achievement among the mid-core forging cultivators. Unfortunately, he fell into Lu Ping's trap and was confined in the narrow space of the array formation. He could only display 60% or 70% of his strength, and in the end he died in Lu Ping's hands. The heavy profound Immortals Cave was growing more and more chaotic. At present, the cultivators from Heaven Breaking Sword Faction and Water Crystal Palace were attacking the heavy profound Grand Palace's defensive magic array. The cultivators who were trying to fish in troubled waters were also attacking the Grand Palace in a chaotic manner. The booming sounds of magic arts could be heard without end. However, the Heavy Profound Hall was the most important place in the Heavy Profound Cave Mansion. It was also the main hub of the entire mansion's defensive array. Naturally, it was not something that a few core forging cultivators could easily break. Lu Ping looked at the group of cultivators surrounding the hall. Their cultivation was at least at the mid-core forging stage. With great difficulty, he suppressed the greed in his heart to get a piece of the pie and walked towards the back of the cave mansion. There were many cultivators who had the same idea as Lu Ping. Most of them were single rogue cultivators or like Lu Ping whose cultivation was not good enough. These cultivators appeared around the cave mansion, deliberately avoiding each other to avoid conflict. After coming to the cave mansion, Lu Ping naturally had his own purpose, and that was the spiritual vein of the cave mansion. Naturally, Lu Ping would not have the idea of moving the spiritual vein. That was simply an act of courting death. The spiritual vein of this cave mansion could only belong to Skyrend or the Crystal Palace. Moving the spiritual vein was a complicated process, and there was at least a medium spiritual vein in this cave mansion. It was far from the small spiritual vein that Lu Ping had moved before. This was also why the 2 sects were now at ease to attack the Heavy Profound Hall instead of sending people to protect the spiritual vein first. Lu Ping's goal was the spiritual gathering pearl. This cave mansion had been hidden in the sea for nearly 4,000 years. How could a medium spiritual vein not condense a spiritual gathering pearl? The spiritual vein was the foundation of all the defensive arrays in the Heavy Profound Cave Mansion that could last for 4,000 years. Naturally, the protection was extremely tight. What Lu Ping relied on was some of the restrictions of the Fei Ling sect that he learned from the mysterious jade slip that he brought out of Fei Ling Island. Chapter 300. The ground of the Immortals Cave Mansion was also under the protection of the Immortals Cave Mansion. DeBeo couldn't use the Earth Escape technique to go underground to find the spiritual vein. After Lu Ping arrived at the Immortals Cave Mansion, he found a remote place. Seeing that he didn't attract anyone's attention, Lu Ping made a few hand signs in succession. The ground within a radius of 10 feet suddenly rumbled and shook. Then Lu Ping quickly left. Soon, cultivators who heard the sound came to investigate the nearby area. A moment later, Lu Ping also pretended to be a cultivator who was attracted by the ground shaking and wandered around the area where he had just cast the hand signs. At this moment, 4 cultivators from the Crystal Palace rushed in the direction of Lu Ping. The 4 of them had an aggressive appearance and the aura of their cultivation pressed down on all the cultivators in the area. The cultivation of the 4 people was not necessarily enough to suppress the cultivators on the spot. Of the 4 people, 2 were at the mid-core forging realm and 2 were at the early core forging realm. One of them had the same cultivation as Lu Ping, but the name of the Crystal Palace was too big. The surrounding cultivators who didn't want to provoke them left the area. Lu Ping also left, but DeBeo was still underground. Previously, Lu Ping used his half-baked spirit clear eyes to find that the spiritual chi in this area was the thickest in the Immortals Cave Mansion besides the Heavy Profound Hall. Presumably, this was the place where the spiritual vein of the Immortals Cave Mansion passed through. Therefore, Lu Ping broke the restriction on the ground and barely opened an opening. He put DeBeo in and bet on whether or not he could find the spiritual gathering pearl. This was not like the time when Lu Ping activated the restriction light curtain in the Immortals Cave Mansion. This time, it was equivalent to opening a hole in the entire Immortals Cave Mansion's protective array. The amount of true essence consumed and the movement caused was naturally not small. After Lu Ping left, he used the invisibility technique and then used the restriction in the cave to cover his tracks. He sneaked back in the dark and watched the 4 people not far away. The 4 cultivators in the Crystal Palace saw that there were no eyesores around them. The 6th-stage core forging realm cultivator, who should be the leader of the 4, said, "Hurry up. Skyrend and the other idiots haven't noticed yet. With the senior brothers there, they will never know that there is another important place in the Heavy Shen cave besides the refining room, the storage room, and the Heavy Shen hall." The 4 of them quickly placed an array disc on the ground within a radius of 30 feet. At the same time, they also placed some other spiritual materials in the surroundings in a regular pattern. Lu Ping did not have a deep understanding of array formations, so he could not tell what kind of array formations the 4 of them were setting up. He heard the weakest Crystal Palace cultivator ask, "Senior Brother Mu, the spirit vein in the Heavy Shen Cave Mansion really passes through here. Don't make any mistakes." The leading cultivator of the Crystal Palace with the highest cultivation was Senior Martial Brother Mu. He said, "It can't be wrong. According to the incomplete records in the Fei Ling Sect's Jade Slip we obtained, the spirit vein in Zhongshen's immortal cave indeed passes through here." Another mid-stage core forging realm cultivator interrupted, "Senior Brother Mu is an expert in array formations. His judgment will not be wrong. Let's see if we can gain anything." Another early-stage core forging realm cultivator also curiously asked, "Senior Brother Mu, Senior Brother Gao, what treasure are we looking for this time? Why would Heavy Shen Laozu hide his treasure in the spirit vein?" The 2 mid-stage core forging realm cultivators, Senior Brother Gao and Senior Brother Mu, looked at each other. Senior Brother Gao said, "Junior Brother Zhang, Junior Brother Wan, didn't you notice that as a cave mansion with 2 medium spirit veins, something is missing? It seems like something is missing." Junior Brother Wan, who was first-stage core forging realm, hesitated. Then he suddenly realized and said, "And that's right. Such a big cave mansion, why is there no spirit herb garden in it?" Junior Brother Zhang hesitated and said, "After all, Heavy Shen Laozu is a refiner, not an alchemist. What's wrong with not growing spirit herbs?" Senior Brother Mu shook his head and said, "Junior Brother Zhang was born in a famous cultivation family in the East Sea. He is also a cultivation genius. Since he was young, he has never lacked all kinds of cultivation resources. In the cultivation world, cultivation resources are always in short supply. Any cultivator who wants to open a cultivation cave will open a spiritual herb garden in any place where spiritual herbs can grow. This is almost common sense. Junior Martial Brother Zhang is already a core forging cultivator. When the time comes, don't forget to open a spiritual herb garden." Junior Brother Zhang blushed and said, "I'm ashamed. Thank you for your advice, Senior Brother." When Junior Brother Wan heard that Senior Brother Mu confirmed his guess, he was surprised and asked, "Why did Heavy Shen Laozu open a spirit herb garden underground?" Senior Brother Mu and Senior Brother Gao looked at each other and smiled. This time it was Junior Brother Zhang who spoke first. "Is it a spatial magic tool?" Heavy Shen Laozu hid a spatial magic tool underground. Not only is it hidden, but it can also make full use of the power of the spirit vein. Senior Brother Gao praised him. Junior Brother Zhang has a long history of learning, so his knowledge is quite good. As they spoke, the 4 finished setting up the formation. Senior Brother Mu said, "I'm going to open the formation. When the time comes, I will tear a hole in the formation on the ground. Because of the formation's protection, there won't be any movement. Junior brothers, you still have to pay attention to the surroundings to avoid people spying on you." After the 2 agreed, Senior Brother Mu made a few hand signs and the 4 formation plates were activated. The formation on the ground suddenly cracked a few feet long. Different from Lu Ping, there was no movement around. The formation also didn't react violently like when Lu Ping tore it. When Senior Martial Brother Gao saw that Senior Martial Brother Mu had opened the array formation, he quickly shook the spirit beast pouch on his waist, and a 1-meter-long pangolin fell to the ground. Senior Martial Brother Gao pointed at the ground, and the pangolin immediately disappeared into the ground. Lu Ping listened to the conversation of the 4 and finally understood. No wonder he felt that there was something wrong with the Heavy Shen cave abode, especially when he asked Debao to look for the spirit gathering pearls in the spirit vein. This feeling was especially strong. He always felt that this cave abode was missing something. It turned out that this cave abode occupied a large area and had a grand atmosphere. However, there wasn't a single spirit herb garden. Immediately Lu Ping started to worry. The pangolin was obviously a spirit pet controlled by senior brother Gao using some kind of forbidden secret technique. Its cultivation had already reached the late blood condensation realm. If they met Debao underground, Debao would definitely not be a match for the pangolin. Senior brother Gao would also know through the pangolin that there were other cultivators coveting the treasures in the spirit vein, even if Lu Ping didn't go for the spatial artifact. Now they could only pin their hopes on Debao's sly character. Lu Ping's spirit pets were willing to follow him, and Lu Ping didn't place any restrictions on them. Therefore Lu Ping knew nothing about Debao's situation. He could only hope that it could detect danger in advance and escape. Fortunately, although the pangolin was a mid-level demonic beast, and its cultivation was higher than Debao's, that was only in terms of strength. In terms of earth escape, Debao was not much weaker than the pangolin. Moreover, when Debao entered the mid-blood condensation realm, he refined the condensed blood bead from a pangolin, which further enhanced his earth escape. Sure enough, a moment later, senior brother Gao shouted, "Not good. There's a demonic beast underground. It's actually a spirit-seeking mouse. It can run very fast. Quickly check if there are other cultivators around." Junior brother Zhang and junior brother Wan heard the news and quickly looked around. Senior brother Mu frowned and asked, "How is it?" "We haven't found it yet, but we found 2 spirit-gathering pearls. One of them was snatched from the spirit-seeking mouse by Tai Shan. However, this mouse is very slippery. When it saw that it was no match for Tai Shan, it turned around and ran." "Ah! Senior brother, save me." Suddenly 2 screams came from afar. Senior brother Mu and senior brother Gao were shocked. They quickly took out their magic treasures and got up to help. However, as soon as they moved, cultivators from the east, south, and north surrounded them. A moment later, 3 female cultivators slowly walked over from the west where the screams came from. Lu Ping recognized 2 of them. One was Zhu Xianmeng and the other was Chu Ting. Only the one in the middle that Lu Ping didn't recognize was a late-stage core-forging cultivator. "Who are you? How dare you kill a disciple of the Crystal Palace? Aren't you afraid that the Crystal Palace will be punished?" Senior brother Mu asked sternly without a trace of fear. His expression was exactly the same as that of the spiritual master of the Crystal Palace who died in the hands of Lu Ping and the other 2. The Crystal Palace is still as overbearing as ever. Even when death is at hand, they are still so strong. The middle-aged female cultivator who came with Zhu Xianmeng sneered and said in a sarcastic tone. Chu Ting frowned and said coldly, "Martial Ant Jiang, it's better to act quickly. We don't want any delay." The middle-aged female cultivator, Martial Ant Jiang, snorted coldly. She seemed to be very dissatisfied with Chu Ting's tone, but she was also a little afraid. She took out a golden saber and rushed toward the 2 mid-stage core-forging cultivators of the Crystal Palace. The other 5 cultivators, except for Chu Ting, also launched a siege. Senior brother Mu and senior brother Gao were no match for 4 hands. Not to mention that there was not only a late-stage core-forging cultivator holding the line, but the other 4 were also not ordinary mid-stage core-forging cultivators. The 2 of them had just sent out a talisman for help, and a moment later, they were beaten to death by the 5 people. Chu Ting came to the place where senior brother Mu had torn open the protective array. After melting an elixir in her hand, she sprinkled the elixir liquid on the ground. Suddenly, a rich fragrance wafted in the air. Chu Ting made a few hand signs and the elixir liquid soaked into the soil. The fragrance in the air immediately disappeared. Lu Ping looked at the elixir in Chu Ting's hand with a solemn expression. He was already holding the golden scale sword in his hand, ready to attack at any time. The leader, Martial Ant Jiang, urged, "Girl Chu, are you done?" The 2 people of the Crystal Palace had already sent out a talisman for help. If the heavy mystery hall had not been breached and the cultivators were not fighting for the treasures inside, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace would have already come to help. Mei Qin is getting more and more arrogant. She only sent out a first-stage core-forging girl for such an important mission. Chu Ting was focused on the matter in front of her and ignored Martial Ant Jiang's mockery. Zhu Xianmeng, who was beside her, said coldly, "She doesn't need to deal with these trivial matters. Martial Ant Jiang is enough to deal with it. My master is about to break through to the Dharma realm. If there is anything that Martial Ant Jiang is unable to do, my master will naturally take care of it." Zhu Xianming mocked her for making a mountain out of a molehill and saying that she was not as smart as Immortal Mei. Martial Ant Jiang was about to explode, but when she heard Zhu Xianming say that my master is about to break through to the Dharma realm, she forcibly suppressed her anger. The other 3 mid-stage core forging cultivators were like clay statues, ignoring the confrontation between martial ant Jiang and Zhu Xianmeng. At this moment, a hole suddenly appeared in the ground. Lu Ping, who was hiding at the side, felt his heart skip a beat. Then he saw a pangolin with blurred eyes coming out of the ground. After senior brother Gao of the Crystal Palace died, as a forbidden beast, the pangolin would also be seriously injured. It might even lose its mind and die of madness. However, Chu Ting had used some kind of elixir to lure the pangolin out of the ground. Lu Ping had obviously guessed what Chu Ting was going to do and was worried that De Bao would also be lured out by her. Therefore he was prepared to snatch the pangolin when he appeared. Chu Ting patted the pangolin's head with her palm. The pangolin opened its mouth and spat out 5 spirit-gathering pearls, 1 big and 4 small, and then fell to the ground, dead. Chu Ting put the 5 pearls away and said, "It's a pity that the pangolin didn't find a spatial instrument in the spirit vein. But it's not bad to have 5 spirit-gathering pearls. This big one is obviously enough to nurture a small spirit vein. Who dares to kill a disciple of the Crystal Palace?" As soon as Chu Ting's voice fell, an angry roar came. Before the person arrived, his aura had already oppressed them. "Oh no, it's a master at the peak of the core forging realm. Damn it. What are those cultivators in the boudoir doing to collect information? I can't believe there's such a master among the cultivators of the Crystal Palace." Martial Uncle Jiang hurriedly cursed. He reached out his hand and smashed the array plates set by the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. The torn array on the ground immediately closed up. At this moment, a figure was rushing toward them from the direction of the heavy mystery palace. "Go!" Martial Uncle Jiang shouted. The 6 cultivators of the core forging realm in the boudoir quickly flew away. The master of the Crystal Palace who was chasing after them roared angrily and chased in the direction of the 6 cultivators. Then another 5 cultivators of the middle and late stage of the core forging realm from the Crystal Palace rushed to the place where the array was set up. Looking at the mess on the ground, everyone's face turned pale. Then they stood up and rushed in the direction of the master of the core forging realm from the Crystal Palace with a murderous look. After everyone left, Lu Ping quickly walked to the place where the array was set up. He quickly made a few incantations with his hands. He didn't care about the true essence in his body being drained like water. The ground shook and a huge rat scurried out of the ground. Lu Ping grabbed De Bao and didn't wait for him to make a sound. He put him into the spirit beast bag and quickly left. Not long after Lu Ping left, a few cultivators with long swords on their backs rushed over. Seeing the scene in front of them, how could they not know what had happened? They laughed out loud, gloating. Then they quickly stopped. They saw more than 10 cultivators of the Crystal Palace also rushing over. They fiercely glared at the cultivators of Skyrend. Finally, they couldn't stand the strange look in Skyrend's eyes and also chased in the direction of the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. After the cultivators of Skyrend left, other cultivators rushed over to check. They were discussing who had eaten the heart of a bear and the leopard to have the guts to kill the master of the core forging realm from the Crystal Palace. At this time, Lu Ping had already walked to a place where there was no one. After putting up a few light curtains, he took De Bao out. Seeing that De Bao wasn't hurt and wasn't confused by Chu Ting's pill, he let out a long sigh of relief. De Bao squeaked a few times and then spat out a spirit-gathering pearl the size of half a fist from its mouth. Lu Ping was happy and said, "I didn't expect to have such a harvest. This spirit-gathering pearl is enough to nurture a small spirit vein." This spirit-gathering pearl was the same size as the large spirit-gathering pearl that the pangolin spat out. Hearing Lu Ping's praise, De Bao became even more excited and sometimes squeaked. Lu Ping had a strange look on his face. He saw De Bao spit out a golden house that was half a foot long from its mouth. Chapter 301. This is. Lu Ping looked at the small golden house in his hand in surprise. Was this the spatial magic item that Laozu of Zhongxian had hidden in the spiritual vein? Lu Ping knew that he had taken advantage of the Crystal Palace this time. His facial expression changed a few times. He poured a stream of Zhenyuan into the golden house, intending to refine it. Unexpectedly, when Lu Ping's Zhenyuan poured into the golden house, it was like entering a bottomless pit. Lu Ping was startled. Although this golden house was not a cave magic item, its quality was definitely above Qianzhong Su. It gave Lu Ping the feeling that he had when he refined the Nachuan cauldron. With Lu Ping's strength of core forging stage, he actually could not refine it in a short period of time. Lu Ping decisively stopped the input of Zhenyuan. Now was not the time to refine the magic item. After putting the golden house into the storage ring, Lu Ping walked towards the heavy mystery palace that was about to collapse. He mixed in with the cultivators who were still wandering around the heavy mystery palace looking for treasures. At this moment, most of the restrictive spells in the heavy profound immortals cave had been broken by the cultivators by force. Apart from the artifact forging room, storage room and heavy profound grand hall, which were the three most important places that had been looted by the Crystal Palace and Sky-Splitting Sword sect, there were still many other buildings. The defensive formations of these buildings had been broken by the cultivators who came later and looted them wantonly. Quite a number of cultivators who were favored by fate had obtained a lot of benefits. However, what followed were scenes of battles between other cultivators driven by greed. Lu Ping wandered in the heavy mystery palace. It was already empty. The ground was a mess. Many magic items, jade slips, jade boxes, and jade bottles were scattered on the ground. It could be seen that when the heavy mystery palace was broken by the cultivators, there was a chaotic battle. Lu Ping was wondering how the palace could hold up until now and had not collapsed. With a slight movement of his divine mind, he found that there were a large number of arrays, restrictions, and talismans flashing on the walls of the palace from time to time. Along the way, it could be said that Lu Ping had mastered a lot of the restriction spells of Failing Sect that he had learned from the mysterious jade slip. Seeing the flickering lights on these walls, his face suddenly changed dramatically. Lu Ping rushed out of the heavy profound grand hall and saw that there were still a large number of cultivators shuttling back and forth inside the cave mansion. Many cultivators who were unwilling to give up were still rummaging through the various buildings, hoping to find the hidden treasures. As Lu Ping rushed out of the cave abode, he cast a sound amplification spell and shouted, "Everyone retreat quickly. The protective array is about to collapse." When the cultivators in the cave heard this, their expressions changed dramatically. They quickly looked up at the light shield of the protective array above their heads. They saw that the seawater outside the light shield was constantly turbulent. From time to time, the fish in the sea curiously bumped into the light shield and peeped at the situation inside the cave. There was no change on the light shield, there were no signs of it collapsing. When the crowd saw that the cultivator who issued the warning was only a first-stage core forging cultivator, they all cursed, "What kind of knowledge does this kid have? What nonsense! How can the protective array arranged by heavy profound grand hall Laozu collapse so easily? I'm afraid this kid wants to scare us away and then come back to take advantage of us. Quickly get out of here or you'll stay here forever." Lu Ping turned a deaf ear to the curses and threats from the others and continued running out of the cave dwelling. He didn't have the time to stop and explain in detail. He was running for his life now, and he had already done his part by reminding them before he left. There were also cultivators who heard Lu Ping's warning and wanted to retreat. Seeing that Lu Ping left without looking back, some cultivators who originally thought that Lu Ping had some kind of plan also hesitated. In any case, the cave abode had almost been cleaned up by the cultivators. Staying here was just to pick up some scraps that were looked down upon and hope to find some undiscovered treasures. When Lu Ping came out of the cave abode's protective array, he looked back and found that less than half of the cultivators had followed him out. Lu Ping sighed and quickly fled towards the sea. Although core forging stage cultivators didn't fear the pressure of the seawater at the bottom of the sea, when the great array protecting array collapsed, the seawater suddenly pressed down. Even late core forging stage cultivators wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Just as Lu Ping came out of the sea, a muffled rumbling sound suddenly came from the bottom of the sea. Then the calm sea suddenly sank several tens of feet, and the surrounding seawater surged, creating waves that were tens of feet high. The waves rippled into the distance and directly destroyed a reef island not far away. The cultivators who followed Lu Ping out of the sea looked at the scene in front of them with lingering fear. Lu Ping glanced at them indifferently, turned around and turned into a stream of water and flew away. Not long after Lu Ping left, more than 10 core forging enlightened masters rushed out of the sea in a sorry state. Surprisingly, half of these enlightened masters were late core forging cultivators, and the rest were mid-core forging cultivators at the 5th or 6th layer. As for early core forging cultivators and blood condensation cultivators, there was not a single one among them. After these enlightened masters came out, their bodies were wet, and their hair was disheveled. Many of the cultivators' protective magic tools and magic treasures were broken into pieces, and many of them coughed out a mouthful of blood. Obviously they were already seriously injured. At this time, Lu Ping was hiding in a cave at the bottom of the sea. The blood condensation demonic beast that originally occupied the cave had already been swallowed by Samling. Now Lu Dague was crawling at the entrance of the cave to protect Samling. Because it was not easy for him to return to the sea, Samling became playful and had already disappeared without a trace. Lu Ping's entire body was surging with true essence, and his divine sense had already penetrated deep into the golden house. He was only one step away from successfully refining it. In Zhong Xian's cave, when Lu Ping received the golden house, he was slightly disappointed. In Lu Ping's opinion, with Zhong Xian's Laozu's identity as a grand refiner, this golden house should be a grotto heaven magic treasure. However, it was only a spatial magic tool. However, when Lu Ping began to refine this magic tool, he discovered that the difficulty of refining this golden house was much harder than the Nachuan cauldron. Suddenly, the golden house in Lu Ping's hand shone brightly. Finally, the refining was completed. Lu Ping let out a long sigh. Lu Ping threw the golden house on the ground, and the golden house suddenly became 3 feet big. Lu Ping smiled, reached out and pushed open the door of the golden house and walked straight in. The space in the golden house was much larger than the 1,000-bell millet. First, there was a large spirit herb garden. This spirit herb garden had not been taken care of for 4,000 years. It was nourished by the spirit vein underground, and the spirit herbs inside were growing on their own. Although it was messy, and there were more weeds than spirit herbs, each spirit herb was old and full of medicinal power. Moreover, the number of spirit herbs was also very considerable. Lu Ping was overjoyed. Among the spirit herbs here, the majority were millennium spirit herbs, and most of them had already matured. Lu Ping first cleaned up the spirit herb garden and reclaimed it. He then harvested the 1,000-year spirit herbs and 500-year spirit herbs that he could use for alchemy purposes. However, there were still a lot of 1,000-year spirit herbs growing in the garden. Lu Ping didn't know what to do. Because Lu Ping was an alchemy grandmaster, he only had 4 or 5 core forging realm Dan recipes. In addition, he also had the heart tempering Dan recipe. So, Lu Ping could only look at the 7 or 8 millennium spirit herbs in the spirit herb garden and sigh. At the thought of the heart-dissolving pellet, Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Through the spirit herb garden in the golden house, Lu Ping had already collected all the 1,000-year-old spirit herbs he needed to concoct the heart-dissolving pellet. Among the 3 most important spirit herbs, Lu Ping already had 2 of them. Only the yin-yang branch was left. The golden house was buried in the spirit vein of the Zhong Xian Immortal's cave for 4,000 years. If Zhong Xian Laozu had planted millennium spirit herbs in the golden house, with the additional nourishment from the spirit vein, not only would they have matured, but they would also be able to be used for alchemy. Lu Ping looked around, but he couldn't find any traces of millennium spirit herbs. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. When he looked up, Lu Ping suddenly realized that he had only looked at a small space in the golden house. In front of him, there was a huge mountain that was almost 100 feet tall. Lu Ping was very suspicious. The golden house was a spatial magic tool. Compared to other spatial magic tools, the space inside it was too big. It was almost equivalent to a heavenly abode treasure. However, when Lu Ping refined the golden house, he had already confirmed that there was no heavenly abode treasure restriction inside the golden house. Lu Ping started to walk towards the mountain. He seemed to be walking fast, but he was actually walking slowly. In just a moment he had reached the waist of the mountain. There he saw a place that was sealed by a magic array. Lu Ping was very happy. Currently, the magic array of Fei Ling sect was almost defenseless against Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping hadn't used the method to open this sealing magic array before. Lu Ping made a few hand seals. After losing the nourishment from the spirit vein, the magic array seal became a lot dimmer. After Lu Ping made the hand seals, a small millennium spirit herb garden appeared in front of Lu Ping's eyes. It was exactly the millennium spirit herb garden that Lu Ping had been hoping for. Stone spirit grass, jade imperial flower, 7-star lung leaf grass, cloud jade branch. The corner of Lu Ping's eyes twitched. There were 96 matured millennium spirit herbs here. There were also close to 200 matured millennium spirit herbs that were still growing. This was a place that could tempt even a Dharma adept to go to. What is this? Lu Ping carefully passed through the obstruction of the spirit herbs and arrived in front of a millennium spirit herb. Half of the millennium spirit herb looked withered and ferocious, while the other half was flourishing with leaves and flowers. If this wasn't a yin-yang branch, then what was it? Lu Ping couldn't suppress the joy in his heart. This was because he found another yin-yang branch not far away from this one. Lu Ping carefully picked the 2 yin-yang branches and stored them in a jade essence box that he had prepared in advance. Then he sealed them with a spirit sealing talisman. All the spirit herbs needed to refine the forging heart pill had been prepared. All that was left was Lu Ping's cultivation and alchemy skills. As long as Lu Ping could improve his cultivation to the second layer of core forging and consolidate it, he could immediately make preparations to advance to the middle stage of core forging. Lu Ping came out of the Spirit Herb Garden and resealed the Spirit Herb Garden with a magic array. Then he continued towards the top of the mountain. At the center of the lonely mountain in the space of the Golden House, a small lake with a circumference of 10 meters appeared in front of Lu Ping. Chapter 302. On the edge of the small lake, there was a stone tablet with 3 ordinary characters engraved on it: quenching fire pool. Lu Ping couldn't believe his eyes. Was his luck really that good? Lu Ping suppressed the excitement in his heart, and with a step, a stream of Zhenyuan passed through the ground into the small lake. With the input of Lu Ping's Zhenyuan, the water in the small lake only made a gurgle sound and a wave appeared. Lu Ping's Zhenyuan was so huge that if it was ordinary seawater, it would be enough to make a huge wave that was dozens of feet high. However, in this lake, it could only make a few inconspicuous waves. Lu Ping used the water control technique, and the Zhenyuan in his body flowed into the lake like a stream, and the lake finally began to slowly ripple. Lu Ping's hands made 9 water control seals in a row, and the whole lake water finally began to slowly flow up after Lu Ping's face turned red. The weight of this lake water was even heavier than gold and iron. Streams of lake water rolled up, and recondensed into a huge ball of water in the sky. When Lu Ping's Zhenyuan was almost consumed by half, the whole lake water was almost lifted into the air by Lu Ping's water control technique. Lu Ping stretched his head to look at the bottom of the lake, and saw a black ball of water the size of a head spinning at the bottom of the lake. Zhenyuan heavy water. It really was Zhenyuan heavy water. Low-grade heaven-tier spirit water of heaven and earth, one of the 4 refining treasures of heavy Xian Laozu. Under the heavy pressure of the lake water in the air, Lu Ping didn't have time to be happy. After confirming that it was indeed Zhenyuan heavy water at the bottom of the lake, Lu Ping finally put the ball of water that was affected by the Zhenyuan heavy water back into the pool. The dark essence heavy water was a heaven-grade, low-tier spirit water of heaven and earth. How could heavy profound Laozu waste it recklessly and directly use it for quenching? Obviously, under the influence of the dark essence heavy water, this pool of spirit water, which had already mutated into a second-grade spirit material, was used to quench the newly forged spirit tools and magic treasures. The biggest effect of the profound essence heavy water was that after the cultivator fused with it, the spirituality of the spiritual object would be refined into the golden core by the cultivator's divine sense, greatly increasing the capacity of the cultivator's true essence. Therefore, the cultivators who fused with the profound essence heavy water were all people with vigorous and long-lasting true essence. In the process of fighting, they often didn't have to worry about running out of true essence. Once the battle fell into a stalemate or was besieged, these kinds of cultivators were existences that gave their opponents headaches. Just as Lu Ping placed the mutated spirit water back into the small pond, a faint spiritual energy drifted out. Lu Ping naturally felt it, and he felt even more strange in his heart. The space in the Golden House was far beyond that of an ordinary top-tier spatial artifact. It was not a grotto heaven, but there was not only a spiritual herb garden inside it, but also a seemingly meaningless lonely mountain. Now, there was actually a trace of spiritual energy left in this lonely mountain. Lu Ping was sure that there was no spirit vein in this lonely mountain. Moreover, a spatial artifact could not nurture a spirit vein at all, not even a grotto heaven magic treasure. Only when a grotto heaven magic treasure formed a small kiliacosm like the 7-star sky could the spirit vein be moved into the grotto heaven and not dissipate. Thinking of this, Lu Ping was startled. Could it be? Lu Ping flew down the mountain and returned to the door of the Golden House. Then he took out Qianzhong Su and opened the thick book slowly. The space inside the book was about to be revealed in front of the door of the Golden House. At this moment, the door of the Golden House suddenly opened by itself. Qianzhong Su flew into the Golden House, and the 2 spaces immediately overlapped and merged. Amidst the loud rumbling sound, the merged space continued to expand. Qianzhong Su's body slowly landed on the ground of the space, and then immediately merged with the soil of the spiritual herb garden and disappeared. In the space of the Golden House, the area of the spiritual herb garden suddenly expanded by 3 times. The lonely mountain in the space of the Golden House was forcibly raised by 500 feet, and it stood tall in the newly expanded space like a heavenly pillar. Inside the Qianzhong Su, Lu Ping's several years of business had all settled down in the newly formed space. It was no longer as crowded as before. Just the peach blossom tree spirit alone took up nearly half of the space of the Jianghu. Not mentioning the shock in Lu Ping's heart, the happiest people at this moment were the two Yuan birds inside the Jianghu. Lu Qing came to this new world and she was even more excited. She had already gone to explore this new place and there was no trace of her. The wooden Wanyu quickly followed. However, the changes in the space of the Jianghu also made this shy monster dumbfounded. The amethyst wasps swarmed out of their nest. In this vast space, a large number of spiritual herbs had been nurtured for thousands of years. Even ordinary flowers and plants had accumulated for thousands of years, and their flowers contained a large amount of essence of heaven and earth. This was the place where the amethyst wasps brewed nectar and increased their cultivation. After more than 2 years, Lu Ping had already trained this swarm of amethyst wasps into the Dao Soldier formation. The amethyst wasps were only one step away from entering the blood condensation realm. At that time, Lu Ping's amethyst Dao Soldier formation would be able to multiply and expand, and its power would increase further. Fei Ling's sect was so bold. At this moment, Lu Ping finally understood why Fei Ling's sect wanted to forge the two strange spatial artifacts, Jianghu and the Golden House. It wasn't to create a grotto heaven, but to create a minor kiliacosm. This was a set of combined artifacts. Each of them could be a separate spatial artifact, but after they were combined, the function of this spatial artifact was far beyond ordinary artifacts. It had the potential to surpass a grotto heaven and become a minor kiliacosm. Fei Ling's sect wanted to build another dojo, or rather they wanted to move the dojo on Fei Ling Island into this minor kiliacosm. That small mountain was where Fei Ling's sect's dojo was located. The reason why Lu Ping could feel the spiritual energy on the small mountain was because Fei Ling's sect wanted to use the small mountain as a prototype. After it became a minor kiliacosm, it could be used to nurture spirit veins. This was also why Zhongshen Laozu placed the Golden House in the spirit vein to nurture. Of course, if he wanted to achieve the foundation of a mini kiliacosm, these two spatial celestial devices were far from enough. Perhaps Fei Ling's sect had also refined other matching spatial celestial devices. When they were combined, this space would become larger, and the embryonic form of the world inside would be more complete. Unfortunately, Fei Ling's sect's plan to create a minor kiliacosm had just begun, but it was already destroyed. Otherwise, once it became a minor kiliacosm, the sects in the North Sea might not even be able to find Fei Ling's sect's dojo. Unfortunately, Fei Ling's sect's plan to create a minor kiliacosm had just begun, but it was already destroyed. Otherwise, once it became a minor kiliacosm, the sects in the North Sea might not even be able to find Fei Ling's sect's dojo. Lu Ping swallowed a medicinal pellet and cultivated to recover his lost true essence. At the same time he was thinking about his future plans. The appearance of the Golden House, the discovery of a large number of thousand-year-old spirit herbs, and the mystic heavy water forced Lu Ping to adjust his cultivation plan. One day later, Samling, who was playing outside, suddenly ran back in a panic. Lu Ping was shocked and he immediately realized that he had been careless. As Samling's cultivation became higher, the characteristics of the green sea snake on his body became more and more obvious. The identity of the green sea snake was extremely special among the demon race. If he was discovered by other demon cultivators or human cultivators, it would be a disaster for him. There was no time to communicate with Samling, so Lu Ping directly put Samling into the Golden House. That place was naturally much stronger than the spiritual beast pouch that could only be used for hibernation. Then he came out of the underwater cave and came to the surface of the sea. He felt waves of spiritual energy coming from the surface of the sea a few miles behind him, and from time to time, he could also hear the dull roars of spells. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense and did not find any danger lying in ambush nearby. So he summoned Samling and asked him a few questions. Then he frowned and looked at the source of the spiritual energy fluctuations behind him. It turned out that when Samling was playing in the sea, someone had discovered his identity and chased after him. The direction of the person chasing him was the direction of the battle. Lu Ping muttered to himself for a while, then used the invisibility art and slowly approached the battle. The roars of spells were getting louder and louder. Lu Ping carefully spread out his divine sense. In front of him, there were two early-stage core forging cultivators fighting. One of them was even someone that Lu Ping knew. Lu Ping had a strange expression on his face. He used his divine sense to probe the other person. Unexpectedly, that person was extremely vigilant. His divine sense, which was no weaker than Lu Ping's, formed a wall and firmly blocked Lu Ping's divine sense. Since you're here, then show yourself. Since he had been discovered, there was no need for Lu Ping to hide, so he flew over the sea. The cultivator who had discovered Lu Ping did not give up on attacking Lu Ping just because it was difficult to tell if he was a friend or foe. Obviously, he thought that with Lu Ping's appearance, even his enemies could not do anything to him. Ever since Chu Ting learned about the appearance of Zhong Xian's cave mansion, she planned an attack on the Crystal Palace with her boudoir. However, after the operation began, a series of bad luck found her. First, after killing the 4 core forging masters of the Crystal Palace, she did not find the spatial magic tool that Zhong Xian Laozu might have hidden in the underground spirit vein. Then, she did not expect that there was a peak core forging master among the cultivators of the Crystal Palace, and he chased her all the way. During the battle, several people in the boudoir were injured. If it weren't for Martial Uncle Yang, who suddenly appeared out of nowhere and joined forces with Martial Uncle Jiang to block the pursuit of the peak core forging master of the Crystal Palace, the boudoir would have fallen into the siege of the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. Just when Chu Ting thought that everyone was out of danger, the boudoir, the Crystal Palace, and the cultivators of Skyrend who were watching from afar were suddenly ambushed by dozens of East Sea demon cultivators. After the battle, everyone split up to break out of the encirclement. Chu Ting escaped under the cover of second senior sister Zhu Xianmeng and martial uncle Yang, but she encountered the demon cultivator in front of her. This graceful demon cultivator was originally pursuing something, but as soon as he saw Chu Ting, he was instantly shocked by her beauty, and he'd long since forgotten about his pursuit and insisted on taking Chu Ting as his wife. How could Chu Ting be willing to allow that? Thus the two of them started fighting. Chu Ting was carefully guided by Taoist Plum, and she was talented. With her master-level alchemy skills, she pushed her cultivation to the peak of the first level of the core forging realm in just 3 to 4 years. She was proud and arrogant, and she had always looked down on cultivators of the same level. Chu Ting originally thought that although the cultivation of the third-level core forging realm demon cultivator was far above her, it would be easy for her to escape. She did not expect that the strength of the person in front of her was so much higher than her. No matter what Chu Ting used, the person in front of her was able to resolve it. Looking at the person in front of her calmly dealing with her attacks, obviously thinking of capturing her alive after her chi was exhausted, Chu Ting suddenly felt a burst of powerlessness. Chu Ting did not expect to meet Lu Ping in this situation. Chapter 303. Without saying a word, Lu Ping's golden scale sword soared into the air and slashed at the beast cultivator. In the sky, the golden scale sword absorbed more than 600 psychic sword lights into its body. Lu Ping had used almost all his strength in this attack. The beast cultivator's calm expression turned serious after witnessing Lu Ping's swordsmanship. But then he said indifferently, "Ha, this is what you humans call a hero saving a damsel in distress, right? You are indeed capable. But in the end, this beauty is still mine." After the beast cultivator advanced to the core forging stage and transformed into a human, he had the power to open a mansion and set up a government office in the demon clan. Unlike the core forging stage human cultivators who called themselves Taoist masters, the beast cultivator preferred to call himself mansion master. A gourd suddenly appeared in the beast cultivator's hand. He tipped the mouth of the gourd down, and a dark blue wave swept out towards the golden scale sword that was slashing at him. The golden scale sword shook as if it had turned into a big fish swimming against the current, trying to ignore the impact of the dark blue water and continue to slash at the beast cultivator. Unexpectedly, once the golden scale sword came into contact with the dark blue water, Lu Ping suddenly felt an invisible force tearing the golden scale sword's body from all sides. Not only could the golden scale sword not maintain its countercurrent posture in the water, but even Lu Ping's divine sense was greatly disturbed when it came into contact with the golden scale sword. The golden scale sword's momentum was fierce, but it slashed at him as if it was drunk. The beast cultivator laughed loudly and said, "Although your swordsmanship is strong, what can you do to my precious gourd? This extreme blue magnetic water is a rare treasure that I found in the depths of the East Sea. It's the best to break magic tools and magical powers like yours." Lu Ping snorted coldly. This extreme blue magnetic water could at most restrain his swordsmanship. To say that it could break Lu Ping's swordsmanship was the beast cultivator's verbal attack. The golden scale sword shook. Without the influence of the extreme blue magnetic water, Lu Ping's huge divine sense immediately regained control of the golden scale sword. The beast cultivator smiled and said, "What a powerful divine sense. It seems that you have cultivated many secret techniques, but are you also an alchemist like this beauty? Or are you an array master? However, this palace master's divine sense is not inferior to yours. Chu Ting placed her high-grade pill furnace above her head, firmly protecting herself. At the same time, she controlled the bright yellow flames to fight against the enemy. At the same time, Lu Ping saw a wind bag appear in Chu Ting's hand. As she controlled the flames, the wind bag blew out a scorching gust of wind. The wind increased the intensity of the flames, causing the power of Chu Ting's bright yellow flames to greatly increase, burning towards the Yao cultivator. The demonic cultivator blew at the mouth of the gourd. This time, a muffled roar came from the gourd. A gale swept out and immediately suppressed Chu Ting's wind bag. The bright yellow flame was blown back by the gale from the gourd and burned towards Chu Ting. Fortunately, Chu Ting's fire control technique was excellent. The demonic cultivator was not too ruthless. Before the flames burned her, Chu Ting regained control of the flames. She did not let the fire seed she had refined burn her. Otherwise it would really be a joke if it was spread out. The demonic cultivator also had an expression of lingering fear. He said, "Fortunately, I was too heavy-handed this time and almost hurt this palace master's beauty." Chu Ting's face was as gloomy as water. On the surface she seemed to ignore the demonic cultivator's incessant chatter, but in her heart she was already furious. Both Lu Ping and Chu Ting were alchemists. They had their own experiences in the cultivation of divine sense. Their achievements were far beyond cultivators of the same level. Moreover, the demonic cultivator's divine sense cultivation was also quite extraordinary. It far surpassed Chu Ting's and was on par with Lu Ping's. Lu Ping and Chu Ting joined forces to fight against the enemy. However, the demonic cultivator still looked calm. However, his eyes swept away the laziness from before. He said to Lu Ping, "It seems that you are not an alchemist. You are obviously cultivating a water-attributed cultivation method. Moreover, your attainments in it are extremely high. In the future, if your cultivation is like this palace master, I am afraid that even this palace master will not be your opponent." After Lu Ping's help, the main attack against the demonic cultivator became Lu Ping. Chu Ting could only play a role in restraining the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator also became more serious when facing the two of them together. Chu Ting looked at Lu Ping with some surprise. She naturally knew that Lu Ping was an authentic alchemist. Moreover, after the Northern Alliance elixir gathering, he defeated the elite alchemists of Purple Talisman Pavilion, Wind and Thunder Island and Skyrend. His performance in the elixir gathering showed that his alchemy skills were now above hers. At this time, after being inadvertently reminded by the demonic cultivator, she discovered that Lu Ping actually cultivated a water-attributed cultivation method. What was even more incredible was that at this time, Lu Ping's cultivation had also reached the peak of the first layer of the core forging realm. How could this not surprise Chu Ting? Chu Ting had never admired any cultivator of the same generation. Previously, Lu Ping had at most made her think highly of him. Now, Chu Ting inexplicably felt a trace of admiration for Lu Ping. Using a water-attributed cultivation method to control the fire seed in alchemy, how much effort and price must be paid to achieve the achievement of an alchemy grandmaster? The gourd in the demonic cultivator's hand was obviously a treasure. When Lu Ping and Chu Ting joined forces to fight, the gourd had already spat out 3 kinds of heaven and earth mysterious treasures of water, wind and fire, which made Lu Ping very envious. The demonic cultivator's expression changed, and suddenly a strange fan appeared in his hand. He waved it to his side, and with a hum sound, the nether water sword, which had already sneaked 10 feet away from the demonic cultivator, was sent flying by the fan. Taking advantage of the moment when the demonic cultivator's attention was attracted by the nether water sword, a bronze mirror suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's hand. A golden light flashed from the mirror and instantly sank into the gourd in the demonic cultivator's hand. The red flames spewing out of the gourd suddenly stagnated, and then returned to normal. Chu Ting, who was suppressed by the red flame, suddenly crushed a pinky-sized black object in her hand. Then she stretched out her hand and sprinkled the black powder into the bright yellow flame. The bright yellow flame, which was originally in decline, suddenly rose and pushed back the red flame. The demonic cultivator glanced at the golden mirror in Lu Ping's hand and shook the gourd in his hand. The red flame suddenly stopped retreating. Lu Ping's golden scale sword changed, and he used the 1,000 Piles snow sword art. Among the 1296 sword lights, there were 648 psychic sword lights, which turned into 3 sword waves and rushed toward the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator's face was solemn. He stretched out his hand and pointed, and the gourd once again spewed out the extreme blue magnetic water toward the sword waves. However, the psychic sword lights in each sword wave suddenly jumped out, each turning into a sword dragon, which passed through the obstruction of the extreme blue magnetic water and rushed toward the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator was not afraid in the face of danger. He waved the strange fan in his hand, and a sword dragon was suddenly blown into pieces. The demonic cultivator pointed to the gourd again, and a gust of wind swept out, and another sword dragon was blown into dizziness. The third sword dragon had already approached. The demonic cultivator curled his lips, and a rotating shield suddenly lit up around his body. Protective small magical power. The sword Jiao was instantly shredded into pieces. The enlightened master looked at Lu Ping mockingly, only to see Lu Ping still pointing his finger at him. The golden scale sword that was hidden among the shredded sword Jiao abruptly flew out, and to the enlightened master's surprise, the golden scale sword shattered the enlightened master's small defensive skill. Zhenyuan Sword Qi. Before the demonic cultivator broke free from the surprise, his face suddenly changed, and a golden halberd appeared in his hand again, directly blocking in front of him. Dang! The water nether sword was knocked away by the halberd. Lu Ping's mind trembled, and the body of the water nether sword was obviously damaged. This halberd was the demonic cultivator's life source magic weapon. The golden halberd in the demonic cultivator's hand exuded a dazzling brilliance, and the surrounding spirit Qi under the influence of the halberd seemed to be restless. The golden scale sword followed closely after the water nether sword, but was knocked away by the halberd. The halberd then swept horizontally, wanting to completely break the golden scale sword. Obviously, the halberd's quality was far above the golden scale sword. The corner of Lu Ping's mouth twitched, and the golden scale sword deftly avoided the sweep of the halberd, luring it away from the demonic cultivator's side. Immediately after, a behemoth suddenly appeared above the demonic cultivator's head, silently falling towards the demonic cultivator. When the demonic cultivator sensed that something was wrong, Landslide was already right in front of him. At this moment, the demonic cultivator's face finally changed, not in fear but in rage. The demonic cultivator in front of him suddenly disappeared, and a behemoth that Lu Ping had never seen before suddenly appeared in front of the two. It was a giant fish. The giant fish leaped up, and its huge fish tail drew a beautiful arc in the air, colliding with the falling landslide. The surface of the sea suddenly became turbulent, and waves tens of feet high were stirred up. Some were caused by the landslide colliding with the fish tail, and some were caused by the giant fish leaping into the sea. Landslide flew away in response, and Lu Ping's divine sense suffered another heavy blow. Immediately he had a splitting headache, and the golden core in his heart core space also jumped. Koan fish. Chu Ting's face finally changed. Hurry up and go. Lu Ping shouted to Chu Ting beside him, and then turned into a stream of water, fleeing into the distance. Chu Ting woke up from her shock, and bright yellow flames wrapped her whole body, turning into a yellow light in the sky, and instantly caught up with Lu Ping. A dull roar came from the bottom of the sea, and traces of blood appeared on the surface of the sea. A solemn voice came from the bottom of the sea. This palace master's surname is Kong Yuan. Do you dare to leave your names? Lu Jiao. Chu Ting. We will meet again in the future, and then we will decide who is the winner. Kong Yuan's voice came from afar, but he could no longer hear Lu Ping and Chu Ting's reply. An island-like ridge flashed on the surface of the sea, and the roaring waves spread out, only calming down after an unknown amount of time. Outside of Silver Sword Island, two streaks of light, one fire and one water, descended from the sky. Chu Ting's face was deathly pale, and Lu Ping coughed a few times. He coughed so quickly that traces of blood could be seen at the corner of his mouth. How are you? Chu Ting asked gratefully. I'm fine. Lu Ping swallowed a threefold vitality augmenting pill. Seeing the pill in Lu Ping's hand, Chu Ting was stunned. Lu Ping glanced at her, and nonchalantly put the jade bottle of threefold vitality augmenting pill into his storage ring. Why did you appear here? This time it was Lu Ping's turn to ask her. He Liang Xianfeng and Zhu Xianming had come to Silver Sword Island to explore Zhong Xian's cave mansion. Presumably he could not hide it from Chu Ting. However, what puzzled Lu Ping was why Chu Ting was separated from her boudoir, and was being hunted by the demon cultivators alone. Composing herself, Chu Ting roughly told Lu Ping about how her boudoir ambushed the Crystal Palace cultivators in Zhong Xian's cave mansion, and how they were ambushed by the demon cultivators. Of course, she only briefly mentioned the matter of them trying to seize Zhong Xian's spatial artifact hidden in the spirit vein by Laozu. Lu Ping was well aware of this, so he naturally did not say anything. What, Martial Uncle Liang Shenfeng was seriously injured? Lu Ping's expression changed and he asked. Chapter 304. Who could injure Uncle Master Liang? Lu Ping was shocked when he heard the news. Liang Shenfeng was an 8th-layer core forging cultivator, one of the 7 core forging cultivators of Zhenling sect known as the 3 Truths and 4 Spirits. Liang Shenfeng had cultivated several types of wind elemental spells. Even if he was besieged by cultivators of the same level, even if he couldn't win, it wouldn't be difficult for him to escape. Chu Ting looked at Lu Ping's shocked and angry expression. She didn't know why Lu Ping was like this, but she still said, "It's a shame. We were being chased by the cultivators of the Crystal Palace and were at a disadvantage." However, Uncle Master Liang suddenly appeared and joined forces with Uncle Master Jiang to resist the attacks of the peak core forging cultivators from the Crystal Palace. However, the monsters attacked and Uncle Master Liang fought with several late core forging cultivators to protect me and second senior sister from breaking out. After we broke out, we saw Uncle Master Liang vomiting blood from his injuries. Lu Ping's face was gloomy as he flew towards Silver Sword Island with Chu Ting. Along the way his mind raced. It seems like this Taoist Master Mei is closely related to the sect. But Junior Martial Aunt Liang was willing to risk her life to protect her disciple. Could it be that this Taoist Master Mei and Junior Martial Aunt Liang are related? Chu Ting followed Lu Ping back to Silver Sword Island. She saw Lu Ping looking around the inns, residences, and shops along the way. He was no longer as anxious and angry as before. At this moment, Lu Ping's face lit up with joy. He stopped in front of a shop and looked around nonchalantly. Then he walked in with Chu Ting following behind him. "Uncle Master, how are your injuries?" Lu Ping's heart finally relaxed when he saw Liang Shenfeng. Although Liang Xuanfeng's face was pale, he could still heal himself. His life was not in danger. Zhu Shenming had long been ignored by Lu Ping. Lu Ping clearly felt that it was not worth it for Liang Shenfeng to be injured because of the 2 girls. He was also angry at Zhu Shenming and Chu Ting. When a cultivator reached the late core forging stage, their strength increased greatly. However, they were also at their weakest because they had to make the final preparations to condense their Dharma power. At this time it was taboo for a cultivator to be injured. A little carelessness could affect the cultivator's foundation, causing the golden core to be unable to fuse with the divine will at the last moment to reach the ideal grade. This would weaken the cultivator's foundation after advancing to the Dharma power stage, reducing the possibility of a cultivator advancing to the Dharma power stage, or even completely cutting off a cultivator's hope of advancing to the Dharma power stage. Liang Shenfeng was one of the late core forging cultivators of Zhenling who had the highest chance of advancing to the Dharma power stage. He was Zhenling's future leader, Laozu, and was related to Zhenling's legacy. Obtaining the Sky Wind Leaf could be said to be a great opportunity for Liang Shenfeng. If his golden core could not fuse with the Sky Wind Leaf because of his injuries, lowering the final grade of his golden core, it would be a huge loss for Zhenling. Zhu Xianming saw that after Lu Ping entered the cultivation room, he did not look him in the eye. When he saw his 5th junior sister following behind him, he naturally knew that Lu Ping was blaming them for dragging Liang Shenfeng down. He wanted to explain, but he opened his mouth, but no words came out. Liang Shenfeng opened his eyes and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Lu Ping had returned unharmed. He said, "This expedition was supposed to give you all some benefits, but I didn't expect the East Sea Demon Tribe to interfere. It seems like the East Sea is not peaceful anymore. Fortunately, the 3 of you are safe and sound, or else I would be a sinner." The 3 of them said that they did not dare. Then Lu Ping asked, "Uncle Master, how is your injury? Will it affect?" Liang Shenfeng naturally understood what Lu Ping meant. Zhu Xianming and Chu Ting were also very nervous. Reverend Liang Shenfeng smiled bitterly. "I didn't expect Water Crystal Palace's Yao Wanshan's cultivation to have reached such a level. After he was defeated by senior apprentice brother Jiang back then, it could be said that he became courageous after being humiliated. Although his cultivation is a step behind senior apprentice brother Jiang, his strength is not low at all. If it wasn't for the fact that he used up too much of his transcendence energy, the demon cultivators who came later wouldn't have taken advantage of him." The 3 of them were shocked when they heard Liang Xuanfeng's last sentence. Clearly, the thing that Lu Ping did not want to happen the most had happened. Chu Ting was full of guilt while Zhu Xianming was on the verge of tears. Lu Ping glanced at the 2 of them in disgust. "Uncle Master, is there any way to remedy this?" Lu Ping's expression naturally did not escape Liang Xuanfeng's eyes. He thought to himself, this child's character is very similar to my senior sister's. He always distinguishes between his own people and outsiders. It's just that he is a little narrow-minded. It's just that what happened back then? Liang Shenfeng saw the sincerity in Lu Ping's question and smiled happily. It's fine. Actually, I had already prepared a high-grade Earth-level Heaven and Earth Spirit item. It was only because I heard about the Tianfeng leaf that I decided to take a gamble. Unfortunately, I still lacked some opportunities. Obtaining the Heaven and Earth Spirit item damaged my foundation. In the end, I could only use the original high-grade Earth-level Heaven and Earth Spirit item to make up for the loss of my divine will. However, I believe that with my skills, even if I can only form a 6th-grade golden essence, I have the confidence to break through to the Dharma stage. Lu Ping said fiercely, how can this be compared? If Uncle Master fuses with a sky-level Heaven and Earth Spirit item, you can at least form a 7th-grade golden essence. Not only will you be able to form a Dharma power, but you will also be able to enter the mid-Dharma stage in the future. If it's only a 6th-grade golden essence, you will only be an early Dharma adept for the rest of your life. You will still be at the bottom of the Dharma adepts. Ever since Lu Ping had entered the core forging stage, he had a deeper understanding of the all-encompassing North Sea wave listening technique. Many of the unresolved problems had been easily solved by Lu Ping's eyes. In addition, Lu Ping had been asking Liang Shenfeng for advice on training over the past few days. His knowledge and experience were no longer the same as when he was a blood condensation adept. After Lu Ping's words, Liang Shenfeng sighed and did not say another word. Zhu Shenmeng and Chu Ting were sitting on pins and needles. For a moment, the training room fell silent. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly said, Uncle Master, if you have the help of the spirit forging pill, can you reach the level of forging the Skywind leaf? Zhu Shenmeng and Chu Ting looked at Lu Ping in shock. Liang Shenfeng smiled and said, I know what you want to say, but the spirit forging pills have already been distributed by Laozu to a few seniors who have already reached the peak of the core forging stage. Besides, there's not enough time. Lu Ping's expression became even darker. At this moment, Chu Ting said, there's another pill that might be able to save Uncle Master Liang. Liang Shenfeng asked in surprise, she even passed the bell cauldron pill to you? Although Liang Shenfeng was asking Chu Ting, he was looking at Zhu Shenmeng. Lu Ping could see that Zhu Shenmeng and Liang Shenfeng seemed to be closer, but Chu Ting was very unfamiliar with Liang Shenfeng. Zhu Shenmeng nodded and said, 5th junior sister is Master's only disciple. Master has already passed on all the pill recipes below the Dharma stage to 5th junior sister. Just as Lu Ping's heart was burning with hope, he heard Zhu Shenmeng say worriedly, although the bell cauldron pill can restore the root of Uncle Master's injury, 5th junior sister's current alchemy skills are not able to make this kind of pill with 4 to 5 kinds of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. Master is also in seclusion in the Northern Alliance, it's too late to invite Master over. Liang Shenfeng had obviously thought of this. When he heard this, he said indifferently, it's okay. Uncle Master doesn't have any hope of reaching the 7th grade golden core. Being able to enter the Dharma stage is already an achievement for most late-stage core forging cultivators. How do you know if you don't try? Lu Ping's spirit was lifted at this moment and he said, in any case there are 2 Grandmaster alchemists here. Although they have just broken through, there's still hope. If they can refine one, won't Martial Uncle be saved? Liang Shenfeng waved his hand and said, you don't know how difficult it is to make this kind of pill. Although I am not an alchemy master, where are you going to find those kinds of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs? Moreover, there are dozens of kinds of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs. Chu Ting was also sad. Obviously, she was not confident that she could make this kind of pill, nor did she have enough spirit herbs. Give me the recipe. Lu Ping's words surprised the 3 of them. Zhu Shenmeng could not help but ask, Junior brother Lu, do you have the 3,000-year-old spirit herbs to make the bell cauldron pill? Lu Ping naturally knew about the bell cauldron pill. Lu Ping also knew about the kinds of spirit herbs needed to make it. In fact, in the alchemy world, most of the spirit herbs needed to make pills were public. The importance of the recipe was not in the type of spirit herbs needed to make the pill, but the process of making the pill. This was the secret of the recipe. Otherwise, how could alchemy masters collect the spirit herbs from ordinary cultivators? Therefore, Zhu Shenmeng directly asked Lu Ping if he had the 3,000-year-old spirit herbs instead of asking how he knew about the spirit herbs needed to make the bell cauldron pill. Lu Ping found a sealed 3,000-year-old spirit herb garden halfway up the lonely mountain in the Golden House. There were nearly 100 mature 3,000-year-old spirit herbs, among which were the 4 kinds of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs needed to make the Bell Cauldron pill. When Liang Xianfeng saw that Lu Ping accepted the recipe from Chu Ting's jade slip, he was surprised that he had the 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. But he still said, "Nonsense. How long has it been since you became an alchemy master? You've only made a few cauldrons of core forging stage pills. How dare you make such a high-level pill? 3,000-year-old spirit herbs can't be wasted like this." Lu Ping suddenly snickered and said, "Martial uncle, you're right. Up until now, I've only concocted 5 or 6 cauldrons of early core forging medicinal pellets. It's not because I don't have any spirit herbs, it's because I, a great grandmaster alchemist, only have 3 or 4 core forging medicinal pellet recipes." Lu Ping was trying to reap some benefits, but it was hard for others to adapt to the sudden change in attitude. Liang Xianfeng knew that Lu Ping had made up his mind to make the Bell Cauldron pill. Asking for some benefits now was just an act of flattery. Although he was touched, he still laughed and said, "What a joke. I, an alchemy master like Jinling, only have this little bit of accumulation. If this gets out, people will laugh at me for neglecting talents." Then Liang Xianfeng took out 4 jade slips, 3 jade crystal boxes and 2 jade marrow boxes. He said, "These 4 jade slips are the core forging stage pill recipes that I've collected for the past few years. I've already exchanged my collection for pills. I only have 4 jade slips, and one of them was obtained from the Heavy Profound Palace. I was planning to exchange it for a few pills from the Alchemy Pavilion when I returned to the sect. But now you and these spirit herbs will benefit from it. But don't forget me if your alchemy skills can reach the late core forging stage in the future." Chapter 305. Lu Ping took a quick look at the recipes. There were 2 recipes for early-stage core forging pills, 1 for mid-stage core forging pills, and 1 for late-stage core forging pills. The 3 jade crystal boxes contained about 60 to 70 stalks of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs, and the 2 jade marrow boxes contained nearly 30 stalks of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. Among them, there were 2 stalks of stone grass and blood rot flower, which were used to concoct the Zhongding pill. Lu Ping put these things into his storage ring with a peace of mind. He smiled and said, "Uncle Master, you must be joking. This time I will definitely take advantage of you. I'm afraid that before I can refine late-stage core forging pills, Uncle Master will have already advanced to the transcendent stage. If I continue to concoct pills, I will have to trouble Tianlu Laozu, the only alchemy grandmaster in our sect." When Zhu Xianming heard Lu Ping mention Tianlu Laozu, she immediately looked up at Lu Ping and saw that Lu Ping was also looking at her. Neither of them spoke, but it was as if they could see something in each other's eyes. Liang Xianfeng looked at the 2 of them with a trace of worry in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. After Lu Ping finished speaking, he said, "Uncle Master, I'll go and study this Zhongding pill first. No matter what, I have to give it a try. If I succeed by luck, and Uncle Master becomes the Transcendence Laozu in the future, I will also be able to cling to a big tree." Liang Xianfeng laughed and scolded, "Do you still need to cling to my thigh? You should think about what gift to prepare for your master's Dharma assembly first." In another practice room, after Lu Ping ordered everyone not to disturb him, he opened the Golden House and went in. Chu Ting originally wanted to lend him her high-grade alchemy furnace and bright yellow fire seed, but Lu Ping politely declined. However, Lu Ping asked for some of the black powder that Chu Ting used to increase the power of the fire. On top of Lonely Mountain, Lu Ping had built a small house. Lu Qin and Luan Yu were flying up and down in the sky above the Golden House. In the grass far away, there were 3 large snakes that were more than 30 meters long and as thick as water buckets playing. De Bao had long gone to open up his underground palace, and only De Gui was still loyal to Lu Ping. However, he was quite comfortable soaking in the mutated spirit pool. In the distance, Lu Qin and Luan Yu had made 2 nests on the branches of the peach blossom treant. The demonic aura on the peach blossom treant was getting thicker and thicker. The amount of spiritual energy it absorbed was already close to that of a late blood condensation cultivator. However, Lu Ping still hadn't found a cultivation technique that could be used to cultivate plants. The black powder Chu Ting gave Lu Ping was actually a type of powder made from a second-grade top-grade spirit material that was burned into charcoal. This kind of powder had a great effect on increasing the intensity and burst of fire. It was also a common method used in alchemy. For example, Guan Yu once used a piece of wutong wood to enhance the fire seed's power during the elixir gathering. Lu Ping looked at the peach blossom treant and took out 2 branches that fell from the peach blossom treant from his storage ring. Due to the influence of the psychic wood, these branches were genuine second-grade mutated spiritual materials. In the hands of a smithing master, they were treasures that could be turned into magic treasures. It was a waste to use them to make charcoal. However, it was worth it to use a small amount of them to exchange for a batch of important pills. The Azure Spiritual Fire, the Nachuan Cauldron, the Spirit Explosion Technique, the Purification Technique, the Herb Pestle, the Charcoal, the Amethyst Royal Jelly, the High-Grade Spirit Stone, and the 2 sets of spiritual herbs that Lu Ping barely managed to gather to refine the Bell Cauldron Pill. Lu Ping was taking a gamble. As long as he could refine 1 Bell Cauldron Pill, he would be able to make up for perfected Liang Xuanfeng's damaged foundation. However, Lu Ping only had 5 to 6 days. Once the time was up, perfected Liang Shenfeng would have no hope of restoring his foundation. However, exchanging 2 sets of incomparably precious spiritual herbs for 1 Bell Cauldron Pill was a wasteful act in the eyes of any cultivator. However, it was clear that Lu Ping did not have such an awareness. 5 to 6 days was only enough for Lu Ping to refine 2 batches of Bell Cauldron Pill. Therefore, there was no need for Lu Ping to prepare the 3rd batch of spiritual herbs for the Bell Cauldron Pill. This time, Lu Ping personally used the herb pestle to grind the spiritual herbs. He warmed the cauldron, opened the cauldron, added the herbs, controlled the fire and melted the herbs. However, the heat of the flames was insufficient. It was not because the Azure Spiritual Fire's grade was low, but because Lu Ping's water attribute cultivation technique could not fully unleash the power of the Azure Spiritual Fire. The charcoal was scattered into the fire seed. The spirit fire rose and the melting was successful. The purification technique was still powerful and the entire process of refining the medicinal liquid was smooth. When condensing the pill, the medicinal liquid required a large amount of spiritual energy. However, at this time a problem appeared. Lu Ping's abundant true essence was still sufficient. However, the process of condensing the pill required an explosive absorption of spiritual energy. Lu Ping's water attribute cultivation technique did not have enough time to switch. Even though Lu Ping used the spirit explosion technique to explode 3 high-grade spirit stones in one go, it was still to no avail. The first batch of Bell Cauldron Pill was a complete failure. Lu Ping's expression was emotionless. This was within his expectations. After all, the Bell Cauldron Pill was too difficult to refine. Failure was normal. Success was actually a fluke. After recalling the entire process of refining the first batch of Bell Cauldron Pill, Lu Ping recovered the true essence in his body. He adjusted himself to his best condition and began his second attempt to refine the Bell Cauldron Pill. Warmed the cauldron, opened the cauldron, added the herbs, controlled the fire and melted the herbs. The charcoal powder made from spiritual materials was scattered into the Azure Spiritual Fire. The fire rose sharply and the medicinal liquid was successfully melted. Medicinal liquid purification. Lu Ping mobilized the true essence in his body and transformed it. Although a large amount of true essence was wasted, Lu Ping remained unmoved. The true essence in his body rapidly decreased. Success or failure depended on this one move. 6 high-grade spirit stones exploded. Lu Ping only had 2 high-grade spirit stones left. 4 liquid pills began to condense. Lu Ping decisively shattered 2 of them. The spiritual energy contained in them was quickly absorbed by the other 2 pills that were still in the process of condensing. 2 drops of viscous golden liquid exuding a strong floral fragrance fell into the cauldron. Under the control of Lu Ping's divine sense, they directly entered the 2 remaining pills. Purple Crystal Royal Jelly. Lu Ping's divine sense wrapped around the 2 pills that were in the process of condensing. His divine sense was rapidly being consumed. Spiritual ignition. This was the last and most important step in refining pills above the core forging stage. Every pill above the core forging stage had its own spiritual nature. The higher the grade of the pill, the more difficult it was to refine. In addition to the spirit grass itself, the most important factor was the final process of making the pill's spiritual nature. One of the important purposes of core forging stage cultivation was to fuse the divine sense into the golden core, endow the golden core with a strong spiritual nature, and finally give birth to the Dharma idol. The higher the grade of the pill, the more spiritual nature it would have after refining it, and the greater the consumption of the alchemist's divine sense. Even with Lu Ping's divine sense cultivation, which was almost at the middle stage of the core forging stage, he still felt powerless against the consumption of divine sense. Of course, the most important reason was that Lu Ping's alchemy skills were shallow. He didn't have the slightest experience in refining such a high-grade pill, which resulted in a lot of waste. The consumption of divine sense caused Lu Ping's face to become paler and paler. More and more cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and he gradually felt dizzy. Lu Ping gritted his teeth unwillingly and once again shattered one of the solidifying pills. The burden on Lu Ping's divine sense was greatly reduced. Lu Ping endured the discomfort caused by the huge consumption of divine sense and waved his hand to open the alchemy furnace. A golden pill, like a bird released from its cage, quickly flew out of the furnace. Lu Ping tried to use his divine sense to capture the pill, but unfortunately, Lu Ping had no spare energy to stop the pill from escaping. A pill that was half a step to the Dharma idol had such a strong spiritual nature. However, if he allowed the pill to escape, not only would Lu Ping's previous efforts in refining the Zhongding pill be wasted, but after the pill escaped, it would be unable to maintain its own spiritual nature. In the end, it would lose its spiritual nature and its medicinal power would be lost. Just as the pellet was about to announce Lu Ping's failure in such a mocking manner, a jade essence bottle was already waiting outside for the pellet to escape from the alchemy hut. The moment the pellet left the hut, a jade essence bottle was already waiting for it. The door of the hut opened and Wan Yu's shy face and long neck squeezed in through the gap. Looking at Lu Ping's somewhat dumbfounded face, Wan Yu laughed and said, "If I hadn't been attracted by the sound of your alchemy, would you have succeeded in refining the pill this time?" Lu Ping's head had just gotten rid of the splitting pain, but he was still dizzy. Hearing Wan Yu's words, he felt that it was ridiculous. He had calculated all the difficulties that he might encounter in refining the pill, but he had missed out on the simplest step. If this time, after the pill was out of the furnace, he was unable to keep the pill because of his lack of energy, causing the pill to lose its spiritual nature and medicinal power, he was afraid that he would become the biggest joke in the alchemy world. "I didn't expect your alchemy skills to have reached such a level." In the end, the shy and kind Wan Yu did not further attack Lu Ping and admitted Lu Ping's alchemy skills. At the same time he sighed and said, "Why don't you come in?" Lu Ping regained some of his divine sense. Although his face was still pale, his mind was finally clear. He looked at Wan Yu, who opened the door so wide that only a head and a long neck could fit through. Lu Ping couldn't help but ask in annoyance. "This is the rule of alchemists." Wan Yu finally walked in this time and said, "Without the consent of an alchemist, you can't enter the alchemy room as you wish. How could you forget that I was afraid that you would kill me?" When Lu Ping appeared in front of perfected Liang Shenfeng with a pale face, there were several jade slips placed in front of perfected Liang Shenfeng. Perfected Liang Shenfeng was leisurely looking at the contents of one of the jade slips. When Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting, who were at the side, saw Lu Ping's appearance, they did not think that Lu Ping could create a miracle and their faces immediately darkened. "You're out." Perfected Liang Shenfeng greeted happily when he saw Lu Ping coming out. "Come here quickly. I've definitely made a huge profit from this trip to the heavy mystery hall under the nose of Skyrend and the Crystal Palace. I'll give you a few jade slips to take a look and I guarantee that you'll be grateful." Lu Ping sighed. Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's state of mind was far from what he could compare to. If he became like this, he might resent the two people beside him. Lu Ping reached out and handed a jade essence bottle to Perfected Liang Shenfeng and said, "Uncle Master, I only refined one." Chapter 306. As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting, who were behind him, suddenly raised their heads. Their faces were full of disbelief as they stared at Lu Ping's back with a hint of horror in their eyes. Perfected Liang Shenfeng looked at Lu Ping in a daze, then let out a laugh. "Good lad, I didn't expect you to be able to do this." Lu Ping smiled and did not say anything. He saw a hint of surprise in Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's eyes. Come. Let's take a look at this jade scroll first." Perfected Liang Shenfeng put the Zhongding pill aside and handed a jade scroll to Lu Ping. "Take a look at this first." Lu Ping saw that Perfected Liang Shenfeng was very serious about handing the jade scroll to him. He did not urge him to go into seclusion to refine the Zhongding pill to recover from his injuries. Instead, he took the jade scroll in his hand and read its contents. As soon as he touched the contents of the jade scroll, Lu Ping was shocked. He immediately looked up at Perfected Liang Shenfeng and only continued reading when he saw Perfected Liang Shenfeng nod. After a long time, Lu Ping looked at Perfected Liang Shenfeng solemnly. I didn't expect Uncle Master to have obtained this jade scroll. Now I, Junling, will have one more of the 5 true techniques. Perfected Liang Xianfeng laughed. It's not as simple as you make it out to be. To be able to become a true technique of our sect, other than perfecting it all the way to the late Dharma stage, the most important thing is for a cultivator to practice this technique and eventually reach the late Dharma stage. Junling's Linhai wave listening technique was originally a legacy that Junling had obtained from the failing sect when he participated in the extermination of the failing sect. However, this legacy was incomplete and could only be practiced to the Dharma stage. Later on, Junling's successive generations of Laozu perfected it, but it could only be practiced to the mid-Dharma stage. As such, although the Linhai wave listening technique was Junling's true technique, it could not be compared to the 5 true techniques. Although Lu Ping had a solemn expression on the surface, his heart was already overjoyed. The jade slip in his hand was the complete Linhai wave listening technique. As the saying goes, wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, but find it by chance without even looking for it. This time, perfected Liang Xianfeng followed many cultivators into the heavy mystery palace. Relying on his flying ability, he rushed to Skyrind and the Crystal Palace and snatched several jade slips from under the noses of the cultivators of the 2 sections. Among them, the most important one was the complete Linhai wave listening technique. Liang Xianfeng said, "Legend has it that failing sect has 2 water attribute techniques. One is the Linhai wave listening technique, which is also the most widely spread water attribute technique in failing sect. The other one is rarely practiced. It's said that it's too violent and overbearing for ordinary cultivators to control. Moreover, after the core forging stage, every step forward is extremely difficult." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, but he pretended to be extremely interested and said, "Uncle Master, what's the name of this technique? What's the difficulty in cultivating it?" Perfected Liang Xianfeng shook his head and said, "I don't know about that. When failing sect was destroyed back then, many of the famous techniques in the sect were either lost or divided by the various sects in the North Sea. Only this technique was missing. Although it's famous, it has never appeared in front of others." Lu Ping was a little disappointed, but perfected Liang Xianfeng continued, "With the complete Linhai wave listening technique, I believe it's only a matter of time before this technique becomes the 6th true technique of our sect. Perhaps it'll be realized by your master." Previously, perfected Liang Xianfeng had been intentionally or unintentionally avoiding something in front of Zhu Xianmeng. After seeing Chu Ting, he was even unwilling to mention it to Junling. This time, when perfected Liang Xianfeng mentioned his master, Lu Ping smiled and asked, "Uncle Master mentioned that you want me to prepare a gift for the Dharma meeting for Master. I've been in East Sea for the past few years and haven't served Master. Has Master advanced to the Dharma stage?" When Zhu Xianming heard Lu Ping's words, her eyelids twitched, but she did not show any expression. Chu Ting, on the other hand, looked surprised. Obviously, Lu Ping had a master who was about to become Dharma Laozu. Perfected Liang Xianfeng unintentionally glanced at Zhu Xianming, but it did not escape Lu Ping's eyes. He heard perfected Liang Xianfeng say, "Your master has already condensed the 3rd heaven and earth spiritual item and achieved a high-grade golden elixir. Advancing to the Dharma stage is almost a matter of time. When that time comes, I, Junling, will have the 9th Dharma Laozu." Perfected Liang Xianfeng refined the Bell Cauldron elixir to recover from his injuries and at the same time, replenish the damaged foundation of his body. He temporarily went into seclusion in this inn. Before he went into seclusion, perfected Liang Xianfeng gave Lu Ping a jade scroll. On it was recorded the 18 Merry Swords, one of the Xianling sect's signature sword techniques that Lu Ping had asked him for. Although this sword technique was of the wind attribute and was incompatible with Lu Ping's cultivation method, this sword technique was broad and profound. Although it only had the cultivation method of the artistic conception, there was no higher-level cultivation method of swordsmanship. However, the essence of swordsmanship contained in it was enough for Lu Ping to use as a reference. While Lu Ping was studying swordsmanship, the situation in the East Sea changed greatly. The confrontation between the human and demon cultivators in the East Sea became more and more intense. The reason was that after the opening of the Zhongshen cave, the demon cultivators ambushed Skyrind, the Crystal Palace and a group of mysterious female cultivators outside the Zhongshen cave, causing 7 human core forging cultivators to fall. Among them, 3 were from the Crystal Palace, 2 each from Skyrind and the group of mysterious female cultivators. At the same time, when the demon race cultivators sent cultivators into the profound immortal cave to plunder the treasures, they also destroyed the great array of the immortal cave. If not for a mysterious cultivator seeing through it, the core forging cultivators in the immortal cave would have been wiped out. Even so, after the great array of the immortal cave collapsed, nearly 20 core forging cultivators died, and more than 10 cultivators were seriously injured. Just after the uproar in the East Sea, the news came that the Crystal Palace had issued a wanted order for a mysterious cultivator force called Boudoir in the East Sea. The special thing about this force was that most of the cultivators in this force were female cultivators. This made the cultivators in the East Sea immediately connect the Boudoir with a group of mysterious female cultivators who were also ambushed by the demon clan. At the same time, the Crystal Palace also issued a wanted order for a late-stage core forging cultivator who cultivated the wind attribute. However, after the Crystal Palace announced the wanted order for the Boudoir, a rumor once again spread among the cultivators in the East Sea. After the opening of the Zhongshan cave, 5 people from the Crystal Palace died in the cave. 4 of them were ambushed by the Boudoir. The East Sea was shocked again. 8 core forging cultivators died in a row. Even the powerful Crystal Palace couldn't bear it. No wonder the Crystal Palace issued a wanted order for the Boudoir cultivators to be killed in the entire East Sea. At the same time, news came from the Crystal Palace. This time, the Crystal Palace obtained 2 of the 4 treasures of Zhongshan in the Zhongshan cave, the magic treasure Zhongshan furnace and the earth-rank high-rank purple fire. After the purple fire was ambushed, it was taken away by the demon clan cultivators. However, the other 2 of the 4 treasures of Zhongshan that people were concerned about were not obtained by the Sky-Breaking Sword sect. This time, the Sky-Breaking Sword sect had opened the storage room of the residents of Zhongshan and obtained a large amount of spiritual materials. Among them, there was no lack of top-grade spiritual materials of 2nd and 3rd grade, and a few magical treasures made by Patriarch Zhongshan. When the East Sea cultivators were guessing who got the other 2 treasures, the Crystal Palace released another news that Laozu of Zhongshan had a space celestial device which was used to open up a spiritual herb garden, and the other 2 treasures should be in it. 4 cultivators of the Crystal Palace had found this space celestial device, but they were killed by the cultivators of the Boudoir, and the space celestial device was taken away. The mysterious Boudoir, beautiful female cultivators, space celestial device, the spiritual herb garden that no one had cared about for thousands of years, Skywind leaves, Xinyuan heavy water, and the wanted reward of the Crystal Palace. For a while, the Boudoir became the focus of the East Sea cultivators. Several organizations of female cultivators in the East Sea were attacked, and many female cultivators disappeared, died, or were kidnapped. Some of them might be members of the Boudoir, but most of them were robbed. When the Boudoir was being attacked by the Crystal Palace, the demon cultivators launched another attack on the humans of the East Sea. The snake demons of the East Sea attacked the Shangguan family, a rising medium-sized force under the jurisdiction of the Northern Alliance. The Drumbell Island where the family was located was slaughtered by the snake demons, and only an heir of the family named Shangguanhao escaped. When the news came, the East Sea was shocked again. If the demon cultivators ambushed the human cultivators in the cave of Zhongshan were for the treasures, then this time the snake demons attacked the Drumbell Island and slaughtered the Shangguan family. It was a provocation to the human cultivators. After hearing the name of Shangguanhao from Chu Ting, Lu Ping suddenly thought of the masked cultivator in linen clothes who attacked him on the way back from the listening small building. Could it be Shangguanhao? Because of him, the Shangguan family not only lost Yu Jiangrui, the alchemist who was the best alchemist in the Northern Alliance, but also had to compensate the Li family with a spiritual mine. Li Xiuzhu, whom Shangguanhao had always admired, was completely hopeless. Shangguanhao had every reason to kill him. But why did the snake demons attack the Drumbell Island? Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Was it because of the 3 spirits? Lu Ping shook his head. Obviously, Shangguanhao did not recognize the identity of Samling's green sea snake. Otherwise, the snake demons would not have slaughtered the entire Drumbell Island. The news that he had the green sea snake was probably already known by everyone. So, there should be someone who was present on the day of the robbery, and this person might be a demon cultivator who knew the green sea snake. However, because of the formation, no one could see what was going on inside. Shangguanhao's cultivation was the highest, and Lu Ping himself had used a pill to cut off his scent and other tracking clues. The demon race mistakenly thought that the green sea snake was with him. Lu Ping speculated about what happened at that time. Now he was worried that Shangguanhao would recover from the disaster and spread the news that he had the Green Sea Snake. Then, the cultivator who was being chased by the snake demons in the East Sea would probably be himself. Chu Ting, who was on the side, saw that Lu Ping was distracted. She frowned and said, "This time the demon race suddenly attacked, and the situation in the East Sea is in chaos. It is a good opportunity for us. The plan to expel the Wang family from the fallen secret land must be carried out in advance." Chapter 307. Hearing Chu Ting's words, Lu Ping looked at her strangely and said, "Now the situation of the boudoir is not very good. If they do it again in the fallen mystery land, aren't they afraid that they will become the target of public criticism?" Chu Ting said confidently, "Don't worry. Now the situation between humans and demons in the East Sea is getting more and more serious. Many cultivators have been in constant conflict with the demon cultivators in the outer sea. Small-scale fights are everywhere. The boudoir hides deeper than you think. Once the war between humans and demons breaks out, the top priority is to unite all the human cultivators to fight against the demons. If not, the Crystal Palace will not destroy themselves. At that time, the boudoir can take advantage of the situation and establish their own sect. It is not impossible for them to become the sixth sect in the East Sea." Lu Ping was a little speechless. But from Chu Ting's words he could tell that the boudoir was much stronger than he had imagined. If the boudoir really took advantage of the war between the human and monster races and made great contributions in the war, the 5 great sects wouldn't have an excuse to join forces to destroy the boudoir after the war. However, it was inevitable that the boudoir would be suppressed. Of course, the premise of all this was that the boudoir had enough power to protect itself. Obviously, Chu Ting believed that the boudoir had this power. What about the Northern Alliance? Lu Ping asked. After all, nominally, the Wang family is still one of the 36 medium-sized forces belonging to the Northern Alliance. If we act rashly and alarm the Northern Alliance, we will lose more than we gain. The Northern Alliance and our boudoir have been in contact for a long time. What's more, it is no secret that the Wang family defected to the Crystal Palace. It is just that the Northern Alliance and the Crystal Palace have their own scruples, and no one is willing to fall out with each other. At this time, if we jump out and become the spear of the Northern Alliance, according to the rules of the Northern Alliance, we can challenge the Wang family's position in the Northern Alliance. The Northern Alliance will be more than happy to do that. Besides, this time, you are the nominal leader and it has nothing to do with my boudoir. For the sake of your alchemy master, the Northern Alliance will not make things too difficult for us. Since I'm here, how can my faction compete with the Wang family? If I expel the Wang family, will this faction still be under my control? This was what Lu Ping was concerned about. After all, the Wang clan of the Three Clans Island had 4 enlightened masters. With Lu Ping's experience on Soundwave Island, he was far from a match for them. Even with Qi Lianying, there were only 2 enlightened masters. Moreover, they were only at the first layer of the core forging realm. How could they be a match for the Wang clan that had been operating for hundreds of years? Even if Lu Ping had the help of the boudoir and the Li family, and won with the consent of the Northern Alliance, how could the force that helped Lu Ping be under Lu Ping's control? Brother Lu, you're not from the Eastern Sea after all. You'll have to leave the Eastern Sea sooner or later. As long as you expel the Wang clan, even if this faction changes hands, you'll still be able to make a profit. Chu Ting's words were very clear. This was not Lu Ping's base. Lu Ping was only a spokesperson of the boudoir. After everything was over, Lu Ping could leave with the benefits, but the boudoir of the Wang clan would never let go of the fallen mystery land. How much do you know about your teacher, Miss Chu? Lu Ping changed the topic. I know what you're going to say, Brother Lu. Chu Ting picked up the spiritual tea beside her and took a sip. She continued, Teacher might be closely related to your sect, but he has left the Northern Sea and is now one of the elders in charge of the boudoir. My younger sister is also one of the 24 pavilion masters of the boudoir. My younger sister naturally takes the boudoir as her foothold when she does things. I believe that teacher is the same. Miss Chu, are you so sure that you won't be able to do it once you leave the boudoir? Lu Ping asked unhurriedly. He then said, the boudoir can provide help and the benefits can be distributed, but the force must be under my control. Once it's done, the experts of the boudoir will immediately leave. Chu Ting looked into Lu Ping's eyes and asked, Brother Lu, Are you so confident that you can still hold on to the territory after the boudoir leaves? Even Uncle Master Liang Shenfeng can't stay in the fallen mystery land forever, right? Lu Ping looked at Chu Ting and smiled. Maybe we don't need the boudoir to do anything. We can also expel the Wang clan, but it might take a little longer. Since they could expel the Wang clan, they could naturally defend it. Perfected Liang Shenfeng had been in seclusion for more than a month. Logically speaking, he should have already refined the Bell Cauldron pill and recovered his foundation. Just as Lu Ping was wondering if there would be any changes, he felt the spiritual qi in the surroundings suddenly become restless and slowly flowed towards Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's cultivation room. Lu Ping was overjoyed and quickly walked towards Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's cultivation room. Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting obviously also noticed the change in Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's cultivation room. Not long after Lu Ping arrived, they also rushed over. Perfected Liang Shenfeng had clearly encountered an opportunity to break through. Breaking through from the 8th to the 9th stage of the core forging realm was not like breaking through from the blood condensation realm to the core forging realm, or from the early stage to the late stage of the core forging realm. This was a natural process of breaking through with the accumulation of true essence. However, Perfected Liang Shenfeng was, after all, a late-stage core forging cultivator. Although there was no accompanying celestial phenomenon during the breakthrough, the amount of spiritual qi he absorbed during the breakthrough was still shocking. But soon Lu Ping and the others felt that something was wrong. Although the Silver Sword Island was one of the 3 large islands of Skyrend, it wasn't Skyrend's territory. There was only a medium-sized spirit vein on the island, and it had been collected by the cultivators of Skyrend who were stationed on the island. The concentration of spiritual qi in the market where Lu Ping and the others were was only equivalent to that of a miniature spirit vein. When Perfected Liang Shenfeng broke through, he attracted all the spiritual qi within the range of his spiritual sense. Although spiritual qi from further away was replenishing it, the speed at which it was replenished was still slower than the speed at which he absorbed it. At this moment, a spiritual qi vacuum had formed around Lu Ping and the others. This kind of opportunity for a cultivator to break through was like an epiphany. It was something that could only be found by chance. If Perfected Liang Shenfeng didn't seize this opportunity to break through to the 9th stage of the core forging realm, he didn't know when he would get another opportunity. At this moment, the sound of spirit stones shattering could be heard in the cultivation room. Clearly, Perfected Liang Shenfeng also realized that this was a rare opportunity. He decided to take a gamble and started using the method of directly shattering spirit stones to extract spiritual qi. Although this method was extremely wasteful, it was worth it if he could break through. Lu Ping's heart thumped and his divine sense swept into the cultivation room. Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting frowned. It was a taboo to disturb a cultivator during a breakthrough. The two of them wanted to stop Lu Ping, but they remembered that he wasn't an impulsive person. Maybe he had thought of something, so they didn't say anything. Perfected Liang Shenfeng obviously had the same thought as the two of them. When he sensed that Lu Ping's spiritual sense had entered the cultivation room, he thought for a moment and didn't stop him. When Lu Ping's spiritual sense entered the cultivation room, he noticed that Perfected Liang Shenfeng was about to shatter the dozens of mid-grade spirit stones in his hand. Thus, he wrapped them with his spiritual sense and used the spirit explosion technique. A wave of spiritual qi that was far purer and gentler than before exploded and went directly into Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's body. Enlightened Master Liang Xuanfeng's expression turned serious. With a thought, the floor of the cultivation room was covered with a layer of spirit stones. Lu Ping took a quick look and found that there were at least 4,000 to 5,000 mid-grade spirit stones, not to mention low-grade spirit stones. In the middle, there were about 20 to 30 large crystal-clear high-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping wrapped 100 mid-grade spirit stones with his spiritual sense and used the spirit explosion technique, again. A small spiritual qi storm appeared in the cultivation room and formed a shallow spiritual qi vortex around Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's body. Lu Ping didn't dare to be negligent. He used the spirit explosion technique, one after another. Each time he used 100 mid-grade spirit stones. After more than 40 times, he exploded all the mid-grade spirit stones on the ground and crushed thousands of low-grade spirit stones as well. The ground was covered with the remains of spirit stones that had turned into white powder. Although this still caused a lot of waste, it was many times better than simply crushing the spirit stones. At the very least, the situation of Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's breakthrough was getting better. The aura around his body was also getting stronger. It was as if his entire body was covered by a gust of wind and he was about to turn into a feather and ascend to the sky. Lu Ping looked at the 28 high-grade spirit stones on the ground covetously, but he didn't hesitate at all. This was the critical moment for perfected Liang Xuanfeng's breakthrough. Lu Ping used the spirit explosion technique on 3 of the high-grade spirit stones and exploded them. A spiritual qi that was far denser than before fused with perfected Liang Xianfeng, who was about to turn into wind. Lu Ping used the spirit explosion technique 7 times again. Only 4 of the 28 high-grade spirit stones were left. Perfected Liang Xianfeng, who seemed to be floating in the breeze, finally became a perfected person again. A burst of pressure flashed past. It was obvious that perfected Liang Xianfeng had quickly adapted to the enhanced spiritual force and true essence after his breakthrough. In an instant he regained control of his spiritual force. Then, perfected Liang Xianfeng opened his eyes and looked at the layer of spirit stone powder on the ground. The corners of his mouth twitched. Seeing that Lu Ping's spiritual force was about to use the spirit explosion technique on the 3 high-grade spirit stones again, perfected Liang Xianfeng said anxiously, "Enough, enough. This is the last bit of your Uncle Master's wealth." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Uncle Master, you've just broken through. Don't you need to consolidate your cultivation?" Perfected Liang Xianfeng reached out and put the remaining 4 high-grade spirit stones into his storage artifact. He said, "Anyway, I've already broken through. Without your secret technique to explode spirit stones, I'll just have to go into seclusion for a few more days. I'd better save these spirit stones." Half a month later, perfected Liang Xianfeng came out of the cultivation room and saw Lu Ping waiting for him at the door with a smile. Seeing that perfected Liang Xianfeng had come out of seclusion, Lu Ping smiled and said, "Congratulations on your great progress in cultivation, Uncle Master. You're one step closer to becoming our sect's Dharma form Laozu." Perfected Liang Xianfeng did not suspect anything. He was excited and said, "It's all thanks to the Zhongding pill you refined. Your Uncle Master has long reached the point of breaking through to the 9th stage of the core forging realm. Unfortunately, I failed several times before. This time, with the help of the Zhongding pill, I finally broke through this shackle." Lu Ping sighed and said, "That's right. I've suffered a great loss to refine the Zhongding pill this time. I've lost nearly 100 types of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs and 7 3,000-year-old spirit herbs, but I only managed to refine 1 Zhongding pill. I even lost 20 high-grade spirit stones because of it." Lu Ping deliberately mentioned the high-grade spirit stones at the end, doubling the number of losses. Perfected Liang Xianfeng had a strange look on his face. How could he not know what Lu Ping was planning? He said, "Kid, don't even think about taking the spirit stones. As you can see, your Uncle Master is now penniless. I only have those 4 high-grade spirit stones left." Lu Ping chuckled and stepped forward. "Martial Uncle, I'm sure you still have some spirit stones left, right? I don't believe that a famous late core forging realm expert like you only has less than 1,000,000 spirit stones. I won't take it for free. How about I trade with you? I only want high-grade spirit stones." Chapter 308. After hearing Lu Ping's words, perfected Liang Xianfeng said angrily, "Kid, what do you know? At my level, things like hundreds of thousands of spirit stones are easy to get. What's really useful are the things that can't be bought with spirit stones. Are you saying that the value of the spirit stones on you is higher than the value of other cultivation items?" Lu Ping smiled embarrassedly and thought to himself, "Of course not. I have 5 heaven and earth spiritual items on me. None of them can be measured by spirit stones. As for the other top-grade spiritual materials, there's no need to mention them." Perfected Liang Xianfeng flipped his hand and took out 10 superior-grade spirit stones. "That's all I have. I don't have any more." Lu Ping chuckled and took the spirit stones from perfected Liang Xuanfeng's hand. This time, Lu Ping had really suffered a heavy loss in order to refine the Bell Cauldron pill. Lu Ping was asking perfected Liang Xianfeng some questions about cultivation when he heard someone say from outside, "I'm a disciple of Skyrend. May I see fellow cultivator in the inn?" Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled and said, "It seems that my cultivation breakthrough this time has caused quite a commotion. It seems that Skyrend didn't have any bad intentions by only coming to check up now." Lu Ping rolled his eyes when he heard that and thought to himself, "Although your cultivation breakthrough didn't cause a celestial phenomenon, how many people would notice that the spirit chi within a few miles was swept away? What's more, although the pressure of your divine sense disappeared in a flash, it was a real aura of a late-stage core forging cultivator. Which cultivator would dare to disturb you in advance? By the time the two left, Chu Ting and Zhu Xianmeng had already sent away Skyren's disciple. Seeing that Liang Xianfeng had come out of seclusion, they handed him a bright red invitation. Oh, it's a trade fair organized by the Sky Fisher Sword sect on Silver Sword Island. Reverend Liang Xianfeng glanced at the contents and said, "This Silver Sword Island sure knows how to pick a good time." When the Profound Heavens abode opened, many cultivators had benefited from it. Even now, there are still cultivators diving deep into the ocean to explore the ruins of the Profound Heavens abode. Many cultivators have also settled down on Silver Sword Island. This is the perfect time for the Sky Fisher Sword sect to gather some core forging cultivators and organize a barter trade fair. 3 days later, Lu Ping, Zhu Xianmeng, and Chu Ting followed perfected Liang Xianfeng to a tea house operated by Skyrend. The four of them walked up to the tea house, and a cultivator from the Sky Fisher Sword sect welcomed them with a smile. "It's our honor to have you here, fellow Taoist. May I ask your name?" This cultivator from Skyrend was a mid-stage core forging cultivator. Although he looked amiable on the surface, Lu Ping could still feel a vigorous and sharp power from him. Perfected Liang Xianfeng handed over the invitation and greeted them with cupped fists. "I don't dare. My surname is Liang." Then he turned around and pointed at Zhu Xianmeng and the others. "These are our juniors. They want to see the world. Please forgive us for taking the liberty to come." The Sky-Breaking Sword sect cultivator saw that Lu Ping and the others were all in the core forging realm, and enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng was a 9th-layer core forging realm expert. He didn't dare to slight them, so he quickly said, "It's fine. I'm very envious of the three of you for reaching such a high cultivation level at such a young age. Please come in and have some tea. There are still a few more who have yet to arrive." Under the guidance of a boy, the four of them came to a rather large quiet room. A waiter served them high-grade spirit tea and the four of them sat down. There were already several perfected masters in the quiet room. When they saw the four of them, especially perfected Liang Xuanfeng's 9th-stage core forging cultivation, the cultivators in the quiet room nodded to show their goodwill. Perfected Liang Xianfeng also smiled. After another half an hour, several more perfected masters arrived. Only then did Lu Ping notice that all the cultivators attending the trade fair were at least mid-stage core forging. No wonder perfected Liang Xianfeng specially explained it to perfected Master Skyrend at the entrance. At this time there were nearly 30 cultivators in the quiet room. Among them, nearly 10 were late-stage perfected masters, and the rest were at 5th stage or 6th stage core forging. There were almost no 4th stage core forging cultivators like Zhu Xianmeng. As for 1st stage core forging cultivators like Lu Ping and Chu Ting, they were the only ones present. The two of them became the center of attention in the quiet room. If it wasn't for perfected Master Liang Xianfeng, who was a 9th stage core forging expert, holding the fort, the two of them might have met with misfortune. Just as Lu Ping was deep in thought, the cultivator who greeted them at the entrance of the stairs came in. He made a square salute and said, "Hee, almost everyone is here. Thank you all for coming to participate in this barter trade fair. My surname is Jean and I'm the shopkeeper of this tea house. 2 more senior brothers from my sect came to participate in this trade fair. They are Senior Brother Ming Jian and Senior Brother Huang Tingjian." As soon as perfected Master Jean finished speaking, 2 cultivators with huge swords on their backs walked in from behind the quiet room. There were already people behind the quiet room? This was clearly out of the perfected master's expectations. Except for perfected Master Liang Xianfeng, who seemed to have sensed it earlier, the way everyone looked at the two suddenly changed. When Lu Ping probed with his divine sense, he immediately felt that the two of them were filled with sharp qi, as if they wanted to cut Lu Ping's divine sense apart. Lu Ping could only see that the two of them were late-stage core forging cultivators. He hurriedly retracted his divine sense, only to discover that he wasn't the only one. Many other cultivators had also noticed this, and their faces turned ugly. Perfected Master Jean acted as if he didn't see the expressions on everyone's faces. He smiled and continued, "The 2 senior brothers have gained a lot from the heavy Shen cave. I hope we can get what we need from this trade." As soon as Taoist Jean finished speaking, the eyes of all the cultivators lit up. Everyone knew that the Crystal Palace and Sky Fisher Sword faction had obtained the greatest benefits from the appearance of the Profound Immortal's abode. Sky Fisher Sword faction had even cleaned out Patriarch Profound's storage room, obtaining an uncountable number of spiritual materials, magic artifacts and magic treasures. The legacy jade slips inside the profound Immortals Grand Hall had also been divided with Sky Fisher Sword faction. Clearly, these two cultivators who had participated in the trade fair had gained a lot. At this moment, perfected Master Liang Xuanfeng's words suddenly sounded in the ears of Lu Ping and the other two. He said, "Don't reveal your gains from the heavy Shen cave unless it's necessary." Before Lu Ping could think about the meaning of perfected Master Liang Xuanfeng's words, he saw Skyren's perfected Master Ming Jian smile and say, "Since this trade fair is led by me, Skyren, I'll be the first one to make a move." As soon as perfected Master Ming Jian finished speaking, a black iron block the size of a head appeared in his hand. He said, "This is a mutated second-class top-tier spiritual material, green hell iron from the heavy Shen cave. It's a top-tier spiritual material for making metal attribute magic treasures. I'm willing to exchange it with everyone here for a mutated wood attribute spiritual material of the same grade." Although this piece of green hell iron was only the size of a head, it actually weighed more than 500 kilograms. It was so light in perfected Master Ming Jian's hand. Perhaps the second-class mutated top-tier spiritual material was just a good item in the eyes of the perfected masters. However, this was perfected Master Ming Jian's first time making a move. He had set a tone. If the items that the perfected masters used to trade were not as good as this piece of green hell iron, they should not bring it out to embarrass themselves. Lu Ping did have a mutated wood attribute spiritual material, but Lu Ping's green hell iron was useless. Moreover, he was not proficient in smithing. At this moment, a long-bearded perfected master sitting opposite Lu Ping said with a smile, "Taoist brother Ming Jian, you're really generous. You've set the standard so high." The old man should exchange for something first. Otherwise, when everyone's treasures are revealed one by one, the old man will only be able to look at them enviously. You won't have enough bargaining chips. Perfected Master Ming Jian glanced at the old man and said with a smile, "So it's Taoist brother Mu. You must be joking. The Mu family is a famous cultivator family in the East Sea. How could they be lacking in treasures? However, I wonder what kind of wood attribute spiritual material Taoist brother is holding?" Perfected Master Mu stretched out his hand and took out a lump of wood. Perfected Master Ming Jian's eyes lit up as if two sharp swords were shooting at the lump of wood in Perfected Master Mu's hand. He said, "It's actually the heart of a 1,000-year-old locust tree. It's indeed a second-class spiritual material, but it's a lot smaller. I'm at a disadvantage if I exchange it with this piece of green hell iron." Perfected Master Mu waved his hand and said, "Taoist brother Ming Jian, look carefully. This isn't an ordinary 1,000-year-old locust tree heart. The growth rings of this locust tree heart have already reached 1,500 years old. It's a top-grade tree heart. It's enough to exchange for this piece of green hell iron." After hearing Perfected Master Mu's explanation, Perfected Master Ming Jian stretched out his hand and beckoned. The lump of wood flew towards Perfected Master Ming Jian. Perfected Master Mu didn't stop it. He just watched Perfected Master Ming Jian carefully examine the lump of wood in his hand with a smile. After a moment, Perfected Master Ming Jian nodded and said with satisfaction, "It's indeed a 1,500-year-old locust tree heart. I'll exchange it. Please keep this piece of green hell iron." Next, several perfected masters took out the treasures they didn't need and exchanged them for the things they needed, just like in a treasure competition. All kinds of spiritual materials, magic treasures, strange magic tools, medicinal pills, cultivation methods, and jade slips emerged one after another. It was an eye-opener for Lu Ping. Originally, Lu Ping thought that the many treasures he had on him were already considered extremely wealthy among the core forging realm cultivators. But now, compared to these middle and late-stage core forging realm cultivators, he was undoubtedly a frog in the well. Just as Lu Ping was appreciating all kinds of rare treasures and listening to the cultivator's evaluation of these treasures, a fourth-layer core forging realm female cultivator with the same cultivation level as Zhu Xianmeng stood up and said, "This little girl's wealth isn't comparable to yours. I only have this bowl of spirit water. I want to exchange it for 23,000-year-old spiritual herbs." As soon as the female cultivator's voice fell, everyone exclaimed in surprise. Even perfected Master Liang Xianfeng and perfected Master Huang Tingjin, who were sitting at the side with their eyes closed, suddenly opened their eyes and glanced at the water bowl in the female cultivator's hand. Jade nectar clear water. I can't believe it's this thing. Lu Ping looked at the bowl of spirit water in the female cultivator's hand. His expression didn't change, but his mind was already spinning. 23,000-year-old spiritual herbs is not a small amount. Can Fairy Sun lower the price? One of the impatient cultivators asked. Jade nectar clear water was a natural treasure of the water attribute. Together with fine nectar clear water, it was known as one of the two great treasures of the world. It was extremely important for cultivators to quickly recover their true essence and injuries. More importantly, these two treasures were essential for cultivators to cultivate various small water attribute magical abilities, including the small magical ability that Lu Ping had cultivated to the first stage, the three pure one's true pupils. Chapter 309. When the female practitioner heard the discussion, she said impatiently, I have already said that I am willing to exchange this item for 23,000-year-old spirit herbs. A cultivator beside the female cultivator said, Fairy Sun, you must be joking. 23-year-old spirit herbs are enough to make half a furnace of pure Dharma elixirs. From what I know, most of the elixirs that Dharma ancestors use now are made with 3,000-year-old spirit herbs as a primer. Then they use large amounts of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs to make elixirs that are half a step into the Dharma stage. Fairy Sun wants 23,000-year-old spirit herbs, but this small bowl of spirit water is not enough. Fairy Sun's expression did not change. She said, Oh, then how many spirit herbs does Spiritual Master Gao think you can get? Spiritual Master Gao was happy to hear this. He knew that there was room for negotiation, so he said, I have 4 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. Fairy Sun's expression changed. Spiritual Master Gao saw this and quickly said, Of course, I have 10,000-year-old spirit herbs to supplement. Lu Ping couldn't help but curl his lips. How could a 3,000-year spirit herb be compared to a 1,000-year spirit herb? A single 3,000-year spirit herb was worth more than 10 1,000-year spirit herbs. Yet, this enlightened Master Gao's offer was only equivalent to 5 3,000-year spirit herbs, which was more than half of enlightened Master Sun's offer. Sure enough, before Fairy Sun could react, another spiritual master laughed and said, Spiritual Master Gao's joke is too much. 10,000-year-old spirit herbs for one 3,000-year-old spirit herb depends on whether the other party is happy or not. Although I am not talented, I am willing to use 8 3,000-year-old spirit herbs and 100,000-year-old spirit herbs to exchange for Fairy Sun's spirit water. Spiritual Master Gao's expression became angry, but he couldn't blame anyone else. He could only blame himself for lowering the price too much and being looked down upon by others. At this time, Skyren's Jin Jinren also interrupted, Haha, I didn't think that Fairy Sun's spirit water would be so popular. I'm also very envious. I am also willing to use 10 3,000-year-old spirit herbs to exchange for it, and 150,000-year-old spirit herbs. When Taoist Jin spoke, everyone's expression changed again. They didn't know if this was Skyren's intention. Just as the Taoist Jin was about to speak, someone else said, I offer 12 3,000-year-old herbs. The enlightened master was startled. He turned around and saw a young cultivator at the first layer of the core forging realm. The enlightened master was displeased. He thought to himself that an early core forging minor repairs cultivator had come to take a look. Naturally, others wouldn't say anything, but if they interfered in the transaction, then it wouldn't be right. Just as he was about to reprimand the young cultivator, he saw perfected Liang Shenfeng resting with his eyes closed. Only then did he remember that perfected Liang Shenfeng was a 9th-layer core forging expert. He immediately swallowed his anger. This perfected person did not speak, but that did not mean that others would be polite to Lu Ping. Taoist Master Gao, who had just been humiliated, saw that it was only an early-stage core forging cultivator who was bidding. He immediately sneered and said, Whose child is this? Is there any place for you to speak? 12 3,000-year-old herbs? How arrogant! Perfected Liang Shenfeng, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Taoist Master Gao. Just as perfected Liang Shenfeng opened his eyes, perfected Skyren, perfected Huang Tingjian, also opened his eyes. He looked at perfected Liang Shenfeng, but then he looked at Lu Ping. Are you talking about me? Perfected Liang Shenfeng looked at Taoist Master Gao and asked softly. His expression was indifferent, but his voice was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears, causing the entire pavilion to become incomparably silent. Taoist Master Gao's heart skipped a beat when he saw perfected Liang Xuanfeng's gaze on him. Immediately after, perfected Liang Xuanfeng's voice sounded like a gentle breeze. Taoist Master Gao's mind was in chaos. Then a divine sense slashed at him like a sharp blade, completely cutting off the breeze. Perfected Liang Shenfeng raised his head and looked at Perfected Huang Tingjian. He didn't say anything else. Taoist Master Gao's expression changed greatly. He looked at Perfected Liang Shenfeng with fear, then looked at Skyrind and the other 3 perfected masters and said, Taoist Jin, are early-stage core forging minor repairs allowed to participate in this trade fair? How could I not know? Fairy Sun secretly scolded Taoist Master Gao for being a busybody. Even Skyrind's cultivators didn't stop Lu Ping from bidding. It was clear that even Skyrind had to give face to the 9th stage core forging cultivator next to Lu Ping. If Taoist Master Gao messed things up, wouldn't she lose her spirit water? Fairy Sun wasn't the only one who scolded Taoist Master Gao for being a busybody. Taoist Jin also frowned. However, he still had to uphold Skyrind's rules. Thus he said, this trade fair has indeed only invited cultivators above the middle stage of core forging, but, Taoist Jin dragged out the word, but, as if he was looking for a reason to deal with Taoist Master Gao without offending Perfected Master Liang. Although Skyrind had a large business, it hadn't reached the point where it would make enemies everywhere. But this Lu Xiaoyu isn't an ordinary early-stage core forging cultivator, said Perfected Master Huang Tingjian. The one who spoke was Enlightened Master Huang Tingjian, who was seated at the head of the table. He originally didn't plan on attending the trade fair, but because Enlightened Master Jin had reported to him that there was a 9th-layer core forging expert among the invited cultivators, he decided to step forward. As the host, the cultivators of the Sky Fisher Sword sect couldn't show weakness in front of outsiders. Perfected Master Huang Tingjian opened his mouth, but Taoist Jin let out a long sigh of relief. Taoist Sun then said, Oh, Taoist Huang knows this young friend? May I ask what's different about him? Perfected Master Huang Tingjian asked solemnly, May I ask if this young friend is the 4th-place alchemist Lu Jiao of the Northern Alliance Elixir Gathering? As soon as Perfected Master Huang Tingjian said this, all the cultivators present were stunned. Most of the cultivators present were core members of their respective forces. The Northern Alliance Elixir Gathering was a major event during the Northern Alliance's celebration. It was related to the growth of young alchemists, so these forces naturally had to pay attention to it. At the same time, these perfected masters had also heard of the outstanding alchemists in the Elixir Gathering. After all, these alchemists could become great alchemists in the future or even great alchemists. Lu Ping did not dare to slight this perfected master Huang Tingjian. The feeling this perfected master gave Lu Ping was not inferior to perfected master Liang Shenfeng, so he said respectfully, This junior is Lu Jiao. Seeing that Lu Ping was polite, perfected master Huang Tingjian nodded and said, Lu Xiaoyu is now an alchemist master, right? After all, after martial nephew Wei formed his gold core, he successfully refined a core forging level pill. Even martial nephew Wei admires Lu Xiaoyu's alchemy skills. This martial nephew Wei was Skyrind's alchemist who had followed perfected master Jiayue to the Elixir Gathering. Lu Ping replied, Brother Wei, you flatter me? This junior was lucky enough to refine a gold core pill. Zhu Xianming and Chu Ting secretly curled their lips. Lu Ping could even refine a Zhongding pill, a top-grade pill that was mixed with 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. In front of a Zhongding pill, a gold core pill could only be thrown away. However, when the other cultivators in the quiet room heard Lu Ping's words, their expressions changed again. This was a newly promoted alchemist master and he was so young. He had a bright future ahead of him. Fairy Sun immediately said, Since Lu Xiaoyu is already an alchemist master, he can naturally participate in this trade fair. Everyone echoed, saying, If even alchemist masters can't participate, then there's no reason for it. Only perfected Master Gao's face was red. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling, but he couldn't do anything. He wanted to leave, but he was afraid of Skyrind's face. His eyes were filled with resentment as he looked at Lu Ping, then at Fairy Sunday. At this time, perfected Master Jin took out a jade box from his spatial magic tool and said, Although Master Lu has offered a high price, this jade elixir clear water is indeed very useful to me. I might have to pay a bit of my own capital. Here are 12 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. I will add on the 150,000-year-old spiritual herbs from before. I offer 14 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. The one who spoke was the cultivator who had previously ridiculed perfected Master Gao. Lu Ping was also weighing the pros and cons. Lu Ping really didn't want to miss out on this jade elixir clear water. Although he had a lot of 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in his possession, He couldn't let others earn them so easily. Besides, this bowl of water was different from the spirit-clear water from before. It was enough for 2 people to cleanse their eyes, but this bowl of water was only enough for 1 person, Lu Ping. 15. I offer 15 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Lu Ping pretended to have a pained expression. Even the scheming Chu Ting and Zhu Xianmeng couldn't help but praise Lu Ping for being so cunning. They knew that perfected Master Liang Xianfeng had given him more than 33,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Perfected Master Jin laughed and said, "If that's the case, I'll give up on this bowl of water. If I offer any more spiritual herbs, it won't be worth it." The other perfected master also said, "I'll give up on this bowl of water as well. I don't have as many spiritual herbs as Master Lu." Lu Ping knew that he was a grandmaster alchemist, so the 2 of them had to give him some face. After all, this was a spiritual item that could only be found by chance. If they were to get serious, even 23,000-year-old spiritual herbs would have to be carefully calculated. Lu Ping immediately said, "Thank you, seniors. I won't stand on ceremony." He then turned around and said, "I wonder if Fairy Sun can exchange 15 spiritual herbs for this bowl of water?" Sure enough, Fairy Sun also smiled and said, 15 spiritual herbs might not be enough, but it's barely enough. I'll exchange this bowl of water with you, little brother." Lu Ping thanked her and handed a jade marrow box to Fairy Sunday. Fairy Sun opened it and nodded in satisfaction. Lu Ping carefully placed the bowl of water into his storage ring and let out a long sigh of relief. The trading fair continued, but this time, Lu Ping was also qualified to participate. However, none of the following transactions caught Lu Ping's attention. Zhu Xianmeng, on the other hand, used a top-grade instrument that looked like a musical instrument to exchange for a jade scroll that recorded a musical killing method from the same cultivator. In the blink of an eye, the first 20 or so cultivators had shown their items. It was perfected Master Liang Xuanfeng's turn to show his treasure. The cultivators in the quiet room naturally looked at one of the 2 9th-layer core forging experts in the room. Lu Ping and the other 2 were also curious about what treasure perfected Master Liang Xianfeng would take out. Even the other 9th-layer core forging expert, Skyrin's perfected Master Huang Tingjian, looked at perfected Master Liang Xianfeng with interest. Chapter 310. Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled and reached out with his left hand, but it was empty. The perfected masters present were not fooled by this. When perfected Master Liang Xianfeng opened his left hand, Lu Ping noticed that the airflow in the room had suddenly changed. Before Lu Ping could use his divine sense to investigate what was in perfected Master Liang Xuanfeng's hand, perfected Huang Tingjian exclaimed, "Flying Catkin! Brother Liang is really generous to actually take out such a mid-grade profound rank origin treasure." It was a universe treasure. The perfected masters in the room immediately panicked. They all released their divine senses toward perfected Master Liang Xuanfeng's hand. Lu Ping was no exception. In Lu Ping's divine sense, he could sense a seemingly insubstantial flying catkin floating in perfected Master Liang's hand, but it could not escape his grasp. However, the airflow in the room revolved around this invisible flying catkin, forming a faint whirlwind. Fluttering cotton was originally some dust, fluttering cotton, and other miscellaneous things in the world that were almost weightless. However, these things had drifted in the world with the wind for thousands of years and had never drifted to the ground or attached to any object. Over time, these miscellaneous things had condensed a trace of the spirit of the world and absorbed the essence of the wind to form fluttering cotton. Given perfected Master Liang Xuanfeng's status, it was not strange for him to take out a universe treasure. Every sect encouraged their cultivators to hand over the universe treasures they had no use for to the sect, and the sect would naturally reward them handsomely. At the same time, they also warned the cultivators not to exchange the universe treasure for anything else. After all, every universe treasure represented the appearance of at least a mid-stage core forging master. If the universe treasure ended up in the hands of an enemy, it would be akin to aiding the enemy. Every universe treasure was a treasure that a sect spared no effort in collecting. It was related to the prosperity and inheritance of a sect. As expected, after perfected Master Liang Xianfeng took out the universe treasure, all the cultivators in the room were eager to try it out. What does perfected Master Liang intend to exchange this treasure for? Perfected Master Jin, the host of the trade meeting, was the first to ask this question. Taoist Liang didn't seem to notice the anxious mood of the master in the quiet room. He slowly said, I wish to exchange for 2 wind attribute treasured restrictions. It would be best if one is offensive and one is defensive. If I really don't have any, then I can exchange my defensive treasured restriction for a flying escape treasure. Of course, it would be best if I don't have these 2 treasured restrictions. As soon as Taoist Liang's words left his mouth, more than half of the cultivators in the quiet room shook their heads regretfully. Many cultivators seemed to be weighing and thinking about something. Perfected Master Jin then said, "Ha, Perfected Master Liang Shenfeng, Master Liang Shenfeng, Perfected Master Shenfeng, Perfected Master Liang Shenfeng, but as the host I have to remind you that you are at a bit of a loss." Reverend Liang nodded in satisfaction and said, "The sky-breaking sword sect has always been fair and just. Sure enough, they live up to their reputation. These 2 barriers are only the minimum requirement. If you want this spiritual item, you can exchange it with upper-grade spirit stones. The highest bidder wins it." As soon as Perfected Master Liang Shenfeng finished his sentence, a late-stage core forging master said, "I will offer an offensive restriction and a flight restriction as well as 10 high-grade spirit stones." What a joke. This is a universe treasure. Brother Yu, aren't you afraid of being laughed at by everyone here? After all, Yuan Ming sect was a reputable sect in the East Ocean. I have an offensive restriction and a defensive restriction, as well as 20 high-grade spirit stones. The one who spoke was also a late-stage core forging master. This perfected master was sitting opposite Perfected Master Yu. It was obvious that the 2 sects didn't have a good relationship. Naturally, they wouldn't give in to each other when it came to treasures that could produce experts. Yuan Ming sect's Immortal Yu, who was ridiculed, sneered, "Yinji Chang, your Qingyuan sect is not so carefree. I heard that your brother's cultivation has reached the 3rd stage of core forging realm because of elixirs, and he also cultivates a wind attribute cultivation method. Are you so sure that he confused with the flying cotton? It's better not to waste God's gift recklessly. Just get a low-rank profound level spirit object and let him live for 100 or 80 years. Do you still expect your playboy brother to fight for Qingyuan sect Yinji Chang?" Perfected Master Yinji Chang of Qingyuan sect was livid. It was obvious that Perfected Master Yu had hit the nail on the head. However, he still said coldly, "This is our sect's business. If you are weak, just shut up." Spiritual Master Yu laughed mockingly twice but did not say anything else. At this time, another Perfected Master made a bid. He also offered an offensive restriction and a defensive restriction, as well as 30 high-grade spirit stones. Another Perfected Master took out 2 defensive restrictions, but he obviously realized that 2 defensive restrictions were not as good as 1 offensive and 1 defensive restriction. He offered 50 high-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping noticed that after Perfected Master Liang took out the flying feather, the cultivators who bid were all in the late core forging realm. Just as everyone was waiting to see what kind of treasure Perfected Master Huang would bring out as the host, they heard Perfected Master Huang Tingjin say with a smile, "Since Lu Xiaoyu is an alchemy grandmaster and has just exchanged a bowl of jade nectar from Fairy Sun, since you're participating in this trade fair, you might have to take out a treasure or 2 to broaden our horizons." All the cultivators in the quiet room looked at Lu Ping. At this time, because of Lu Ping's 15 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs and his identity as an alchemy grandmaster, no one dared to look down on this first-layer core forging minor repairs. Lu Ping knew that Uncle Master Liang Xuanfeng's words had bought him such an opportunity. However, Lu Ping was also secretly thinking about what kind of treasure he should show that would not embarrass him or attract attention. After all, Lu Ping was not Perfected Master Liang and did not have such a high cultivation to intimidate others. Lu Ping carefully took stock of his possessions and found that he really had a lot of treasures that were qualified to be traded. There was no need to talk about the 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. If 10 more appeared, he was afraid that Fa Xiang Laozu would come knocking on his door. Lu Ping did not want to be in the limelight again. Naturally, he would not be able to use heaven and earth spirit treasures, not to mention that all 5 of Lu Ping's heaven and earth spirit treasures had their own uses. Lu Ping did have a lot of mutated spiritual materials such as the branch of the peach tree demon, the 1,000-year-old peach tree struck by lightning, the pool of mutated spiritual water catalyzed by the profound heavy water, and so on. However, Perfected Master Ming Jian had already asked for a second-class wood attribute spiritual material. At this time, it was obviously not appropriate for Lu Ping to take it out. There was no need to mention the mutated spiritual water, which was used by Zhong Xian Laozu to quench a celestial tool. Taking it out was tantamount to telling everyone that the profound heavy water of the 4 treasures of Zhongxian was on him. Moreover, perfected Master Liang had repeatedly instructed Lu Ping not to take out the harvest from Zhongxian's cave for trading. Magic weapons were fine, but Lu Ping did not have many of them. Moreover, these magic weapons were currently of use to Lu Ping. Lu Ping finally set his eyes on the sunflower water essence and the myriad poison serum. The sunflower water essence had already been used by Lu Ping a lot, and now the remaining small pool was used to support the growth of the 3 white jade lotus seeds. Then there was only the myriad poison serum left. It just so happened that Lu Ping's protective aura chi still needed the last kind of water attribute rare item to upgrade it to the water curtain true aura shield. So, he used a portion of the myriad poison serum to exchange for the same water attribute rare item that could be used to condense the protective aura shield. Under the expectant, sarcastic or stupefied gazes of the crowd, Lu Ping took out a 1-foot-tall bluestone jar from his storage ring. Inside it was a jar full of fragrant golden liquid. What is this thing? How come I haven't seen it before? What kind of good thing can be stored in a stone jar? In the end, he is a cultivator who has just advanced to the core forging realm. Moreover, he is so young. Even if he is an alchemy grandmaster, his foundation is shallow. Without the accumulation of time, it is not enough. Lu Ping turned a deaf ear to the whispers of the surrounding cultivators. Instead, he carefully placed the bluestone jar in front of him for fear of knocking it over. Chapter 311. Humph, deliberately mystifying things. The one who spoke was Taoist Gao, who had previously reprimanded Lu Ping. At this time he couldn't wait to jump out and mock him. Several divine senses probed the golden liquid in the bluestone jar, including Taoist Gao's divine sense. Lu Ping laughed inwardly, but he didn't say anything. The myriad poison liquid was a highly toxic substance that could even corrode divine senses. A series of muffled groans were heard, and a faint green smoke rose from the bluestone jar. Taoist Gao fiercely said, "Are you deliberately trying to trick me?" Lu Ping glanced at Taoist Gao and indifferently said, "You can send and receive divine senses at will. How can I stop you? Besides, didn't you say that I was deliberately mystifying things? Why are you so impatient to use your divine sense to probe it?" Taoist Gao angrily sat down. He didn't feel wronged at all. Taoist Ming Jian, who was sitting at the head of the table, rubbed his eyebrows. Apparently, he had also tried to use his divine sense to probe the golden liquid in the bluestone jar and suffered a loss. Then he said, "Lu Xiaoyu, what is this? It has such a strong corrosive effect. Something that can even corrode divine senses must be a famous poison in the cultivation world. However, I have never seen this kind of golden liquid before." Fairy Sun, who was sitting at the side, seemed to have a lot of knowledge about water attribute spiritual objects. She muttered, "Could this be the legendary myriad poison liquid condensed from the myriad poison meteor evil chi? But isn't this myriad poison liquid black? How did it turn golden? But there's no mistaking its fragrance." Everyone present naturally heard Fairy Sun's words. Upon hearing the name of the myriad poison liquid, even Taoist Liang Xianfeng couldn't help but look at the golden liquid in the bluestone jar. At the same time, he seemed to have guessed the origin of the myriad poison liquid. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Fairy Sun's knowledge is extraordinary. I Lu Jiu admire you. This is indeed the myriad poison liquid." Taoist Ming Jian was surprised and said, "Myriad poison liquid? This is one of the few poisons in the cultivation world. It's no wonder that it can even corrode divine thoughts. However, the degree of corrosion is too severe. Could it be that after the myriad poison liquid turned golden, the poison also became more intense?" Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "This junior doesn't know either, but this jar of golden liquid is undoubtedly the myriad poison serum." Lu Ping thought to himself, could it be because of the nameless spirit water of heaven and earth that the myriad poison liquid turned golden and became more toxic? At this time Taoist Jin said, "The myriad poison liquid is indeed of the highest grade among the mysterious treasures of heaven and earth. However, it's too difficult to use it to cultivate a divine ability. After all, it's extremely difficult for a cultivator to control such a strong poison when cultivating a divine ability. If not, it'll backfire on the cultivator. Of course, if the cultivation is successful, the power of the divine ability cannot be underestimated. At least in the cultivation world, there's hardly any poison that can harm a cultivator who uses the myriad poison liquid to cultivate a divine ability." Lu Ping didn't refute. Using the myriad poison liquid to cultivate a divine ability was indeed very risky. If it wasn't for Samling's help and his divine sense that far surpassed others, it wouldn't have been easy for Lu Ping to fuse the myriad poison meteorite aura into his protective vigor chi. At this time, Fairy Sun smiled and said, Lu Daoyu, why did you use an ordinary bluestone jar to store the myriad poison liquid? Lu Ping answered with a smile, this is a miracle of fate. The myriad poison liquid's poison is so strong that it can corrode almost any object, except for this ordinary bluestone. Fortunately, this is the case. Otherwise, I would have missed this precious treasure. When everyone heard this, they all clicked their tongues in wonder. Although it was extremely difficult to use the myriad poison liquid to cultivate a divine ability, its effects were still coveted by many cultivators. Just being immune to all poisons was already extremely beneficial. Many cultivators wanted to exchange for it. Lu Ping's jar of myriad poison liquid might seem small, but when a cultivator used it to cultivate a protective vigor chi, it was fused with the myriad poison meteorite aura released by the myriad poison liquid. The amount of myriad poison meteorite aura condensed into this jar of myriad poison meteorite aura was enough for 3 or 4 ordinary cultivators to condense their vigor chi. Lu Ping also felt helpless. When he condensed his vigor chi, he used so much myriad poison liquid. If he wanted to condense a third type of vigor chi, he would need to use at least the same amount of myriad poison liquid. A Taoist master said with a difficult expression, I also have a water attribute heaven and earth treasure used to condense vigor chi, but the amount is only 1/3 of Lu Daoyu's. If Lu Daoyu is willing, I can replace it with something else, or only exchange for 1/3 of the myriad poison liquid. What do you think? When Lu Ping heard that the other party had a water attribute heaven and earth treasure, he was delighted. But when he heard that it was only 1/3, he could only regretfully shake his head and say, I'm really sorry, I will only exchange for the same amount of heaven and earth treasure. Everyone present was a sensitive person, so they could naturally guess that Lu Ping wanted to exchange for a heaven and earth treasure to condense his own divine ability. But to condense so much at once, 3 to 4 times more than an ordinary cultivator, was a bit surprising. Such a small protective divine ability was comparable to a protective magic treasure. At this time, Taoist Master Bright Sword and Taoist Master Huang Tingjian were whispering to each other. No one knew what they were discussing, but from the way the two looked at the bluestone jar in front of Lu Ping from time to time, it could be guessed that Skyrend also had his eyes on this jar of myriad poison liquid. Perhaps the conversation between Taoist Master Bright Sword and Taoist Master Huang Tingjian had aroused the vigilance of the other cultivators who coveted the myriad poison liquid. Many cultivators who were interested in the myriad poison liquid revealed their own bargaining chips. Lu Daoyu, I have a portion of glacial true water. Although the amount is only 1/4 of the myriad poison liquid, I still have a portion of 100-flower jade dew. If it is not enough, I will use high-grade spirit stones to make up for it. How about it? Lu Daoyu, such a large amount of water-attributed heaven and earth treasure is truly rare. What do you think of this underground millennium water milk? Not bad, it is indeed only half of the amount. Fellow Taoist is an alchemist, how about I use a millennium spirit grass to make up for it? I have a sufficient amount of heaven and earth treasure, but this is a dual attribute heaven and earth treasure. I wonder if fellow Taoist is interested in it? For a moment, Lu Ping's myriad poison liquid became a highly sought-after item. In the quiet room, 5 or 6 people took out water-attributed heaven and earth treasures, intending to trade with Lu Ping. This greatly surprised Lu Ping. However, after thinking about it, he felt relieved. Although heaven and earth treasures were rare, which one of the Taoist masters here hadn't lived for hundreds of years? Which one of them didn't have some trump cards? Not to mention this was only a water-attributed heaven and earth treasure. If it was a heaven and earth treasure of any other attribute, these cultivators would have many of them. Previously, when Taoist Master Gao said that Lu Ping's foundation was shallow, he wasn't wrong. However, these cultivators who were willing to trade either didn't have enough heaven and earth treasures, or their attributes weren't suitable. This greatly disappointed Lu Ping. Right at this moment, Reverend Mingjian asked, Young friend Lu, our Sky Fisher Sword sect does have a special item of the water attribute, and its quantity is sufficient. However, if you want to condense your energy, you'll have to follow me to our Sky Fisher Sword sect's territory, Jade Sword Island. Hearing Taoist Master Mingjian's words, Lu Ping pondered for a moment and said, May I know what senior is talking about? Taoist Master Mingjian and Taoist Master Huang Tingjian looked at each other, then turned and smiled, It's my sect's sword cleansing pool. Everyone cried out in surprise. Lu Ping also looked at Taoist Master Mingjian in surprise. Skyren's sword cleansing pool could be considered a heaven and earth treasure. Legend had it that when Skyren was first established, Skyripping Laozu established the sword cleansing pool. Skyren had a long history, even longer than Jinling. The sword cleansing pool had always existed and became one of Skyren's specialties. Who would have thought that the water in the sword cleansing pool was a heaven and earth treasure? Lu Ping glanced at Liang Xianfeng beside him. He didn't know much about the sword cleansing pool, but Taoist master Liang Xianfeng was experienced and knowledgeable. At this moment, Lu Ping wanted to hear his opinion. Unexpectedly, Taoist master Liang Xianfeng seemed to be thinking about something and didn't pay attention to Lu Ping. Lu Ping didn't want to miss this opportunity either. He was about to agree when he heard Fairy Sun say, "Lu Daoyu, I also have a heaven and earth treasure here. Do you like it?" Everyone in the quiet room also looked at Fairy Sun in surprise. They didn't expect that after Skyren proposed to trade, Fairy Sun also wanted to interfere. It wasn't that Skyren was as overbearing as the Crystal Palace. It was just that Skyren was a big sect in Donghai after all, and this trade fair was proposed by Skyren. The cultivators were afraid of Skyren's power, and they wanted to do the host a favor. Usually, after the 3 Taoists of Skyren made a move, the rest of the people would unanimously stop bidding. Fairy Sun's move was not only unexpected, but even Taoist Master Ming Jian was a little surprised. Fairy Sun also realized that what she did was likely to offend Skyren, but she just nodded to Taoist Master Ming Jian apologetically. Then she turned around and took out an item. She said to Lu Ping, "Lu Daoyu, this is what I got from Zhongshan's cave mansion. I wonder if you can use it?" Items from Zhongshan's cave mansion had appeared several times in this trade fair, but when Fairy Sun took out this item, it still attracted the attention of the cultivators. Fairy Sun took out a palm-sized jar. It was a spatial mystic instrument, but when Lu Ping peered into the jar's mouth, he couldn't see anything inside. Lu Ping looked at Fairy Sun with some surprise. Seeing Fairy Sun's smiling expression, Lu Ping focused and used his divine sense to explore. He found that there was indeed more than half a jar of liquid in the jar, but he couldn't see it with his eyes. Even if he used his divine sense to explore, he had to be very careful to find this kind of thing. Lu Ping said in surprise, This is invisible?" Fairy Sun nodded and said, "To be more precise, this is formless. This thing is called formless water. When used to condense a magical ability, combined with some invisibility techniques, it can make it difficult for a cultivator to be discovered by others. Of course, it is also very helpful in strengthening a cultivator's protective aura." Lu Ping's expression changed. No one knew what he was thinking. Fairy Sun thought that Lu Ping was still hesitating about the sword cleansing pool and continued, "Zhongshan Laozu came from the North Sea Fei Ling sect. Legend has it that the Fei Ling sect had a sword technique called Invisible Sword Technique. This sword technique was created by an expert of the Fei Ling sect for this kind of natural wonder. Using this invisible water to condense stellar energy, if combined with the invisible sword technique, it would be even more mysterious. Legend has it that this is the foundation of a divine ability." When Lu Ping heard invisible sword technique, his heart was like a clap of thunder, and a wave of joy filled his heart. Chapter 312. When Lu Ping heard that this invisible water was actually related to the shapeless sword technique that Sixth Senior Sister gave him, and that it was the foundation of a sword technique, he was already pleasantly surprised. However, Lu Ping's expression remained unchanged. Although Fairy's invisible water has a wonderful effect, this kind of spirit water can only display its greatest power when combined with the shapeless sword incantation. Without the shapeless sword incantation's secret technique, this kind of spirit water can only be used when a cultivator is motionless. Once a fight breaks out, the invisibility spell will be broken. At that time, the effect of the invisible water will even be inferior to the essence of Kuei water. Lu Ping was about to agree, but spiritual master Liang Xianfeng suddenly spoke. Lu Ping was stunned and didn't agree in the end. He listened to spiritual master Liang Xuanfeng's words. Spiritual master Liang Xianfeng was actually reminding Lu Ping not to be tempted by the name of invisible water, but he didn't know that Lu Ping had already learned the shapeless sword technique. Spiritual master Huang Tingjian also said, "I've heard of failing sect's invisible water and shapeless sword technique, but since the destruction of failing sect, many inheritances have been lost, and this shapeless sword technique has never been seen again. I think the sects of North Sea also didn't get this sword technique inheritance from failing sect back then. In that case, this invisible water is a bit of a pity. Lu Ping's expression didn't change. He could already see that Fairy Sun valued this trade fair very much. First, she took out the jade nectar water to exchange for the 3,000 years old spirit herb, and now she was using invisible water to exchange for the myriad poison serum. It seemed that she had an urgent need for it. Sure enough, spiritual master Huang Tingjian's seemingly unintentional words were actually to make Lu Ping give up on the invisible water, and choose to condense his Gang Qi in Skyren's sword purification pool. A flash of anger flashed across Fairy Sun's face, but Lu Ping happened to catch it. Lu Ping was sure that this Fairy Sun really had something that she couldn't say, and Skyren seemed to know. Although the two didn't fall out, Skyren was now somewhat suspected of taking advantage of the situation. Could it be that this myriad poison syrup had some other function that he didn't know about? Lu Ping stroked his chin as he pondered. However, Lu Ping was determined to get his hands on the invisible water. Lu Ping thought for a moment and his divine will moved slightly, sending a soft voice into Liang Xuanfeng's ears. Reverend Liang Xianfeng concealed the surprise in his heart with the excuse of drinking tea. After putting down the teacup, he said, "The sword cleansing pool is indeed a rare treasure land for cultivators who condense Gang Qi. However, the sword cleansing pool contains countless cultivators of Sky Fisher Sword sect who have refined, quenched, and washed their swords. It contains the insights of countless senior cultivators of Sky Fisher Sword sect. The sword cleansing pool is indeed the best choice if my martial nephew wants to cultivate an offensive divine ability. However, what he condenses is Gang Qi, and what he cultivates is a water attribute cultivation method. The sword cleansing pool contains some metal attribute essence, which hinders the purity of Gang Qi." Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled when he heard Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's words. What Brother Liang said is true, but the sword purification pool is also quite helpful for Lu Xiaoyu to comprehend swordsmanship and improve his cultivation. Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled but did not reply. It was obvious that he was rejecting him. On the other hand, the disappointed Fairy Sun's eyes lit up. She seemed to have understood something and moved her lips slightly, but no sound came out. Everyone knew that Fairy Sun was using a voice transmission spell. However, Lu Ping's expression suddenly changed. He thought for a moment and said, "If that's the case, I'll exchange it with Fairy Sun's invisible water. My cultivation technique is focused on the word, pure. Although the invisible water will lose a lot of its wonders without the invisible sword technique, it is at least a water attribute heaven and earth item. Although the sword purification pool is good, the chi of slaughter in it is too heavy, so I can only let it pass." Lu Ping had obtained the invisible water and Fairy Sun's secret promise. His heart was already blooming with joy. Reverend Huang Tingjian glanced at Fairy Sun and said with a smile, "Congratulations to Fairy Sun for having your wish come true. This time, Uncle Master Immeasurable might have turned the situation around." Fairy Sun, who had obtained the myriad poison serum, originally had some information. However, after hearing Perfected Huang Tingjian's words, her face darkened instantly. She looked at Perfected Huang Tingjian with an unfriendly gaze. The other Perfected Masters were deep in thought. Many of their eyes lit up. It was obvious that they had noticed something from their conversation. However, Lu Ping and the rest were not from the East Sea and did not know much about the various forces under Skyrend. Lu Ping looked at Chu Ting and thought to himself that the esteemed guest had been operating in the East Sea for many years and had a huge hidden force. This one of the 24 Pavilion Masters might know something. Unexpectedly, Chu Ting rolled her eyes. "This is not the area I'm in charge of." Lu Ping shrugged. However, he heard Perfected Huang Tingjian say from the seat of honor, "It's my turn to show my treasure." When Lu Ping looked over, he saw Perfected Huang Tingjian draw a circle in front of him with his right hand. An item suddenly appeared in the circle that Perfected Huang Tingjian had formed. The cultivators in the quiet room were all curious about what kind of treasure Perfected Huang Tingjian would bring out. They all looked at the floating item in front of Perfected Huang Tingjian. This is a teapot? Everyone naturally knew that for Perfected Huang Tingjian to bring out this teapot as the final item of this trade fair, this teapot must have something special about it. However, the dozens of spiritual wills in the quiet room found that the teapot looked ordinary. It did not look like a Dharma artifact, much less a Dharma treasure. If there was anything special about it, it would be that many cultivators could not tell what material the teapot was made of. Lu Ping sat beside perfected Liang Shenfeng and knew his every move best. When perfected Huang Tingjian took out the teapot, Lu Ping clearly felt perfected Liang Xuanfeng's body tremble slightly, as though he had discovered something that alarmed him. When Lu Ping pretended to casually glance at perfected Liang Shenfeng, he could not find any clues from the latter's face. At perfected Liang Xuanfeng's level of cultivation, there were very few things in the cultivation world that could affect their state of mind unless it was intentional. Their hundreds of years of experience had long given them a state of mind that could calmly endure the reduction of their lifespans and the great loss of their cultivation. Lu Ping was curious as to how this ordinary-looking teapot could disturb a ninth-layer core forging realm cultivator's state of mind. After all, even when enlightened Master Liang Xuanfeng's origin was damaged and his cultivation base might not be able to progress any further, he was still able to chat with Lu Ping casually, as if nothing could disturb him. Perfected Huang Tingjian saw that the teapot had whetted everyone's appetite, so he said, "This teapot is actually a Dharma treasure." Many perfected masters in the room were in disbelief. If it was a Dharma treasure, why didn't they find the existence of a treasure restriction inside? Looking at the expressions of the cultivators in the quiet room, perfected Huang Tingjian smiled faintly and reached out to take off the lid of the teapot. A wave of pure spirit qi gushed out from the teapot. Everyone was shocked. Then their spiritual wills probed the inside of the teapot and found that there were actually 2 treasured seals engraved inside. It really is a Dharma treasure. It's not just a Dharma treasure, could it be a Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure? A Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure? Could it be the spatial Dharma treasure that the Crystal Palace hoped to find in the Zhongxian Grotto Heaven? How did it become a Dharma treasure? What Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure? Which Grotto Heaven Dharma treasure would have such a small space inside? That's true, this Dharma treasure is strange. Why is the spirit qi inside so pure? Perfected Huang Tingjian saw everyone looking at him in confusion, so he coughed and said, "I wonder if anyone has heard of a spirit gathering pot?" "What, this is a spirit gathering pot? What is a spirit gathering pot?" Some of the cultivators in the room asked in surprise while others were confused. Lu Ping was one of them. Perfected Liang Shenfeng was just as surprised as everyone else. Perfected Huang Tingjian glanced at perfected Liang Shenfeng before turning away. However, no matter how Lu Ping looked at him, he felt that perfected Liang Shenfeng was a little pretentious. Perhaps it was because perfected Liang Xuanfeng's body had inexplicably trembled when the spirit-gathering pot appeared, which gave Lu Ping a preconceived impression. A spirit-gathering magic treasure was a type of magic treasure used to confine and move spirit veins to prevent them from dispersing. Spirit veins were one of the foundations of a cultivator's cultivation, and it was also the foundation of every sect that could survive for tens of thousands of years. A spirit-gathering magic treasure was an important factor in ensuring that this foundation would not be lost. The spirit-gathering pot was a type of spirit-gathering pot. After understanding the function of the spirit-gathering pot, the cultivators looked at the spirit-gathering pot with an inexplicable look in their eyes. At the same time, they were puzzled as to why perfected Huang Tingjian would put such a treasure in the trade fair. If Lu Ping had this treasure, if he encountered the spirit veins of Golden Scale Mansion or Zhongshan's cave dwelling, he could first store the spirit veins into his spirit-gathering treasure instead of helplessly letting them go like he did before. Is perfected Huang really willing to trade this item? A late-stage core forging sage was clearly doubtful. Of course. Don't doubt it, Taoist Yun. Although this item is precious, it may not be able to catch my eye, Skyrend. Lu Ping thought to himself that there was definitely something fishy going on. In any sect, a spirit-gathering pot was something that they would rather not use than let others have. Why would Skyren be so generous? Some people in the room clearly realized this problem, but the cultivators belonging to some sects couldn't care less. There was no reason for them to let a treasure disappear before their eyes. What does perfected Huang want to trade this item for? One of the cultivators finally asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Chapter 313. In the end, a cultivator from the Eastern Sea Independent sect exchanged the spirit-gathering pot for 5 spirit-gathering pearls that could nurture small spirit veins, which was almost half a medium spirit vein. The cultivator who exchanged the spirit-gathering pot had a pained look on his face. He stuffed the pot into his storage space and left in a hurry. In the quiet room, a total of 20 to 30 perfected masters showed their treasures one by one. The rest of the time was free trading time for the cultivators. However, Lu Ping noticed that after the free trading began, several perfected masters left. Without exception, all of them were late-stage core forging realm experts. Lu Ping secretly pondered, but he heard Liang Xuanfeng's voice transmission. There's nothing to see in this trade fair. Uncle Master, I'll be leaving first. You can return to the inn after the trade fair. Uncle Master, are you here for the spirit gathering pot? Lu Ping saw perfected master Liang Shenfeng walking to the door of the quiet room and hurriedly transmitted his voice to him. Perfected master Liang Xuanfeng's figure paused, but he did not reply and left directly. Perfected master Liang Xuanfeng's departure did not attract much attention. After all, it was normal for a 9th-stage core forging realm expert to look down on the items in this trade fair. When Lu Ping turned to look, perfected master Huang Tingjian was nowhere to be seen. In the quiet room, cultivators gathered in 2s and 3s, discussing secretly with each other through voice transmission. Lu Ping did not know what they were talking about. From time to time, cultivators would exchange storage bags and other items with satisfied smiles. There were also cultivators who seemed to have broken off and separated, strolling to other groups of cultivators to continue their secret discussion. When Lu Ping saw that a cultivator he noticed had just separated from another cultivator, he walked up and asked in a low voice, "Did you want to exchange my myriad poison serum with the frost true water?" The cultivator's eyes lit up when he saw Lu Ping. He said, "So it's Master Lu. Do you still have the myriad poison serum with you?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "The myriad poison liquid was obtained by a fluke in a strange and dangerous place. It's already a great fortune to have this portion, so how could there be any left? I just want to ask if fellow Taoists can use other things to exchange for the icy true water." Hearing Lu Ping say that he no longer had the myriad poison plasma, the cultivator was slightly disappointed. However, in this trade fair, everyone was holding back, so the cultivator might not really believe that Lu Ping did not have the myriad poison plasma in his hands. Lu Ping also did not expect that his words would be able to convince people. He just wanted to show that even if he had the myriad poison plasma, he would not exchange it for the true ice water. The cultivator hesitated for a moment before saying, "It's not that I can't give this glacial true water to fellow Taoist, it's just that it wasn't easy for me to obtain this glacial true water. If fellow Taoist doesn't have something of the same weight as the myriad poison paste, I won't exchange it no matter what." Seeing that the friar spoke so straightforwardly, Lu Ping smiled and said, "What does fellow Taoist need? If Grandmaster Lu has a water-attributed worldly miraculous treasure like the myriad poison plasma, I will exchange it with you. If not, I need a water-attributed defensive magic treasure." Lu Ping himself did not have a water-attributed defensive magic treasure. Lu Ping dryly smiled and said, "Is there anything else that fellow Taoist needs?" The cultivator shook his head and said, "I only need these 2 things, I won't exchange anything else." Seeing the resolute attitude of the cultivator, Lu Ping felt somewhat helpless. The glacial true water was crucial to the improvement of a treasure that Lu Ping envisioned. If he missed this opportunity today, he did not know when he would be able to see this ice-attributed worldly miraculous treasure again. However, Lu Ping's 2 transactions had already attracted the attention of many people. If Lu Ping took out the myriad poison plasma or the sunflower water essence to exchange, it would be too eye-catching. "What are the 2 of you talking about?" Just when the atmosphere between the 2 of them was somewhat deadlocked, Taoist Ming Jian suddenly walked over with a smile. Lu Ping's eyes lit up. He suddenly had an idea, so he turned to Taoist Ming Jian and said with a smile, "Senior, you came at the right time. Just now at the trade fair, Junior saw Taoist Ming Jian exchange for top-grade wood-attributed spiritual materials several times. I wonder if Senior still needs them now." After Taoist Ming Jian exchanged a large piece of nether cyan iron for the Millennium Locust Tree Heart at the beginning, he repeatedly traded. As long as a cultivator presented a wood-attributed top-grade spiritual material, Taoist Ming Jian would exchange it no matter how many it was. Therefore, Lu Ping guessed that Taoist Ming Jian definitely needed wood-attributed top-grade spiritual materials. Sure enough, after Taoist Ming Jian heard that Lu Ping had wood-attributed spiritual materials, he looked delighted and said, "Lu Xiaoyu is really a cultivator with many treasures. If it's wood-attributed spiritual materials, the more the better. To tell you the truth, I, Skyrend, obtained a set of sword formation in the heavy profound cave mansion, but it needs a wood-attributed flying sword to maximize the power of the formation. Therefore, it needs a lot of wood-attributed spiritual materials." Lu Ping didn't know why enlightened Master Ming Jian would reveal such a secret of the sect, but he still said, "I do have a wood elemental spirit material in my possession, but I need your sword cleansing pool. Taoist Ming Jian was stunned and said, "Didn't Junior already exchange invisible water with Fairy Sun? Why do you want to use the sword purification pool again?" Lu Ping pointed to the cultivator in front of him and said, "It's not Junior, it's this fellow Taoist." The cultivator in front of Lu Ping already knew Lu Ping's plan. He smiled and said, "That's a good idea. I'll give the frigid true water to fellow Taoist Lu, but in return, I'll trade the frigid true water with Sky Fisher Sword Sect in exchange for the right to condense energy in the sword cleansing pool. Then, fellow Taoist Lu will receive the frigid true water and hand over the spirit materials to enlighten Ming Jian. This way each of us will get what we need." Taoist Ming Jian said with a smile, "This is a good idea, but what kind of spiritual material do you have in your hands?" Lu Ping smiled and handed a piece of charred peach wood to Taoist Ming Jian. Taoist Ming Jian exclaimed and praised, "Thousand-year lightning peach wood, it's really good stuff. It's not inferior to third-class spiritual materials." In this way the three of them completed the transaction. Lu Ping returned to his position and no longer dealt with the crowd. Lu Ping could be said to have gained a lot from this trade fair. He had obtained 3 mystical items in one go. Not only did he have the chance to improve his protective aura to the lesser level, but he also had enough spirit water for the 3 pure one's true pupils. Not to mention, there was also the unexpected surprise of the Ice Enlightened Master. However, while Lu Ping was happy, he also felt a little uneasy. This time he had shown too many trump cards and was in the limelight. Even though he had the halo of an alchemy master and an expert like Taoist Liang Shenfeng as his backing, he was still only a first-stage core forging realm cultivator. Taoist Liang Shenfeng couldn't always follow him, so it was inevitable that he would be coveted by people with ulterior motives. Moreover, Taoist Liang Xuanfeng's sudden departure after the appearance of the essence condensing pot also cast a shadow over Lu Ping. This time, Skyren publicly traded the essence condensing pot at the trade fair. It was obvious that he was plotting something, and Taoist Liang Xuanfeng's unusual behavior seemed to prove Lu Ping's guess. After all, the essence condensing pot was obtained by Skyren in Zhongshuan's cave, and Zhongshuan Laozu was a remnant of the North Sea failing sect. Thinking of Taoist Huang Tingjian's probing and observation of Taoist Liang Shenfeng at the trade fair, Lu Ping's heart trembled. Could this be a plot by Skyren against Taoist Liang Shenfeng? However, Lu Ping immediately denied this idea. If it was against Taoist Liang Shenfeng with Skyren's power, there was no need to go through so much trouble. Moreover, after the transaction of the essence condensing pot, many late-stage core forging realm perfected masters representing various forces left the trade fair. Obviously, the cultivators weren't targeting a certain person, but the essence condensing pot. However, although a spirit condensing magic treasure was rare, it wasn't worth Skyren setting up such a big trap. Almost all the sects and forces in the southern East Sea, second only to Skyren, were involved. Lu Ping couldn't figure it out no matter how much he thought about it, so he stopped thinking about it. Several late-stage core forging realm perfected masters left in a hurry, causing everyone at the trade fair to sense an unusual atmosphere. Although Taoist Ming Jian and Taoist Jin tried their best to deal with the situation, the free trade fair still ended quickly. After obtaining the frost true water, Lu Ping sat quietly. Even if some cultivators approached him to strike up a conversation, he would politely decline them. After the trade fair ended, he left in a hurry with Zhu Xianmeng. After returning to the inn, Chu Ting seemed to have also received some news. After saying goodbye, she also left. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng each obtained something from the trade fair, so they were busy cultivating in seclusion. At the same time, the two of them seemed to have sensed that Zhu Xuanmeng's master, Taoist Mei, had an ambiguous relationship with Zhenling. This kind of relationship also made Taoist Liang, who was aware of the situation, keep his mouth shut, unwilling to say anything in front of the two. For several days there was no news from Taoist Liang. Lu Ping, on the other hand, was busy cultivating. His cultivation was only a step away from breaking through to the second stage of core forging. As long as he made this breakthrough and consolidated his cultivation, Lu Ping, who had the heart forging pill in hand, could directly prepare to break through to the mid-stage of core forging. On this day, after Lu Ping used the true jade water to cleanse his eyes, he also condensed a strand of invisible water in the House of Gold. The originally faint golden earth energy became more and more transparent. Under the transformation of the earth energy, Lu Ping's figure also became more and more ethereal, like a reflection in the water. The spiritual herb garden in the House of Gold grew bigger and bigger. The originally lively spatial artifact became much quieter. After Samling broke through to the 8th stage of blood condensation and consolidated his cultivation, Lu Ping refined the heart-forging pill for them. Now he was cultivating in seclusion. Lu Qin's with Luan Yu, who was originally flying side by side with Lu Qin, was stimulated by Lu Ping. She found a secluded corner in the space and prepared to break through to the core forging realm. Without a playmate, Lu Qin had no choice but to study the secret technique Yan Wujiu taught her. Currently, the situation between the human and monster races in the East Sea is tense. Although that island is small, it's currently under the control of the monster race. If Lu Daoyu goes now, it's a bit risky. In other words, Fairy Sun can't be sure that the bejeweled nectar hidden on the island won't be discovered by the monster race. Lu Ping asked with some displeasure. Fairy Sun was stunned, then said with some embarrassment, "I've neglected this point. If fellow Taoist wants to investigate, I'm willing to lend a hand. How about it?" Lu Ping's expression became a lot better. After thinking for a while, he said seriously, "I've seen Fairy Sun's sincerity. But if it's just this matter, you could have explained it to me at the trade fair that day. Why do you need to visit me alone?" Fairy Sun smiled bitterly and said, "Lu Daoyu is quick-witted. I won't hide it from fellow Taoist. This time I've come with an important request." Seeing her serious tone, Lu Ping's expression also became serious. He said, "Please speak." Fairy Sun said in a low voice, "This time I've come to exchange some 3,000-year-old spirit grass with fellow Taoist." Lu Ping's expression changed. Just as he was about to refuse, Fairy Sun hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist, don't be in such a hurry to refuse. Let me finish first." After the two talked in secret, Fairy Sun left with satisfaction. Lu Ping looked at Fairy Sun's departing figure, playing with a purple gold jade slip in his hand. He thought to himself, "This can be considered as picking up a treasure. I didn't expect a mid-level family like the Sun clan to have such a treasure." But it also disgusted Skyrend. "But what does this have to do with me?" Chapter 314. Lu Ping would never have thought that Goddess Sun would actually take out such a formula, causing Lu Ping to willingly hand over the 15 3,000-year-old spirit herbs without the slightest hesitation. 10 years of lifespan. The name of the elixir recorded in this formula was very ordinary, but also very practical. Longevity elixir. No wonder Goddess Sun would spare no effort to collect 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. No wonder she would view the myriad poison serum as a treasure. All of this was because in the process of refining the longevity elixir, these two treasures were indispensable. It was just unknown whether that Laozu of the Sun family would still have the opportunity to advance to the mid-Dharma stage under the condition of extending his lifespan by 10 years. Otherwise, without the support of Dharma Laozu, the Sun family's relatively independent status in Skyrend's sphere of influence would undoubtedly be lost. Without the protection of Dharma Laozu, the Sun family would naturally have to rely on Skyrend. This was also why at the trade fair, spiritual master Huang Tingjian had hinted to Lu Ping to give up on the shapeless water. After setting a time with Goddess Sun to go to the outer endless sea, Lu Ping once again went into seclusion to practice, and there was still no news from spiritual master Liang. A bowl of shapeless water was slowly condensed by Lu Ping into the Gang Qi. As the last bit of spirit water disappeared, Lu Ping quickly activated the water curtain true Gang training method. The surface of Lu Ping's body was tightly wrapped in a thin layer of Gang Qi. First, a light blue color flashed, followed by a golden Gang Qi. Then Lu Ping's body slowly disappeared from head to toe, as if his whole body was slowly swallowed up. Then the light blue color appeared again, and Lu Ping slowly appeared from head to toe in the Gang Qi. The three scenes changed faster and faster, and Lu Ping's figure became more and more ethereal in the Gang Qi. After Lu Ping's Gang Qi had changed 81 times, the myriad poison meteorite energy gang, the Yin water true gang, and the invisible Gang Qi in Lu Ping's body completely fused together. A feeling of being able to change at will suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's divine thought. With a thought from Lu Ping, the protective aura around his body spread out, and Lu Ping disappeared from the space of the House of Gold. With another thought from Lu Ping, the invisibility effect of the formless water disappeared. However, the defensive power of the protective aura around his body did not change at all. The area within 1 zhang around Lu Ping was enveloped in a layer of faint golden mist. From afar, Lu Ping looked like an immortal descending from the heavens. Lu Ping had finally mastered his first minor divine power, Water Curtain True Kang. Congratulations, Daddy, on mastering your minor divine power. Lu Ping retracted the protective aura around him and saw 3 children around 7 to 8 years old standing together. They greeted Lu Ping respectfully and congratulated Lu Ping in their childish voices. Lu Ping laughed heartily and said, "The Water Curtain True Astral Shield is just a small skill that relies on external forces. It's only a defensive skill. When I, your father, have mastered a great skill, then I'll be considered a great achievement among cultivators of the same level." Lu Ping pointed at the 3 children and said with a smile, "On the other hand, the 3 of you have broken through to the peak of the blood condensation realm. You are only 1 step away from the golden core realm. That is the real good news." The 3 children were overjoyed when they heard Lu Ping's praise. They danced around in the house of gold. The 3 boys were none other than the Emerald Sea Spirit Snakes. After consuming the half-transformation pellets Lu Ping had concocted for them, they were able to take human form. However, other than their upper bodies that were identical to humans, their legs weren't visible. Their upper bodies were still supported by a large snake tail. Among the 3 children, Lu Bai and Lu Ling looked like 2 little girls while Lu Hai looked like a little boy. All 3 of them had baby fat on their faces. Their innocent eyes were filled with admiration for Lu Ping. In fact, after reaching the late blood condensation realm, demonic beasts could transform into human form by consuming the half-step transformation pill. However, just like the Green Phoenix, Samling was unwilling to consume the half-step transformation pill after reaching the late blood condensation realm. This puzzled Lu Ping. Later, Lu Ping found out that demonic beasts would still have many demonic beast characteristics on their bodies after reaching the late blood condensation realm. For example, Samling could only transform his upper body into human form when he was at the late blood condensation realm. If Samling chose to transform when he was at the 7th layer, then Samling's appearance would most likely be a monster covered in scales with a forked tongue sticking out of his mouth. He would not be as lovable as he was now. Samling discovered this from his inherited memories. That was why he chose to transform after reaching the 9th layer of the blood condensation realm. It was also for this reason that the Cyan Luan had always refused to take the half-step transformation pill, even though her cultivation level had long been on the verge of breaking through to the gold core stage. According to her, the reason was that after the half-step transformation pill, the Cyan Luan's physical characteristics were exactly the same as a human's except for its beak. However, it was this beak that made Lu Qin decide to postpone the half-step transformation pill until she reached the core forging stage. What made Lu Ping laugh was that even though they were both Luans, the Green Phoenix, Lu Qin, and the Wood Phoenix, Luan Yu, retained different demonic beast characteristics after reaching the half-step transformation realm. Lu Qin retained her beak while Luan Yu had a long neck. What surprised Lu Ping was that Lu Qin actually knew what he would look like after reaching the half-step transformation realm. This was obviously from her memories. According to Lu Ping's knowledge, the inherited memories could only be passed down among demonic beasts like Samling. It seemed that Lu Qin really did have half of the Fire Phoenix bloodline in her body. No wonder Yan Wujiu valued her so much. Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "The 3 of you should hurry up and cultivate. In the future, when we return to the fallen secret realm, there is still an important matter to attend to. Father is currently in urgent need of manpower. Now that you have succeeded in your cultivation, you can help Father greatly." When Samling heard that he could help Lu Ping, he was overjoyed. After being encouraged by Lu Ping, he happily ran off to cultivate. A few days later, Lu Ping and Sun Xianzi secretly arrived at the Outer Sea. At this time, the Outer Sea had completely turned into a sea of demonic beasts. In the past, this sea could only be regarded as the border between the human and demonic beasts of the Eastern Sea, equivalent to the buffer sea of the Northern Sea. But now, it had become the front line of demonic beasts. Lu Ping's expression was a bit ugly as he looked at the place where Sun Xianzi had brought him. There was only a pile of rocks here. How could there be any bejeweled water? Sun Xianzi was obviously also startled, but she immediately explained to Lu Ping, "Lu Daoyu, there really was bejeweled water here before. That day when I obtained the bejeweled water here, the bejeweled water was inside a towering rock. Because I really didn't have time to take it away, I had to leave first. At that time, this place was not a pile of rocks but a stone valley. Now that it has become like this, it was clearly deliberately destroyed by demonic beasts." Lu Ping nodded, I believe Fairy's words, but I am curious how Fairy found the two types of bejeweled water wrapped in a huge rock. If you add in the formless water found in the heavy profound cave, then Fairy's luck is a bit too good. Hearing that Lu Ping didn't have any prejudice against her because of the bejeweled water, Sun Xianzi heaved a sigh of relief. She didn't know why, but even though Lu Ping was only a first-layer core forging realm cultivator, Sun Xianzi was a little afraid of offending him. After losing the bejeweled water, Sun Xianzi was still a mid-core forging realm cultivator, but the first thing she thought of was to absolve herself in front of Lu Ping, as if she was really afraid that Lu Ping would bear a grudge against the Sun clan because of this. The island had long been occupied by demonic beasts. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense, and the number of demonic beasts in a radius of a few li was extremely large. Lu Ping was secretly alarmed. Could it be that there will also be a beast tide in the East Sea? Just as the two were about to leave, a half-transformed peak blood condensation demonic beast slowly walked in their direction. Behind this demonic beast were several blood condensation demonic beasts of various shapes and sizes. They barely formed a line as if they were patrolling the island. Lu Ping and Sun Xianzi glanced at each other, then secretly moved forward. Suddenly, Lu Ping's golden scale sword flashed, and 3 late blood condensation demonic beasts were already beheaded. As the golden scale sword flew out, Lu Ping pointed with his finger and 2 silver lights flashed. The 2 demonic beasts groaned and 2 flowers of blood burst out from their chests, and their bodies fell to the ground. The 6th demonic beast opened its mouth to scream, but a cold snort suddenly sounded in its mind. The demonic beast's eyes glazed over, clearly shocked by Lu Ping's powerful divine sense. Just as Lu Ping silently killed the 6 late blood condensation demonic beasts, Sun Xianzi threw out a bamboo cage-like artifact and trapped the leading peak blood condensation demonic beast inside. No matter how the demonic beast beat and roared inside the bamboo cage, not a single sound came out. Fairy Sun looked at the 6 demonic beasts on the ground and praised, "Lu Daoyu killed 6 late blood condensation demonic beasts in an instant. You're really amazing." Lu Ping smiled. Fairy Sun must be joking. Fairy Sun also said that these 6 demonic beasts were only blood condensation demonic beasts. "I'm a core forging enlightened master, and I killed 6 demonic beasts effortlessly. Even so, I don't deserve such praise from Fairy Sun." Fairy Sun shook her head and said solemnly, "It's easy for a first-stage core forging cultivator to kill a few late blood condensation demonic beasts, but it's extremely difficult to prevent them from making a sound." Lu Ping smiled but didn't reply. Fairy Sun didn't mind. She extended her hand through the gap in the cage, but the roaring monster didn't seem to notice. Fairy Sun's hand slapped the monster's head. The monster's head jerked backwards and its eyes began to turn white. A moment later, Fairy Sun pulled her hand out of the bamboo cage, and the demonic beast fell back. Seeing Fairy Sun's serious expression, Lu Ping asked, "Could it be that the demonic cultivator who obtained the bejeweled nectar is extremely difficult to deal with?" Fairy Sun nodded. "Yes, the leader of this generation of demonic beasts is from the Kuan clan." Kuan? Lu Ping was startled. He immediately thought of the demonic cultivator that he and Chu Ting barely managed to fend off. After it transformed into its original form, it was an incomparably huge Kuan. The Kuan clan was also a top-tier demonic beast. It was one of the few demonic beasts that lived in the water and had the bloodline of the Peng. They had inherited their memories, and although they weren't large in number, they were extremely powerful. Their status in the East Sea was comparable to the Green Sea snake. Fairy Sun collected the bamboo cage and said, "This time it's a bit tricky. With just the 2 of us we can defeat this Kuan, but it'll be extremely difficult to kill it. What's more, we're in the territory of the demonic beasts. They can summon their comrades at any time and we'll be the ones to suffer." Lu Ping nodded and the 2 of them retreated. Lu Ping looked at the unconscious demonic beast on the ground after Fairy Sun searched its soul, and casually swung the golden scale sword. Fairy Sun hurriedly said, "Don't." But it was already too late. The demonic beast had already been cut in half by the golden scale sword. Fairy Sun hurriedly said, "Let's go." When Fairy Sun stopped him, Lu Ping realized that he had overlooked something. The 2 of them hurriedly left the island, and suddenly heard a loud roar from the bottom of the sea. "Who dares to kill the demon general under my command?" You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.